What if Jon Snow bonded with a dragon before he ever met Daenerys Targaryen? Not a grand moment, not a prophecy landing in golden light. A ranger came back to Castle Black from arranging beyond the wall, and he was changed in the way rangers came back, changed sometimes, but differently from the cold and the fear and the dead.
Bran had been told
He came back and he said,
and present
"There's
himself
something in the mountains east of the fist,
and not to
not
get
a
dirty,
white,
and not to
something else,
disappear into the upper reaches
something
of
old."
the castle, where nobody could
Jon
find
went to
him.
look.
He almost
What he
climbed
found was
anyway.
not a dragon.
The broken
not at first.
tower was calling him.
What he found was
Not
an
literally,
egg.
Not yet.
One
that would come
single
later.
enormous
But
stone-cold
in the
egg
way that
wedged in a
heights
rock
called to
crevice
Bran,
in the high
the
eastern
magnetic
passes,
pull of the vertex.
miles beyond the wall, in the place
his
where the
mother
ancient
caught him.
Targaryen line and the
Not at
ancient
the
wall
tower.
had once, apparently, overlapped
courtyard.
in a way nobody had bothered to record.
Halfway to the
He
broken
picked it up.
tower, boots
It was
muddy
warm.
from the shortcut.
That
through
was the
Godswood.
first wrong thing.
Heading for the old stones
Everything
with
in the high
specific,
passes beyond the
purposeful
wall in
stride
winter
of a
was
7-year-old
cold.
who had decided
rock
where he
was
going
cold.
and who hadn't considered
His hands
the
were
route was
cold.
monitored.
The egg was warm in the way of
Bran.
something that had been cold for a
stopped.
very long time, and had
Cat
recently
stood in the
decided
doorway
not
to
to
the great
be
hall.
anymore.
She
He
had
brought
the
it back to
expression
Castle
she had
Black.
when she'd caught him climbing
He kept it
before.
in his quarters,
Not angry
because he didn't
exactly,
know what else to do with it.
tired. The
3 weeks
specific
later, it
maternal
hatched,
exhaustion of a
and
woman
then
who had
nothing
told
was
a
ever
child
the same again.
thing 400 times, and who was
Castle
reaching the
Black,
point where the
299
tale was
AC.
performance rather
He'd been
than
Lord
instruction.
Commander for 8 months. The
I
specific
wasn't
weight
going
of
to
that,
climb.
8 months. The
were
youngest
heading
Lord
for the
Commander in the
broken
history of the
tower.
Watch, elected by men
was going
twice
to
his
look
age,
at it.
because the alternatives
You
had
were
been
going to
worse,
look at it
and
from
Jon
the top.
Snow had the kind of competence that announced
part of
itself,
this
whether or
was
not
she
you
was
wanted
right,
it to,
and lying
was
to
something
his
he
mother
carried
was
without
something
acknowledging
Bran
carrying
hadn't
it,
learned yet.
which was the Jon Snow way.
That skill came
The
later,
egg sat on the
with
table by his
adolescence
bed.
and the specific developmental
He told no
milestone
one.
of
He thought about telling Sam,
discovering
and decided that Sam would have opinions, many of them well-researched, and some of them
father
correct,
actually cleaned up
and he wasn't ready
Robert
for well-researched opinions yet.
Bran went
He
inside.
thought about telling Aemon,
He washed.
but Aemon was old and blind, and already carrying the specific
in the
weight of
courtyard
being the
with his
last
brothers
living
and sisters,
Targaryen,
and waited
and Jon
for
wasn't
him to
sure
do
yet what the egg meant,
He
or
did not
whether it
climb
meant
the
anything at
broken
all.
tower.
He hadn't
did
told
not see
Aemon he was a Targaryen
inside
either.
the broken tower.
That was its own long conversation.
He did not fall.
He sat on the edge of his bed in the Lord
This
Commander's
is the
quarters at
story
Castle
of
Black,
that one
and looked at the egg,
moment.
and the egg sat there
The
being warm.
moment where Catelyn's
It had been getting
Bran's
warmer,
route,
not
and the
gradually,
specific
in
geometry
steps.
of a mother's
He would
attention
leave for
to
arranging
see the
and come
child's
back,
trajectory.
and the warmth would be different, more concentrated,
Not the grand
more
sweep
directional,
of it.
like something
Not the
working its
armies
way
and
from the
thrones
center
that
outward.
would come later.
On the Tuesday of the third week, it cracked, not loudly. A sound like good pottery, finding a flaw under pressure, the specific, controlled fracture of something that knows what it's doing. He'd been at his desk writing reports, and the sound came from behind him, and he turned very slowly,
Winterfell.
because some part of him had known this was coming, and the knowing had its own gravity. The crack ran from the top
Robert
to
Baratheon
the midpoint,
came through the gates of Winterfell,
pale light
and the
at the edges
castle
of it,
held its breath.
not firelight,
Not metaphorically, literally.
something more internal.
The specific collective
The glow of a
inhalation
process rather than a
500
source.
people who had
He
never
went
seen
and
a
sat
king,
on the floor in
and who
front
had
of
been
it.
told their entire
He
lives
sat there for
that
4
kings
hours
were
while it
large
worked.
and golden.
The
and
dragon that came
magnificent.
out was not large.
Robert Baratheon
Jon had
was
expected large.
He was not
The
golden.
histories
He was
describe
not
dragons
magnificent.
in terms of
He was
armies
a man
and
who had been
shadows,
drinking
and the
for
scale of
15
natural
years, and whose
disasters.
body had been
And this
converting
creature
muscles
was the
to
size of a
fat
large
at the
cat,
specific rate
which was
that
not the
happened when
size of a
warriors
natural
stopped
disaster
warring
by any
and started
reasonable
sitting.
measure.
And the conversion was
Its scales
visible
were
in
dark,
every line of him, the belly,
not black,
the red face,
the color of iron that
the
has been
armor that
heated
didn't
and
fit
cooled,
the way it had
the
when the armor
dark,
was
warm
made.
grey of forged
Bran
metal,
stood in
with
the
bronze at the
courtyard
edges,
between
in the places
Arya and
where the
Rickon,
light found
and
it.
watched the king dismount
Its eyes were
and
gold.
embrace his father with the
They found
bone-crushing
Jon immediately.
enthusiasm of a man
They
who
found
loved
him
his
the way
friends
Ghost's
the way he
eyes had
loved his
found him,
wine.
that first morning on the road to Castle
physically,
Black, with the
without
puppy in his
subtlety.
arms. The specific
You got
quality
fat,
of recognition
Ned
between
said.
two things that are, at some level,
Robert looked at
the
him.
same kind of thing.
Looked down at
He
himself.
put his hand out.
Looked at
The
Ned.
dragon stepped forward on its
Ned
new
didn't
legs,
smile.
with the calculated uncertainty
The
of something
slow
that was
start
figuring
smile
out legs
was
for the
worth
first
more for being
time,
rare.
and pressed its head against his
Robert
palm.
laughed.
He felt
The
the
sound
warmth of it
filled
through
the
his cold
courtyard,
fingers.
the specific acoustic
He thought,
overflow of a large man's laughter
this is
in an
real.
enclosed space.
He thought,
The tension broke.
Ghost.
The household breathed.
He looked at the door.
Bran watched. He
Ghost
watched
was
the
sitting
king,
at it.
and he watched the queen.
He had been
Cersei
sitting at
Lannister,
it for 4
golden,
hours, apparently.
Beautiful in the way that
The wolf
expensive
looked at the
things
dragon
were
with the
beautiful.
expression,
With
if you
the
called it
specific
an
polished
expression,
surface that money and
of an
power
animal that had
produced,
been waiting
and
for
that
something to
warmth
arrive,
had nothing to
and was
do with it.
acknowledging its arrival.
She looked at Winterfell.
Jon
the
sat
way
on the
someone
floor of the
looked at
Lord
a
Commander's
place they'd been
quarters,
sent
with a
to
dragon in
against
his
their
lap,
will,
and a direwolf
and that
at
they
the door,
intended
and
to
the Night's
endure
Watch sleeping on
rather
the
than
other side of the
inherit.
wall. He said,
He watched
to no
Jaime
one,
Lannister, the Kingslayer,
right.
Golden
He kept the
too.
dragon hidden
The
for 2
same
weeks.
gold as his sister.
This was harder than
Standing
it
in the
sounds.
courtyard with
The
his
dragon was
Kingsguard
small enough
armor,
to conceal,
and the expression
barely
of a
in the
man
first
who
days.
found the North personally
But small
offensive,
was not the same
and who
as
was
quiet.
performing tolerance.
It made sounds,
He watched
not
Tyrion
loud,
Lannister,
not the roar
who
of the
was short
histories,
and who was
a kind of
drinking
low,
already,
persistent
and who
resonance
looked
that was
at
felt
Winterfell
more than
with
heard,
a specific
a vibration
assessment
in the
of man
chest
who
that the men
processed
near
every
his
new
quarters
place
kept
as a text
attributing
be
to the
read,
wind.
and who had
2
opinions
weeks
about
was
the
how
font.
long it took Jon to accept that he had to tell someone.
He watched Joffrey,
He told
the Crown
Sam.
Prince, blonde,
Sam's response
12,
was
with a face that Bran
silence for
couldn't read,
approximately 90
because
seconds,
the face was
followed
doing
by,
something he didn't have a
"That's a
word
dragon."
for yet.
"Yes,
Not kindness,
you have a dragon."
not cruelty.
"I have a dragon."
The specific
In the Night's
blankness
Watch.
of a child who
Yes.
had learned to perform
Sam
emotion
sat down.
rather than
He looked
feel
at the
it,
creature,
and
which
whose
was now the
performance
size of
was
a medium
convincing
dog
to adults
and growing
and
visibly.
transparent to
The
children.
Lord Commander of the Night's
Bran
Watch
watched all
has a
of this
dragon.
from the ground. From
Yes.
the ground, the view
Jon,
was different.
I know.
From the rooftop,
This is-
you saw the pattern.
This
of
is
the way people
historically
moved,
unprecidented.
the architecture,
The
of their
Night's Watch
relationships
and the
visible in
Targaryens
the
have had an
architecture of their
association
positioning.
since. And you're...
From the ground, you
He
saw
stopped.
the faces,
He looked at
the
Jon.
details,
"You're
the
a
specific
Targaryen."
human information that
Jon
distance
said nothing.
obscured.
Sam said,
He didn't know
"You
that
are.
he was developing
You have to be.
skill.
Dragons don't
He
bond
didn't
to anyone
know
else.
that the watching the
The
ground
histories
level
are clear on that."
the face reading,
He looked at the dragon
specific
and then
talent
at
for
Jon
seeing what
and
people
back
were
again
doing behind
with the
what they were
rapid,
performing,
focused assessment
was the
of
thing
someone
that
whose
was going to
scholarship
replace
was
the
clicking
fight.
into place around a new
He was
fact.
7.
"Jon,
He watched.
you're
The
Targaryen."
feast that night
Jon
was the
said,
feast that Winterfell
"That
always
is a
produced
conversation
for important
for another
visitors.
time."
The specific northern
When is
hospitality
another time?
that expressed itself
When I've
through
figured
volume
out what this
rather than
means.
elegance.
Sam looked at the
The
dragon.
tables groaning with
He said,
food that was hearty
"What's its
and
name?"
filling, and that
Jon had been
communicated
avoiding this.
without words.
Naming was a
that the
commitment.
North took care of its
Naming
guests,
was,
even if the
"This is
North
real,
didn't decorate
and it
its
stays."
tables.
But it had
Bran
been 2
sat
weeks,
with his
and it was
siblings.
real,
He watched
and it
the
was
high
staying.
table, watched his father
He
and
said,
the king drink
"Scaros."
and talk.
Sam
the
said,
specific
"That's-
physical vocabulary
that's High
of two
Valyrian.
men who had been
It
friends
means,
for 20 years.
I know what it means."
And who communicated through
Sam
shoulder
looked at
claps
him.
and raised cups,
Jon
and the
looked at the
occasional
dragon.
burst of laughter that was too
Scaros,
loud and too real,
which meant the Iron
and that
One,
the rest of the
which
hall
meant the one
pretended
who
not
came
to
out of the
notice.
dark forged, which
He
meant the
watched his
thing you
mother,
find when you
watched
go to
Catelyn
places
sit beside
most
the
people
queen
don't go.
and managed the specific
It looked
social
back at him
challenge
with
of
the gold eyes.
entertaining a woman who found the
"Right,"
North beneath her,
Sam
and who
said eventually.
communicated the finding
"Right.
through the precise calibration
The Lord
of her
Commander of
attention,
the Night's Watch
giving
has a
enough to
dragon
avoid
named
insult,
Iron,
and not
and
enough
we're all
to
just going
suggest
to...
genuine interest.
We're going to keep this contained until I know what to
He
do with
watched
it.
Sansa,
Jon,
11.
there's a
already
dragon in the
performing
Lord
the
Commander's
specific
quarters.
Sansa thing of
I
studying
know
the
where the
court
dragon
visitors
is.
for social information.
You can't contain...
Cataloguing the clothing, and
Sam.
the manners, and the accents.
He looked at his
the
friend.
intensity of a girl who
I need
intended to
time.
live in that world.
I need to
and who was
think.
beginning the
I need to
preparation.
understand what this means
He watched
before the
Arya,
rest of the world
9,
starts having opinions
not
about it.
performing anything.
Sam
Eating
looked
with
at
her
him.
fingers
He said,
when she thought
"How much
was
time do you
worthy
think
of
you
being
have?"
taught by Sansa.
Jon
Being
looked at
corrected,
Scaros, who had
not
grown
caring
2
about
inches
the
in the
correction
past 2
with
weeks
the
and
specific
showed no
Arya
signs
energy
of stopping.
That was not rebellion.
He said,
but simply
"Not
the
much.
constitutional inability
Castle
to
Black.
pretend.
The telling.
He watched
299 AC.
14,
He told Maester Aemon
sitting at the
first.
side table.
Aemon was 96 years
Not at
old
the
and
high
blind,
table.
and he was the only other
expression
Targaryen
of
in the
Jon
world,
Warwick
which was a
figures.
category that had expanded since Jon's
expression
hatching,
of
but that
someone
Jon
who
had been
was
carrying
present
alone
and
since Bran
exclusive
confirmed it at Winterfell.
and who had
He went
learned
to the
to manage
Master's
the
quarters at
illusion
night,
by
when the
going
castle
somewhere
was at its
inside himself
quietest,
where the
and he told him.
exclusion couldn't reach.
Aemon listened.
Bran saw
When Jon
this
finished,
because
the old
Bran
man was
7,
quiet for a long
and
time.
7-year-olds saw
Then he
things
said,
that adults
"Bring it
missed
to me."
because adults were
Jon
busy
brought
performing,
Scaros.
and
The dragon
7-year-olds
was
were
restless on the
watching.
walk over.
And watching
Unusual.
was the more
It was generally
informative
calm around
activity.
Jon. The two of them having
Didn't
developed the
understand what
specific
he was
rhythm
seeing.
of creatures that had decided to
Not
trust
always.
each other.
Not
On the walk
subtext,
to Aemon's quarters,
not
it
the
moved
specific
differently.
Loaded quality
Alert.
of his mother's conversation.
Jon set it on the table near where Aemon sat.
Complicated grief in his
The old
father's
man's
funeral
hands,
was
which were the
gone.
careful hands of someone who has learned to read the world through touch,
And everyone
moved
else in
forward
the room
and
was
found the
visible
dragon's
to
head.
adults, as the
Scaros
Kingslayer's
held very
reputation,
still.
and invisible to
Aemon's
adults
face
as the
changed.
Kingslayer's secret.
Not dramatically.
But he recorded
The very old, when they feel something
the way
large,
children recorded
tend to feel it inward rather
not
than
in
outward.
words, in images.
But something moved across his expression that Jon had not seen there before.
That stored
He said,
information
in
without
High
organizing
Valyrian,
it.
"Blood of my
Later,
blood."
when the organization
Scaros made the resonant sound.
produce insights
Jon stood in the doorway
recording hadn't
and watched a
anticipated.
96-year-old man who had who'd spent his whole life renouncing his birthright, hold a
Bran
dragon
went to bed.
and be returned for a moment
He dreamed
to
about
something
the
he had
crow.
given up. He looked away.
The crow.
When Aemon spoke again, his voice was different,
298 a seed.
cleared of something. He said, "You know what you are."
Was not a
Jon
normal
said,
dream.
"I know some of
Bran
it."
knew this the way you knew
He
things
said,
in dreams.
"Lyanna's
not
son."
through reasoning, but through
Yes.
the specific dream logic
And
that
Rhaegar.
operated by different rules
was
from
quiet.
waking logic. And that
I
was,
knew your father.
in its own way,
Not well.
more reliable.
I was an old man in a
Normal
cold
dreams
castle
start
by
with
then.
thinking.
But I knew him.
This dream
I
felt
knew
like
what he
a seed.
believed.
The crow
pause.
was large.
He
Larger
believed
than
the
any
world
crow
would
Bran
need
had
someone.
seen.
He spent his life
3 eyes
arranging
too,
for
where
that
eyes
someone to
belonged,
exist.
and one in the center
Jon
of the
said.
forehead.
People
Open,
keep telling me
see.
things about my
The
father's
specific
beliefs.
focused gaze
Nobody
of a
asks
creature
what
that
I
was not a
believe.
creature, but a Bran
Aemon
didn't
turned
have the
toward his
word.
voice.
A
The old
messenger.
eyes, which saw nothing,
door.
and somehow still
A thing
found
that
you.
was shaped like a bird.
What do you
And that
believe?
contained something that
Jon
was
said.
not bird-shaped.
I believe the dead
The
are
crow
real.
said, "You
I
must learn
believe
to
what's
fly."
beyond this wall is
Bran
worse
said,
than what anyone south of
can't
it has
fly.
been told.
I'm not a
I
bird.
believe-
The crow said,
He paused.
"Not with wings."
I believe
eyes.
the dragon appeared for a
The
reason,
dream ended.
and I'm not
Bran
sure
woke
the
up.
reason
The
is a
room
prophecy.
was dark. Winterfell at
Aemon
night.
said,
The sound of
"What
the hot
reason then?"
springs. The
Jon
distant
said,
sound of the
the
night.
same reason weapons
The
exist,
specific acoustic
not because
signature
of
a
destiny,
castle that had been
because they're
standing
needed.
for 8,000 years
The old man
and that
sat with
produced
this.
its own kind of
He
silence,
said,
which
"You'll
was
need to
not
tell
the
the
absence
watch.
of sound,
I know,
but the accumulation of
not everything,
8,000 years of
but
sounds,
enough.
layered so
I know.
thick they'd become a texture."
and you'll need to leave.
Bran lay
eventually."
in bed and thought
Jon
about
looked
what
at
he
him.
thought.
Aemon said,
3 eyes.
"The Lord Commander
thought,
of the Night's
fly
Watch
with eyes.
cannot have a dragon
He thought,
and stay the Lord
that doesn't
Commander
make
of the
sense.
Night's Watch. The
He went back
watch
to
belongs
sleep.
to the realm.
The dream came again the
Dragons
next
belong
night.
to the dynasty.
And the night
Those are
after.
not the same category."
And the night after
Jon
that.
said, "The watch
The
is
crow
my
nation,
life."
persistent.
Aemon said,
The specific,
"The
insistent
watch is
quality
the
of
life
something
you
that had
chose.
been trying to get
Before
through,
you
and that was
knew
going
what
to
you
keep
were."
trying,
He
regardless
turned
of
back
whether the
toward the
recipient,
dragon.
the crow showed
"This
him,
changes the available options."
not yet, not the full
Jon
vision,
said, "I'm
not
not
the
going to
sweeping
march on
panoramas
King's
of
Landing."
past and future that
Aemon
would come
said,
later.
"No one asked you
Small
to."
things.
He stroked the
Images.
dragon's head.
The gods with the
Joffrey
heart,
is on the throne,
the face
and the North
carved
is
in
at
the white
war,
wood,
and a
the red
Targaryen
eyes.
claimant with a dragon
The face
is a
was
complication regardless
not
of
in
his
the way
intentions.
faces watched in
He
dreams,
paused.
where the
But the
watching was a
dead
projection
don't care
of the
about the
dreamer's
succession.
anxiety.
The
The
dead
face was
don't
watching
care
in a way
about the
that real
Lannisters
things
or
watch.
the Starks
With
or who
intelligence,
sits in what chair.
with attention,
The dead are coming,
with the
and whatever
specific
you are,
focused
your
awareness of
dragon
something that
is the
was alive
specific
in
thing
a way that
is
dreams
most
were not
useful
supposed
against
to
them.
be alive.
Jon said,
Bran
"Fire."
went to the godswood.
Aemon said,
In the morning.
"Fire."
In
Yes.
person.
John
He
looked at
walked across the
Scarrows,
castle
who
from
was
his
sitting
rooms
beside
to the
Aemon
godswood
with the
gate,
gold
and
eyes
through the
tracking
gate into
something
the
in the
old
room
forest
that only
grew
it could
inside
see.
Winterfell's wall.
He said,
The
"The
ancient
watch won't let
trees
me
and the
leave."
pool and the heart
Aemon
tree
said,
with the face.
"The watch is
He stood
600
in
men
front
in
of the
3-manned castles.
The face.
You're the
watched,
Lord Commander
not
of the
different
Night's
than it had
Watch,
watched
and
yesterday,
you have a
or
dragon."
the day before,
He paused.
or the day before that
They'll
the
let
heart
you
tree's
leave.
face had been watching for
Castle
8,000
Black,
years,
the
and
assembly,
the watching didn't change,
299
because a 7-year-old
AC.
boy was
He called
standing
the
in front of
assembly
it
in the yard,
with a dream,
not the
about
great
a crow
hall.
in his head.
The yard was visible
But Bran
to
felt
everyone
something.
in the castle, and
Not a
visibility
voice,
was part
not
of what he
words.
needed.
A
He called
direction,
it for the morning of the
specific
first clear day
non-verbal
after the
communication
news had
of
spread
something very
sufficiently
old,
on its own,
reaching
which had
towards
taken
something
exactly
very young,
4 days
and
from when he
finding the
told
distance
Sam,
manageable.
which he'd expected.
You have the
He stood
sight,
on the raised platform
not
in the
heard.
castle black yard.
Felt,
600
in the
men
specific
stood below
deep
him.
body way that
Scarrows
instincts
sat
were
at
felt
his feet.
not in the mind,
The dragon
but in
was
the
now
blood,
the size of
in
a
the
large
bones,
dog.
in the
It
architecture
sat
of
with
the
its
body
wings
that
partially
predated
spread,
language,
not
and that
threateningly,
communicated in
more
a
the way a
register
hawk spread
that
its
language
wings when
could
it landed,
reach.
establishing the
Bran
fact
stood
of
in front
itself.
of the heart tree.
And it looked
He
at
was
600
7
brothers of the
and he was
Night's
having
Watch
the
who were looking at
experience
it with the
that, in another
expressions of
version of
men
the
who
story,
had read the
would
reports
have
about the
required a
dead
fall from
and
a
had thought
tower
they had
and a broken
calibrated their
back
capacity
and a
for the
coma,
unbelievable
and the specific
and were now
traumatic shattering of a
recalibrating.
childhood to produce.
John looked at them.
In this
He
version,
said,
the
"You've all
experience
seen
came
it by
anyway,
now. You know it's
not
real.
through trauma, through the
I'm not going to
specific
pretend the
natural
past
development
month of
a
rumors
gift
hasn't
that was in
happened
the blood,
and explain
that
it
the
from
blood
first
was going to
principles."
express, regardless
Somebody
of whether
toward the
expression
back
was
said,
invited.
"Is it a
The
dragon?"
Starks had the green stuff.
John said.
Not all
Yes.
of them, not in every
The
generation.
yard was quiet.
But the
He
blood
said,
carried it the way
"I
rivers
found an
carry
egg in the
water,
high passes
not always
east of the
visible
fist.
on the surface.
3
but
weeks later,
present in the
it hatched.
current.
What you're
And when
looking
the
at
conditions
is the
were
result."
right when a child was born,
He looked at
with
them
the right
steadily.
combination of the old
What it
blood
means for
and
the
old
watch
attention,
is what I
and the
called this
specific
assembly to
receptivity
discuss.
that was not
A
trauma,
ranger
but
named Alistair
temperament, the
Thorne,
green side
who had
surface.
hated John since training,
Bran
and who had
had the
voted
right
against his
combination.
election, and who had been a thorn in his specific
didn't know
side
this.
for the past 8 months,
He
said,
knew he had
"It means
dreams
the
about
Lord
the crow.
Commander has been keeping secrets.
the gods
It
would
means
felt
we've we've had a dragon in our walls for a month without the assembly knowing about it.
When he was
Jon
very
said.
still.
Yes.
When the
That's-
world around him was
That's
quiet
a
enough.
fair criticism.
The noise of living.
I needed
stopped
time to
interfering
understand
with
what
the
I
noise of
had
whatever
before I
was
told you.
underneath living.
I'm telling you now.
He could feel.
He
the
held
earth,
Thorne's gaze.
directions.
The watch is founded on the principle that what happens
specific
beyond the wall
awareness of a
is
landscape
everyone's
that was not
concern.
physical,
That
but
hasn't
was
changed.
nonetheless real.
What has changed is what I have available to address it with.
Not because he
Thorne
was
said,
afraid.
"You're
because he
Targaryen,"
didn't have the word.
Jon said, "by blood.
How do
My
you
mother
tell
was
your
Lyanna
father
Stark.
that the trees
My
are
father
watching you?
was Rhaegar Targaryen.
How do you tell
I've known
your
this for
mother
2
that
years.
a three-eyed crow
He said it
visits
flat.
you in dreams?
No apology in
Tells you
it.
to fly with
No
your eyes.
performance. I didn't tell the watch because I didn't think it was relevant to the watch. The dragon makes it relevant. The yard erupted. He let it run. There was the shouting of men who felt deceived, and the shouting of men who were afraid of the dragon, and the shouting of men who were calculating what a Lord Commander with Targaryen blood meant for the political situation in the south, and the shouting of men who were simply frightened of a thing they hadn't expected. He let it run. After 5 minutes, he raised his hand. The yard was trained. They quieted. He said, "I'm not leaving the watch to march on King's Landing. I'm not going to use this position or this dragon to pursue a political claim. That's not what this is." He looked at them. The dead are real. You know this. You've seen them. The ranging reports have been building towards something for 30 years. And it's coming. He paused.
King's Landing.
Dragonfire is one of the two things that stops the Night King. Not the army, the Night King. What directs the dead? The accounts are consistent on this.
He
paused again.
Robert asked.
I didn't find this egg because of a prophecy.
And because Ned
I
Stark
found it because I went to a
refused
place
calls
most
to
people
duty,
didn't go.
which was both the
What I'm going to
quality
do
that
with
made
it
him the man
is what
Robert
the watch
needed,
has always
and the
done.
quality that
Face
would
what's
eventually
coming
be
with what
tested
we have.
past its breaking point.
Silence.
But he
A
went
young
differently.
ranger named Ed
In another
Tollett,
version
who had been
of this
following
story,
Jon since
Ned
before
went
the first
south,
battle at the
carrying
Fist,
two crises.
and who had a particular
The
gift for
political
saying the thing
crisis
that cut
being
through the
Ned
noise,
Ham, and
said,
the personal crisis
"So you're
of his
staying?"
son, lying broken
Jon
in
said,
bed in Winterfell.
"I'm staying as long as I'm the
personal
right
crisis
person
made
to
the
stay.
political one worse.
When that changes,
It
I'll tell
distracted
you."
him, divided his
Ed said,
attention,
"That's not
produced
actually
the
an answer."
specific emotional
Jon said,
vulnerability
"I know."
of a father
Ed said,
operating in a
"The dragon
dangerous
stays too."
environment, while his mind
Jon
was
said,
800 miles
"The dragon
north
goes where
of a
I go."
child who might die.
Ed looked at
In this
Scout.
version, Ned
Scout
went south
looked back at
carrying
Ed.
one crisis.
Ed said,
Bran
"Right."
was fine.
He turned to the
Bran
man
was
beside
climbing
him.
trees and annoying
"I'm going
his
to
mother
need more
and being
wine."
a 7-year-old boy, which was what 7-year-old boys did.
Castle Black.
And the not worrying
Ravens.
freed
299
40% of Ned's
AC.
cognitive capacity that had, in another timeline, been consumed by
The
grief.
ravens
and fear.
started going out the same
The
day.
40%
Not from
mattered.
Jon.
Ned
He hadn't
arrived in
decided
King's
yet what to
Landing
send
with
south and to
Sansa
whom.
Arya.
The
And a
ravens
household
went out
of
from the
northern
brothers
men,
who had
and
family
the
south of the
specific
wall,
determined
and who had
posture
seen what
of a
they'd
man
seen,
who was
and who had the
walking into a
natural
situation
human
he
need to
didn't
tell
want,
someone
and
what
who
he
was
had
going to
witnessed.
handle it through the
The
application
first
of
official
Northern
word
honor
Jon
to
got
Southern
that the
corruption,
news had reached
which
King's
was a
Landing
strategy
was a
that had
raven from
historically
Varys.
produced mixed
Not
results,
signed as
but that
from
was the
Varys.
only strategy Ned
Signed as
possessed.
from a contact
The
in the
city
capital,
was-
whose
Ned
name
looked at
Jon
it
didn't
with the eyes
recognize,
of a man who had
but whose
been there
handwriting
twice
had the
before,
specific
and who
loot
had hated
efficiency
it both
of
times.
someone who wrote many letters
The
under
smell,
many names.
the noise,
The letter was 3
the
sentences.
density of human life
It said,
pressed into streets
"The
that
Lord
were too
Commander
narrow
of the
for
Night's
traffic,
Watch has a
and that
dragon.
produced the specific
King's Landing is
claustrophobic
discussing
atmosphere
this.
of a city that had
It would
been
be
built
useful
for
to know what the
100,000
Lord
and that
Commander
housed
intends."
500,000.
Jon read
He
it
went
3
to the
times.
Red Keep. He took
He
the
wrote
Ham's
back,
office.
"The Lord
He sat
Commander
at
of
the
the
desk
Night's
that Jon
Watch
Arryn had
intends
died
to
at,
defend the
and
wall.
he looked at the papers
What the dragon
and the
is
ledgers
useful for
and the
is fire.
specific accumulated
The dead
evidence
don't negotiate.
of 14
He
years of
sent it.
governance that Jon Arryn
The
had been
reply came in
conducting,
4 days.
and that had ended
It said,
the official
"Daenerys
account said
Targaryen
with a
is in
sudden
Essos
illness.
with 3 dragons
Ned
and an
did
army.
not believe
She
the
is
official
6
account.
weeks sailing from Westeros.
Not because of evidence. He had
She
no
does not
evidence.
yet know you exist.
The specific
You
Stark
should consider what
that
that
was
means
not
before she
intelligence
finds
exactly,
out from someone
but was
else.
adjacent to intelligence.
Jon
The
sat with
pattern
this.
recognition that
He
operated
had
below
known,
the level of
abstractly,
conscious analysis,
that
and
Daenerys
that said,
existed.
"This is wrong."
Sam had told him
The
after the
timing,
egg hatched, working
the
through the Targaryen family tree
the
with
specific
the
way that
focused
Jon Arryn's
excitement
death had
of a
been
man who had
described
been
by
wanting to
people who
discuss this for
described it
years.
with the rehearsed
He
quality
had
of
known
the
she was
story that had
alive
been
and in
prepared
Essos
before
and had
the
dragons of her own.
Ned
He
began
had
to
not thought
investigate.
through what it
He did
meant
it
for
the
both
Ned
of them
way
to
direct,
exist
without
simultaneously.
subtlety, with the
He had not
specific
thought
blunt
through what it
instrument
meant that he had a
approach that
dragon
Southern
before she
politicians
came west.
found either admirable
He had
or
not thought
suicidal,
through what it meant that the
depending on whether
dynasty
they were the
was
subject
suddenly
of
not one
investigation
person
or the
with 3
observer.
dragons, but potentially 2 people
to the
with 4
Grand
dragons,
Master.
which
Pycelle's
changed the
account
political
of Jon Arryn's
arithmetic
death
of the
was
succession
Ned noted
in ways
was
that he was
too
going to have to
comprehensive,
think about
too
very
detailed.
carefully.
The
He had not
specific
thought through any of this
over-documentation
because he had been
that
managing a dragon
when
and
someone was
arranging
describing
season
something
and the dead
rehearsed
and the specific
rather
daily demands
than
of 600 men who were
Real
learning to live
memories
with a
had
dragon
gaps.
in their walls.
Pycelle's
He
account
thought about
had
it
none.
now. He
He
thought,
talked to Varys.
she is going to come
Varys
west
was
eventually.
Ned couldn't read Varys.
She has been
Varys
building
was the
toward
one
it
person
her
in the
whole
Red
life,
Keep whose surface
from what
was
Sam
so
said.
thoroughly managed that
And when
Ned's
she comes
instinct
west,
couldn't find
she is
the
going to
person
have to
underneath
decide
the
what to
form.
do about the fact that there is
Varys
already
gave
a
him information.
Targaryen with a dragon in
The
Westeros.
information was useful.
He thought,
Whether the
that
information
conversation
was true
is going
a
to be
different question.
significant.
And the difference between
thought,
useful and true
I should probably
was one
not be
that
the
Ned was
last
not
person in the
naturally equipped to
conversation to
navigate.
prepare for it.
He talked to Littlefinger,
He wrote to Sam.
Lord Petter Baelish.
He said, Tell me everything
Master
you
of
know
war.
about Daenerys
A
Targaryen.
man Ned had met once before
Sam
at
told
River
him
Run
everything.
years ago, when Baelish was a
Castle
boy
Black,
with a crush on
Aemon,
Catelyn Tully,
299
and a scar from
AC.
Brandon Stark's sword.
Aemon died in the
The boy
fourth
was
month
gone.
after the hatching.
What remained
Not
was a man who
unexpectedly.
smiled too
He
easily,
was
and who
96
offered
years
help
old
too
and had been
readily,
at Castle
and who
Black
triggered
for
Ned's
60 of them.
instinct,
And
the
his
way an
body
off-note
had been
triggered
telling
a
him for
musician.
years that
You
it was
couldn't
running out
explain
of
what
time
was wrong,
in which to carry him
but
through
you
his
knew
days.
something was.
He had managed the
Baelish
running
said
out with the specific
Jon Arryn was
calm of someone
investigating
who had
something
made his peace with
before
most
he
things
died.
long ago and
Ned
was waiting
said,
on a few
"What?"
last ones.
The king's children.
The last
Baelish
one,
leaned forward,
John understood
dropping
afterward,
his voice to the
had been the
specific
dragon.
conspiratorial register
He had
that
been
he
waiting
used when he was
in the way
performing
Aemon waited for
trustworthiness.
things.
Which
to
was,
hold a dragon
Ned
one
didn't
more time
know this
before
yet,
he
the
died.
register Baelish used when
He
the
had
truth
given up
being
the
offered
throne.
was real,
He had
but
given
the
up the name.
motivation for offering it was
He
not.
had given up the dynasty
Jon Arryn
and the
was
world
reading a
that the
specific
dynasty
book,
had built.
a
And had
genealogy,
become instead
the
the thing that
lineages
kept
of
the
the great
records
houses.
and trained the
He was
ravens
tracking the Baratheon
and was useful
bloodline.
in the specific way
Why?
of people
Because
who
the
understand
Baratheon
that
bloodline
use is a kind of
consistent.
love.
Black
He had
hair,
held Scaros.
blue eyes.
He died
in
3
every
weeks
generation.
after.
Every
Not
Baratheon
peacefully,
for
the Maester
300
said.
years.
The end was
Every
difficult,
legitimate
as the
Baratheon.
end was for all
Ned
people
looked at him.
when the body
The king's
stopped
children
cooperating
blonde,
before the mind
Baelish
was
said.
willing.
All three.
But not in pain.
Blonde hair.
The Maester was
green
precise
eyes,
about this,
Lannister
in the way
coloring,
Jon needed
not a
him to be
single
precise.
trait from their father's
Jon
line.
sat with the body after the Maester
The
left.
information landed.
Scaros came in.
In another
The
version
dragon
of
was
this
still
story,
small enough to navigate
this
the doorways
information
of the
arrived
old
mixed
quarter
with
of
the
Castle
crisis of
Black,
Bran's fall,
and he came
the
in and
dagger
he
of
sat beside the
Catelyn's journey
bed,
south,
and he looked
Tyrion's
at the old
arrest,
man
and
who
the
had held him
escalating
and said,
cascade
"Blood of my
emergencies
blood,"
that made
and had
every
gone.
piece of information feel urgent.
Jon sat on the floor.
And that produced the
He thought
specific
about Aemon
decision-making
Targaryen,
environment
who had been
when
offered
Ned
a throne and had turned
man
it
who was
down
good at thinking
because he
slowly
believed in a
and
thing
carefully,
called the
was
Night's
forced to
Watch,
think fast
and that thing
and
needed
recklessly.
someone to believe in it.
In this version,
He
the
thought about
information
96
arrived
years of believing in a
clean,
thing that the rest of the
without the
world was not
background noise of a
particularly
son
interested
in a
in,
coma,
and
and a
continuing
wife
to
in a
believe
panic.
in it anyway.
Ned received
He
the
thought,
information, and he did what he
"That's
should
what
have
I've been
done,
doing."
what he couldn't do
He thought,
in the other timeline.
I learned it
Because
from
the
the
other
wrong
timeline
teacher.
didn't give him the time.
He was a better
sat with
example
it.
than I
He sat
understood.
with it for 3 days.
He said,
During
he
those
knew
3
you were
days,
real.
He didn't arrest
He
anyone.
said it to Scaros.
He didn't confront anyone.
The dragon turned
he
to
didn't
look at
tell
him.
anyone what he was thinking.
Jon said, he held
He
you
sat in the
and
hands
said,
office,
"Blood of my blood."
and he read the book that
He was
Jon
saying,
Arryn had been.
"This
reading
is
the
what we are.
lineages and histories
This
of the great
is the
houses
actual
of the
physical
7
truth of what we are."
kingdoms, and he tracked
paused.
what Jon Arryn had
He'd
tracked.
given up everything except
and he
the
arrived
watch.
same conclusion.
And then at the
and
end,
he let the conclusion
he got to hold
settle
a dragon
into his
again.
understanding.
He was
The
quiet. He said,
Waystones settled into
"I'm going to
riverbeds,
try to be worth
slowly,
that."
thoroughly.
What he gave
with the
up.
specific gravity
Scaros
of
made the
something
resonant
heavy
sound.
finding its place.
Jon sat with the body for
The
a long
conclusion,
time. When he
Joffrey,
came out,
Myrcella,
Sam
and
was in
Tommen
the corridor.
were not Robert's children.
Sam said,
They were
"I'm
Jaime
sorry."
Lannisters
Jon said,
The
"He
Queen
was ready."
and her
Sam
brother.
said, "That doesn't make it."
Twins.
Jon said,
The
"I know."
specific abomination that the
He looked
faith
at the door.
condemned, and that the realm
He held the
would
watch
condemn,
together
and that was the most
for 60
dangerous
years.
secret in the 7
He
kingdoms.
trained Meisters and
Because
kept
the
records
secret's
and
exposure
answered questions
would delegitimize
and maintained
the
the
throne,
thing that was supposed to
and
be
the throne's
maintained when everyone else was
delegitimization
looking
would
south.
produce Ned could see
He
this,
paused.
could project
I'm
the
going to put that in the
consequences,
record,
the way he
not just his
projected
service,
military,
what he
the
actually
chain
did.
of events unspooling
Sam
from
said,
the reveal
"I can help
like
with
fire
that."
from a fused
Jon
war.
said, "I know you
Rebellion.
can."
The specific
started down the corridor.
catastrophic upheaval
"Come
that
on.
happened when the
There's work.
foundation of a government
There was
discovered
always
to be
work.
fraudulent.
He went to do
Ned
it. The
understood
growing,
the weight of
299 AC.
In another
Scaros
timeline,
grew.
this
Not the
understanding was
explosive growth of the
compromised by
legends.
urgency.
Not the overnight
The urgency
doubling that
of
made the
Bran.
old accounts feel like they
The
had been
urgency of
exaggerating,
Catelyn.
which Jon had
The urgency
suspected
of
they
a
were until he
situation
started
that was
measuring.
accelerating
The
faster
growth was
than
steady
Ned's
and
methodical
relentless
mind could
and
process.
consistent in the way of something that had
In
been
this
suppressed for a
timeline,
century
the
and was making
understanding
up for
was
lost time.
Not uncompromised.
3 months after hatching, the
Nothing
size of a
King's
horse.
Landing was uncompromised.
6 months after hatching,
but
larger.
less compromised.
A year after hatching,
Cleaner.
the largest living thing at Castle
Ned
Black
had
by
time
a
to
significant
sit with the
margin,
weight and
sleeping in the
decide
yard
what to do
because he no longer fit in
rather
any
than
room,
being forced
and because
to act
sleeping in the
before
yard
deciding
had the
it was done.
advantage that he warmed the
decided to do
surrounding
something
area
he had
in a way
never
that the
done before.
brothers found they
He
didn't mind.
decided to be
The
political.
cold beyond the wall was getting worse. The cold within the wall was getting better.
Ned's investigation
Nobody acknowledged acknowledged the irony except Sam. Who was Sam? Jon flew for the first time in the 4th month. He didn't plan it. He was in the yard doing the thing he'd been doing every morning, standing near Scaros, maintaining the bond the way you maintained anything, through presence and attention and the specific effort of being fully where you were, when the dragon simply spread his wings, and Jon, without deciding to, put his hands on the base of the neck and found a position that was the position, the one the body had apparently been waiting to find, and Scaros took 3 steps, and they were in the air. He thought, ascending.
The Baratheon jaw.
This is what it's like to be wrong about everything you thought your life was.
15.
The wall from above was not the wall from below. From below, it was the fact that defined the north.
Ned looked
The
at
vertical
Gendry.
reality that
He
said,
looked at Joffrey.
here is the edge of the
Comparison
world.
was
From above, it was a line across a landscape that went on in every direction without apparent limit. And the line was in itself remarkable. 8,000 years of human intention made physical, visible from the sky as exactly what it was, which was the accumulated effort of people who believed the world required protecting.
and everything in it.
He flew
was
along the
Lannister.
wall to the east.
And the difference
He
between
flew over the
Gendry's
haunted
face
forest.
and Joffrey's face.
He looked
was the
north.
difference between a legitimate
The
heir
cold was
and
visible
a
from
fraudulent
above in a
one.
way it wasn't from the ground.
Ned went to the other
Not the
bastards.
ambient cold of winter,
Three of them,
but the
that he could
directional
find in
cold,
King's
the
Landing.
cold with a source.
Gendry, a girl
He
named
could see
Barra,
where the source was.
infant, dark hair,
Not precisely,
blue
not a
eyes,
specific
and
point,
a boy of 6,
but a direction
whose mother
and a quality
was
of the
woman
air that
in
said,
flea bottom.
there.
Every
That
one
way.
of them had Robert's
That is
colour.
where the thing is building.
Every one of them had the Baratheon
Scaros
features.
made the resonant
None
sound.
of Robert's
John
acknowledged
thought,
children did.
this is the
The
reconnaissance
evidence
no
was
ranger
not
could do.
legal proof.
This is the view the
evidence
watch
was
has
pattern.
never had. He
The
spent
kind of
3
pattern
hours
that
in the
Ned
air.
understood,
He
because
came
patterns
back with more
were what
information about the
military
threat
intelligence
north of
was
the
built
wall
on.
than 30
Enough
years of
data
ground-based
to suggest
ranging
a
had produced.
conclusion.
He held a
Not
briefing
enough to
that evening
guarantee
with
it.
the senior rangers
In a
and
court of
Eamon
law,
and Sam,
the
and
evidence
he laid
would be
out what he'd
challenged.
seen.
In
He
a
said,
political
the
conversation,
cold front
the
is
evidence
20
was
miles further
overwhelming.
south than the last
Ned
report.
needed allies.
It's moving faster.
This was
Ranger
the hard
Dolorous
part
Ed
that
said,
required
of
Ned
course
to
it
do the
is.
thing that Ned was
Everything
worst
gets
at,
worse.
which was
John said,
trust people
it's
he didn't
organized.
know.
The
For
direction
reasons
is
he couldn't
consistent.
verify.
This isn't weather.
Northern Honor
This is
did
something
not
with a
prepare
trajectory.
for the specific
Another
challenge
ranger
of building
said,
alliances
"The
in
Night
a
King."
city where
John
everyone's
said,
loyalty was
"Yes."
conditional,
The room
and where the
was quiet.
conditions were invisible
He said,
until you triggered them.
We have time.
He didn't go to Baelish.
I don't know how much.
This was the
Months.
critical decision.
Maybe less than a year.
In another timeline,
He looked
in
at
the
them.
timeline where
The
Bran
response
fell
we can
and
mount
Catelyn
from
came
Castle
south,
Black with
and
600
Catelyn's
men
childhood
is not the
connection to
response this
Littlefinger
requires.
produced the
The
specific
response this
misplaced
requires
trust that
is the
led
realm.
to the disaster Ned
All of
went
it.
to Baelish.
He
Because
paused.
Catelyn told him to.
Which means we need someone who
In
can
this
get the
timeline,
realm moving.
Catelyn was in Winterfell.
Sam said carefully.
Catelyn's trust in
Someone.
Baelish was not present
John
to
said,
override Ned's
we need to
instinct.
reach
And Ned's
Daenerys
instinct
Targaryen.
said, this man smiles
Dragonstone.
too easily.
The
And
letter.
smiling.
300 AC. He wrote the
Ned
letter
went to
himself.
Stannis. Not to
through
Stannis
Varys,
directly, to
through the
Stannis'
chain of
representative
contacts
in
that
King's
Eamon had
Landing.
maintained over
Because
96
Stannis
years
himself
of being a
left the
Meister
city
who
months
paid
ago,
attention to where
withdrawn
things
to
were.
Dragonstone
One of those
with a
contacts
specific
knew a man in
Stannis
Old
gesture
Town
of
who knew a
departure
captain
that was
who
both
ran a route to
strategic
Bravos
retreat
and who, for
moral
the right
statement.
payment, would carry a letter
Stannis
further than
left
Bravos.
because Jon Arryn
The
was
letter
dead.
said,
And
Your
because
Grace,
Stannis knew what
my
Jon
name
Arryn
is
had
Jon
discovered.
Snow.
And because
I am the
Stannis'
Lord Commander
response
of
to
the
knowing
Night's
dangerous
Watch.
truth
I
was to
am
lead
also,
to
by
proximity
blood,
of the danger
Aegon
rather than manage
Targaryen,
it,
the
which was
son
the
of
specific
Rhaegar
Stannis'
Targaryen
approach to
and
problems.
Lyanna Stark,
Correct in
born
principle,
at the Tower of
useless
Joy in Dawn.
practice.
I have
The
known this for
representative
3 years.
was a knight,
I have
Davos
chosen to keep
Seaworth,
the name I was given,
the
and the
onion,
life I
a
chose,
former smuggler,
and the post
who had
I
been
hold.
knighted by Stannis for
7
running an
months ago,
onion ship
I found a
through
dragon
siege,
egg in the mountains
and who had lost
east of the
half his
fist of
fingers
the
for
first
smiling
men
that made
beyond the
running
wall.
possible.
6 months
Because
ago,
Stannis
it hatched.
was the kind of man
The dragon
who
is
rewarded
alive and growing
punished the
and
same
bonded to
act,
me in the way
and
that
who found
history
no
is described.
contradiction in doing both.
His name is Scaros.
Davos was
I am
Ned
not
read him
writing to you
immediately,
about the succession.
which was rare in
I
King's
am
Landing
writing to
honesty.
you about the dead.
Not the practice
The Night
performance
King
of
is
honesty
real.
that courtiers
The army
deployed.
of the dead is
Not
real.
the strategic
cold that
deployment
is
of
moving
apparent
south is
candor.
not weather. It is
Honest.
organized. It has a
The real
direction.
thing.
It will reach the wall within
A man
the year.
whose face matches
Dragonfire
words,
is
because
one of the two
face
things
and
the accounts
words
say
came
can
from the
stop
same
the Night
place.
King himself. I have
Lord
one
Arryn
dragon,
knew,
and you have
Davos
3.
said.
And neither of us
About the
alone
Queen's
is adequate to
children.
what is coming.
Stannis
I am
knows.
asking for a
Stannis
meeting.
was known for months.
Not
He
negotiation.
left the city
Not a
because
political
knowing
discussion.
being in
A
the
meeting
city
between
was
2
Lord
people
Stannis
with the
has a
same blood
specific
and the
approach to
same
risk.
fire, who need to
The
decide
approach being
together what
lead.
to do about the same
The
threat.
approach being
I have
remove
enclosed the
himself
ranging
from a
reports from the
situation where
past
knowledge
30
is
years.
actionable,
All
and
of
where
them.
acting on it will
Unedited.
produce
Read them.
consequences he can't
Then
control.
decide. Jon
Davos
Snow,
looked at Ned
Lord
with the
Commander
assessment
of
a
the
man
Night's
who had
Watch.
spent his life
He
evaluating
sent
whether
the letter.
other men could be
He
trusted.
didn't know if
and
it
who
would
had
reach
developed
her.
the skill through
He
the
spent the
specific
time while
education
waiting
of the
doing the
smuggling
things
trade,
that needed
where
doing.
trusting the wrong
Ranging,
person got you
training.
killed.
The distribution of dragon glass that had been mined at Dragonstone, and that Sam had arranged through a contact that Sam wouldn't explain, but that Jon had stopped examining. He flew Scaros in the mornings along the wall. The dead were getting closer. Essos.
I'm going to figure out what acting on
Daenerys reads it. She read the letter 3
than I
times.
expected from a star.
Then she read the ranging
I've had time
report.
to think. Time to
They
think
took
is
2
unusual.
days.
In this
She read
system,
them with the attention she brought to
I know.
things that required
I'm using
deciding,
it before it runs out.
which was the same attention she
Ned
brought to
wrote to
everything but
Stannis.
more concentrated.
A
The
direct
specific
letter
quality of
sealed,
sitting very
sent
still
by Ryder
with
rather than
information
Raven,
and
because
following
ravens
it
could be
wherever it led
intercepted,
without
and the
managing
information
where
in
she
this
wanted
letter
it to
was the
go.
most dangerous
She
information
put the
in the
last
Seven
report
Kingdoms.
down.
The letter said,
She sat for
I
a
have
while.
verified what Jon Arryn found.
Tyrion, who had
I
been
intend
watching
to
her
act.
from the corner of the room
I
with
need
the
your
expression
support.
of a man who was
Come to
waiting to
King's
hear
Landing.
what he already suspected,
Not with an army,
said,
with your presence.
"Well,"
as Robert's legitimate heir,
she
your
said,
presence changes the
"the
political
Night King is
calculation."
real." He
Stannis
said,
wrote back.
based on
The reply
30
was
years
Stannis,
of reports from
terse,
men who have nothing to
unambiguous,
gain from
carrying
inventing
the
it.
specific Stannis
Yes.
quality of stripping
I think we
every
have to take that
communication
position,
to its essential
she said.
components and discarding
He has a dragon,
the rest
Tyrion
as
said.
wasteful.
An interesting development,
Coming.
she said.
2
A
weeks.
Targaryen with a dragon in
Nothing
Westeros
before I
already.
arrive. Ned
said.
did nothing.
You're not the
For 2
last
weeks,
Targaryen,
Ned Stark,
which is either
the
very
most
good or very
impatient man
complicated
in a patient
depending on
man's
how you
body,
look at it.
did nothing.
She said,
He attended
He's
the small
Rhaegar's
council
son,
meetings. He
by a
managed the
Stark
governance.
mother,
He dealt
who
with the
survived,
budget,
apparently,
which was a catastrophe.
which is,
6 million gold
the
dragons
histories say
owed to the
otherwise.
Lannisters and
The histories
Iron
are
Bank.
wrong.
The specific
poured wine,
financial architecture,
or were written
of a
by
kingdom
people
that
who
had been
didn't know what
spending
happened in
more
a
than
tower
it
in
earned for
Dawn.
15 years.
She
And
said.
it was approximately 2
He
bad
could be lying.
harvests from insolvency.
Tyrion said.
He endured
He could be.
Cersei's presence at
The
court.
dragon bonded to him
required
suggests
looking at a
otherwise.
woman he now knew
The
was
histories are
committing
very
incest
clear
and
that the
treason,
bond doesn't work with
performing
fraud.
normalcy with the specific
said.
grinding effort.
He says
that
he
only
doesn't
Ned
want the
Stark
throne.
would have found exhausting. Because
Tyrion
only Ned
said.
Stark would have found the
People
performing
say
more
many
difficult
things.
than the knowing.
She looked at
He
him.
watched Jaime
He
Lannister.
said, I'm not
Now
saying
that he
he's
knew,
lying.
the knowing
I'm
changed
saying that what he
saw.
says he wants and what the
Jaime
situation
in the throne room,
produces may be
the
different
Kingslayer,
things regardless of his
golden,
intentions.
Standing
He
in his
held her
white
gaze.
armor with the specific
He has a dragon.
beautiful arrogance of a
He has a
man who had been
Targaryen
the
blood
best at
claim that
everything his
supersedes
whole life,
yours by birth
and who
order.
had never had to develop
He has been at the
social
wall
skills
keeping the
that
realm
lesser
safe
men
while you've
developed
been in
to
Essos
compensate
building
for
an
lesser
army.
abilities.
He paused.
Jaime
If he
looked
wanted
at
to
Cersei.
use that, he could.
The
She said.
looking was...
He's asking for a meeting.
Ned could see it now.
Yes.
The look
Not
was
demanding.
not the look a brother
Asking.
gave a sister.
Also,
but the
yes.
look a man gave a woman
Tyrion
he
looked
was
at his
involved
cup.
with.
The ranging
Specific
reports are
eating
real.
quality that
I've
was
had people
invisible
in
if you
King's
weren't
Landing
looking
who've
for it,
known about the
and
watch
obvious
reports for
if you
years
were.
and have been managing the
Ned
information
looked away.
rather than acting on it.
He waited
Everything
for
in what he
Stannis.
sent matches what I've seen suppressed. He paused.
Catelyn.
The dead are real,
Winterfell
and they're coming
without
south,
crisis.
and he has a point that neither of you alone is
298
adequate.
AC.
She was quiet. She said,
In Winterfell,
What do you want me to do?
Captain Stark was managing
He said,
the household.
I want you
not
to meet
a
him.
crisis.
In person,
Household.
not by
The
letter.
distinction was
Read the room.
in another
Understand
version
what
of
he
this
is
story,
before you decide
Catelyn
what
was
to do with
managing
him.
a comatose child.
He
and the
paused.
specific, catastrophic
He's the Lord
aftermath
Commander of the
an
Night's Watch,
assassination
who has been
attempt,
keeping
and
the
the
wall
rage
since
and the
before you
fear
left
and
Essos.
the journey
He's
itself
Rhaegar's
that
son
the
with a
rage
dragon.
and fear produced.
He's asking for help
In
with
this
the dead.
version, Catelyn
He
was
looked at
managing
her.
supply orders
Those three
and
things
service
together
schedules
are worth
and the
a meeting.
education of 5
She said.
children who were,
Where?
with the exception of
Tyrion
Arya,
said.
who was always
Somewhere he can get to,
progressing
and
through
you can get to,
childhood at the expense
without
of
either of
Raven.
you having the tactical
Bran was
advantage.
fine.
He thought,
He was climbing,
Dragonstone.
which she hated.
neutral
He was eating,
in the sense
which
that
she
it's yours,
appreciated.
which gives
He
you
was
the
attending
advantage.
lessons with Maester
But he's the
Lewin,
one
which he
crossing
found
the
boring,
sea,
and training
which gives
in the
him the
yard with Sir
vulnerability.
Roderick, which he
He
loved.
paused.
He was
Or he
being
can offer a
severed.
location.
The only
She said.
unusual thing was
I'll
the
write
Godswood.
back.
Bran had
She
started
wrote
going to
back.
the Godswood every morning.
She said,
Not with Ned
Lord
and Sam.
Commander,
Not with anyone.
I've read the reports.
Alone.
I'll meet you
a
at
7-year-old
Dragonstone.
boy walking
You have
into the
4
old
weeks.
God's forest before breakfast.
Come alone
and
except for
standing in
necessary
front of the
company.
heart tree for
Bring
Catelyn.
your dragon.
Had timed it between
Daenerys
20 minutes
Targaryen,
and an
Castle
hour.
Black.
She asked about
The
it.
night before sailing.
What do you do in the
300 AC.
I sit.
Sam came to him the night before
With
he
the tree.
sailed.
Why?
Not for a specific reason,
Hit Bran's
or
face
not
did
for
the
one
thing
he
that
named.
children's faces
He
do when they were
arrived at the
trying to
Lord
describe
Commander's
something they
quarters
didn't
with
have
2
words
cups
for.
and a look on his
The
face
scrunching.
that Jon had learned
The
to read
surging.
as,
It's
I've been
calm,
thinking
then.
about something for a
The
long
tree
time,
is calm.
and I've decided to
Trees
say
are
it."
generally calm, Bran. They don't
Jon
move.
let him in.
This one
Sam
does.
sat down.
Not moving.
He looked
moving.
at Scaros,
More
who
like
had taken to
listening.
sleeping in a coil in the corner
Catelyn
of the
looked at her
quarters,
son.
which was possible
She
now
was
only
tumbled.
because Scaros
She-
still fit
What
and would
if
not
Bran
fit for much
Stark
longer.
never fell from the
He said.
tower? A Throne Tale
The letter
script.
you sent
Full story.
to Daenerys Targaryen. Jon said, yes.
What if Bran Stark
Sam
didn't
said.
climb that day?
You enclosed 30
Not
years
because
of
he
ranging
stopped
reports.
climbing.
Jon
Not
said,
because he learned
yes.
caution dragon, or
Sam
developed
said.
a sudden respect
You didn't
for
lead
gravity,
with who you are,
or listened to his
Jon
mother,
said.
who had been
I
telling him
led
to
with
stop
what matters.
climbing since he was old
Sam
enough
was
to reach a
quiet for a
handhold.
moment. He turned this
Bran
over.
Stark at 7
He said,
was a boy made of momentum.
I've been thinking about
the kind
what
of
you are.
child who saw a vertical
Jon
surface
said,
and felt
That's a
pull,
large subject.
the way sailors felt
Sam
the
said,
pull of the horizon.
You're the Lord
The
Commander of the
specific,
Night's
irresistible
Watch,
attraction
and you're
of
Rhaegar's
someone
son,
whose
and you
body
have a
understood
dragon.
something his
He
mind
looked at the
hadn't caught
fire.
up to.
Those three
climbed
things
everything.
are separately enormous.
The walls,
Together,
the
they're-
towers,
He searched
broken
for the
tower
word.
with the gargoyles that his mother had
Unprecedented.
specifically,
Jon
repeatedly,
said.
with
I know.
increasing volume and
Sam said.
increasing patience.
And you keep
told him
treating
not
each
to
of them
climb.
separately.
He
The Lord
climbed
Commander
because
is the
climbing
Lord
was what
Commander.
His body wanted.
The blood
Because
claim
the
is
view
the
from
blood claim.
top was
The dragon
Bran
is the
couldn't
dragon.
explain it to anyone.
He looked at
not
Jon.
his mother.
You
not
haven't
his
let them
father,
become a
not
single
even
thing.
Jon, who came closest
Jon
to
said.
understanding.
What would a
The view
single
from the
thing
top
look like?
made the world make sense.
Sam said.
From the ground,
The king with the dragon
Winterfell was
coming to claim his
corridors and
throne.
rooms, and the specific
He held
confined
Jon's
geography of
gaze.
the child's world.
That's what anyone else
From the
in your
rooftops,
position would be doing.
Winterfell was a map.
That's the story
The whole
the
thing
blood and the
visible
dragon
at once.
tell if you put them
The
together.
connections between the parts,
Jon said.
the shape.
It's
of
not
place.
the story I'm telling.
He almost climbed on that
Sam
Tuesday.
said. I know.
The king was coming. The
He
whole
looked at the
castle
cup.
was in motion. The
I just want to
specific,
make sure you
organized
know that
chaos of
too.
a household preparing for
That
a
you're
royal
choosing
visit.
it.
The
Not
cleaning
just
and
drifting
cooking
toward
and
it because
grooming
the
of
dead are
horses
the
and
most
children
immediate
that
problem.
happened when the most powerful
Jon
man
looked
in
at
the
his
realm
friend.
was expected.
He said,
Bran had
I
been
grew up
told
in this
to wash
castle.
and dress.
I
and
grew
present
up as
himself
Ned
in the
Stark's
courtyard,
bastard
and not to
in the
climb,
household of a
and not
man
to get
who was
dirty,
everything a
and
lord
not to
should be,
disappear
and who
into
died
the
for it.
upper reaches of the
I
castle,
watched the
where
north, and
nobody
I
could
watched the
find him.
wall, and I read the reports,
almost
and when I
climbed
became
anyway.
Lord Commander, I
The
understood
broken
for the
tower
first
was
time
calling
that
him.
what the watch was
Not
doing
literally,
was the most
not yet,
important
it would
thing
come later.
anyone was doing,
But
and
in
that
the
no
way
one
that
was paying
heights call
attention.
to Bran,
He
the
paused.
magnetic pull
He
of
said,
the vertical.
Rhaegar believed in
But
a
his
prophecy.
mother caught him.
He arranged his whole life
Not at
around
the
the
tower.
belief. He hurt people
In the
for it.
courtyard.
He might also have been right
Halfway
about
to
it.
the broken tower.
The dead are
Boots
real.
muddy from
The
the
Night
shortcut
King was
through the
real.
Godswood.
Something
Heading for the
needed
old
to be
stones
done.
with the specific
He held
purposeful
Sam's
stride
gaze.
of a 7-year-old.
But the
who had
prophecy
decided where
was
he
about
going, who
fire
hadn't
and the
considered
prince
that the
and the
route was
singular
monitored.
answer. It wasn't
Bran.
about this.
He stopped.
He gestured at the castle around them.
Catelyn stood in the door
It wasn't
of the
about
great
600
hall.
men in
She
three-man
had the expression
castles
she
doing the
had when she
specific
caught him
unglamorous
climbing
work
before.
of keeping the world
Not angry,
safe from something the
exactly.
world didn't believe in.
Tired. The
Sam said,
specific maternal
"The watch."
exhaustion of a woman
Jon
who had
said,
told a child
"The
the
watch."
same thing 400
Yes.
times, and who was reaching the
He
point
looked at the
where
fire.
the telling was becoming a performance
What I
rather
am
than an
is the person who belongs to the watch.
I
The
wasn't going
blood
to
and the
climb.
dragon are in service of that,
You were heading for the
not
broken
the other way
tower.
around. Sam was
I was going
quiet
to
for a long
look at it.
time.
You were going
said,
to look at it from the top.
She's going to have opinions
I
about
couldn't
that.
argue this because
Jon
she
said,
was right.
Daenerys.
Lying to his mother was
Sam
something
said,
Bran hadn't learned.
She's
yet.
been building toward the throne her whole
That
life.
skill came later.
She has an army
With
and 3
adolescence,
dragons,
specific
and a plan that
developmental
involves
milestone
ruling the realm.
of discovering that
You're going to
Bran's
arrive
grown
and
up.
tell her the dead are the important
Come
thing,
inside.
and the throne is
Your
secondary.
father wants you cleaned up
Jon
before
said.
King Robert arrives.
Yes,
Bran.
Sam said. And?
He washed.
Jon said.
He dressed.
And she's going to disagree with me
He
at
stood in the
first because the
courtyard
throne
with his
is not
brothers and
secondary to
sisters
her.
and waited for
It's the
the king.
thing she's been building toward.
He did not climb
And
the
then
broken tower.
she's going to read
He
30
did not
years
see
of ranging
what's happening
reports,
inside
and she's
the broken
going to
tower.
understand that I'm right,
He did not
and the
fall.
throne is secondary to the
This
specific
is the
thing that's
story of
coming.
what that one
Sam
unfolded
said,
moment.
"You're very confident
The
about
moment
that."
where Catelyn's time
Jon
was
said,
Bran's route,
"I'm
and the
confident that she's
specific
intelligent
geometry
and that
of
the
mother's
reports are
intention
convincing."
intersecting a child's
He paused.
trajectory.
Everything else I'm holding loosely,
Not the grand sweep of it.
Sam said.
Not the
What's
armies
everything
and
else?
thrones that would
Jon
come
said.
later.
What she's like
The
in
moment.
person. Whether the plan works. Whether I can actually get the realm moving in time.
Boy didn't climb a
He looked
tower
at Sam.
as his mother.
Whether the Night King is where the ranging reports say he is, or whether he's moved again. Sam said. The usual things. Jon
King's
said.
arrival.
The usual things.
298 AC.
He looked at the fire. The watch
Robert
will be in
Baratheon
good hands
came
with Ed.
through the gates of Winterfell
Sam said.
and the castle.
Ed is
held its
competent.
breath.
Jon said.
Not metaphorically.
Ed is
literally.
more than
A
competent.
specific collective
He's the
inhalation
person who
of
does what needs
500
doing
people
without being
who had
asked,
never seen a
and
king,
without
and
expecting
who had been
recognition
told
for
their
it.
entire lives
He
that
looked at
kings
Sam.
were large and
Like
golden
you.
and magnificent.
Sam said.
Robert
I'm not
Baratheon
going to respond
was
to that.
large. He was
Jon
not
said.
golden.
Because
He
it
was not
embarrasses you.
magnificent. He was a
Sam
man
said.
who had been drinking for
Because it's
15
manipulative,
years,
and
whose
I know
body
you're
had been
manipulating
converting
me into
muscle to
staying while
fat
you sail
at the
south.
specific rate that
He
happened
held
when
Jon's
a warrior
gaze.
stopped warring
I should
and
go with
started
you.
sitting, and the
Jon
conversion
said.
was visible in
Someone
every
needs
line
to
of him,
stay
the belly,
who knows the
red
reports from
face.
inside.
The
Who
armor
can
that
brief the
didn't
northern
fit the way
lords
it had
when they
the
arrive?
armor was made.
Who can explain the
Bran stood
pattern
in the
to people who
courtyard
haven't
line
been
between
reading
Arya
it for
and
years?
Rickon, and watched the king
Sam said.
dismount and
That's
embrace
me.
his father
Jon
with
said.
a bone
That's
crushing
you.
enthusiasm
paused.
of a man who
I need
loved
you
his
here,
friends
Sam.
the way he loved his wine.
Not because I can't manage without you,
Physically, without
though
subtlety.
the last year would have been
You got
significantly
fat,
worse without you.
Ned said.
Because the
Robert
watch
looked at
needs
him.
someone who believes in
Looked
it
down
when
at
I'm not
himself.
here.
Looked at Ned.
Sam was quiet.
Ned didn't smile.
He said,
Then did.
"You're going
a
to
slow,
come back."
stark smile that was worth more for
Jon
being
said.
rare.
"Yes."
Robert laughed. The
Sam
sound
said.
filled the courtyard.
You're going to
as
deal with the
acoustic
dead
overflow
and come
of the
back,
large man's
and the watch
laughter
is
in
going
the
to be
enclosed
properly
space.
funded and properly
The
staffed,
tension broke.
and all the things that
The
you've been
household
working
breathed.
toward are going to happen.
Bran watched.
Jon said.
He
That's
watched
the plan.
king, and he
Sam
watched the
said.
queen Cersei
It's a good
Lannister,
plan.
golden,
Jon said.
beautiful in the
It's
way
a realistic
that
plan.
expensive things were
Those are
beautiful.
different. Sam
With the
looked at the
specific
fire.
polished
He
surface
said,
that money and
I'm
power
afraid,
produced,
Jon said.
and that warmth
I know.
had nothing to do with.
Sam said. Not
She
about
looked
the
at
dead.
Winterfell the way
About you.
someone looked at a place
He
they'd
looked at
been
Jon.
sent to against their will.
You go toward
and that
things
they
that should
intended
kill
to
you,
endure
and they
rather
don't
than
kill you.
inhabit.
And eventually the
He watched
probability
Tiny
catches up.
Lannister, the Kingslayer,
Jon
golden
said.
too,
I've
the
been
same
dead once.
gold as his sister.
I'm not interested in repeating it.
Standing in the courtyard
Sam
with his
said.
Kingsguard armor,
That's not
and the
reassuring.
expression of a
Jon
man
said.
who found the North
I know.
personally offensive.
He stood.
and who was performing
He
tolerance.
put his hand on Sam's
He
shoulder.
watched Tyrion Lannister,
Keep the records.
who was short,
Keep the
and who was
reports
drinking
current.
already.
Keep
and who
Ed
looked at
informed of
Winterfell
everything,
with a
and make sure he
specific
reads
assessment
every
of a man
ranging
who
dispatch
processed every
before he
war
acts on
as a
anything.
text to be read, and who had
Sam
opinions
said.
about the fight.
I know. Jon said. And write to
He
me.
watched Joffrey.
Tell me
the
what
Crown
you
Prince,
see from here.
Blonde.
I'll be
12,
making
with a
decisions about
face
the
that
ranging
Bran
patterns
couldn't
from a
read,
long way
because
away,
the face
and I
was
need
doing
your
something
eyes.
He didn't have a
Sam
word
said.
for yet.
I'll write.
Not kindness.
Jon said. Good.
Not cruelty.
He went to the door.
The specific
Get some sleep.
blankness of a child.
The
who had
morning
learned
comes
to
early,
perform an
and the Northern
emotion
Lords
rather
start
than
arriving
feel
in
it,
2 days.
and whose performance
Sam
was
said.
convincing
Jon.
to adults and
Jon
transparent
stopped.
to children.
Sam said. He'd be proud.
Bran watched all
Ned.
of this from the
He
ground.
spent
From
15
the
years
ground,
carrying the
view was
secret,
different.
and the specific thing he was carrying
From
it
the
for
rooftops,
is
he
going to
saw
go
the
stop the
patterns, the
Night
way
King.
people moved.
He paused.
The architecture
He'd have been
of their
proud.
relationships visible
Jon held
in the
the door.
architecture of their
He
position.
said. I know.
From the ground,
He went.
you saw the faces,
The crossing.
the
Jon at sea.
details, the
300
specific
AC.
human information.
He left the
that
watch
distance
in Ed's
obscured.
hands.
He
Not
didn't
officially.
know that he was
The
developing
Night's
a
Watch
skill.
did not formally lend authority
know
in
that
the way of
watching the
lords'
ground level
households,
watching,
and the
the
specific
face reading,
bureaucratic requirements
specific
of a
talent
Lord
for
Commander
seeing what
taking
people were
temporary
doing
leave
behind
were
what
not
they were
well
performing.
documented, because
Was the
Lord
thing that
Commanders
was going to
generally
replace
didn't.
the climbing.
He left Ed in practical
was
command
7.
with Sam as counsel
watched.
and 3 sets of
The feast
instructions.
that night was
Watch the
feast
cold
that
front.
Winterfell
Send
always
ravens
produced
if
for
anything
important
moved.
Visitors.
Don't tell the
specific
crown what was
northern
happening until Jon had a chance
that
to tell them
expressed
himself.
itself through volume
Ed had
rather
looked
than
at him
elegance.
and said,
The tables
You're going to
groaning
meet the
with
Dragon
food
Queen.
that was hearty and filling,
Jon said.
and that communicated,
Yes.
without words,
Ed
that
said.
the North took care
With
of
your
its
dragon.
guests, even if the North
Jon said.
didn't decorate its
I'm
table.
not leaving Scaros at
Bran
the wall.
sat with his siblings.
Ed
He
looked
watched
at the
high
dragon,
table,
which was
watched
now
his father
large
and
enough
the
to
king
require
drink and
specific
talk.
logistics
The
for
specific
anything
physical
involving walls
vocabulary
or
of two
doorways.
men who had been
He
friends
said,
for 20 years.
Good luck at sea.
And who communicated through
Scaros
shoulder
at sea
slaps
was its
and
own
raised
challenge.
cups, and
The
the
ship
occasional
captain,
burst of
a man
laughter
from White
that was too
Harbour,
loud
who had been
and too
recommended
real,
by a contact
and
of
that the rest
Sam's,
of the hall
and who had sailed
pretended
stranger
not to notice.
cargoes than this. Took
He
one
watched
look
his
at
mother,
Scaros
watched
and went through a
Catherine
visible
sit beside
process
the
of
queen,
professional
and managed the
recalibration.
specific
He
social
said,
challenge
The
of
dragon
entertaining
flies
a woman
alongside.
who found the North
Jon said
beneath,
yes.
and who
He said
communicated
it won't.
the findings
Jon
through
said
the precise
he won't eat
calibration
anything.
of her attention,
Or anyone.
giving enough
The
to
captain
avoid
said,
insult, and not
"Right."
enough to suggest genuine
Scaros
interest.
flew alongside the ship for the first 2 days, and then,
watched Sansa,
seemingly out of
11,
curiosity or boredom or both,
performing the
flew ahead
specific
and waited at a point on the
study of
horizon
court
for them to
visitors
catch up,
for social
which he did
information,
3 times, before
cataloguing
apparently
the clothing
concluding
and
that
the
ships were
manners
too
and the
slow to be
accents,
interesting
the
and taking a
intensity
route of his
girl
own devising.
intended to live in that world,
Jon stood at
who
the
was
stern
beginning
and
the
watched him
preparation.
disappear and reappear.
He watched Arya.
He thought about the
at
wall
night,
behind him.
not performing
He thought
anything,
about what he was
eating
sailing
with her
toward.
fingers when she
He had been the
thought
Lord
nobody was
Commander of the
looking and
Night's
being
Watch
caught by
for a year
Sansa
and 2 months.
and being corrected.
He had been managing the
Not caring
watch
about
and the
correction,
wall and the
but
dead and the
specific
political
Arya
fallout
energy
of being a
that was not
Targaryen with a
rebellion,
dragon.
but simply the
He had been doing all of it
constitutional
with the
inability to
specific,
pretend.
focused competence of someone who had
watched
decided
Jon.
that competence was the answer to everything, because everything
Side
else,
table,
the blood,
not at the
the
high
name,
table,
the claim,
expression that
what it
Jon
meant that
wore,
Rhaegar Targaryen had arranged for
which was
him to
the
exist,
expression of
was
someone
too
who was
large to
present
address,
and
and
excluded
competence was manageable.
simultaneously, and
Sailing
who learned
toward
to manage
Daenerys
the exclusion
Targaryen, who was
by
his
going
father's
somewhere
sister
inside
and the
himself.
living embodiment of the
Exclusion
dynasty
could
he'd been born into and had never
Bran
asked to be
saw
born
all this
into.
because
It
Bran
occurred to
was
him
7,
that he had been
and
doing
7-year-olds
competence
saw
as a
things
way
that
of not
adults
doing the
missed,
other thing.
because adults were
He
busy
sat on the stern
performing,
with
and
the sea around him
7-year-olds were
and
busy
ghosts desk beside him, and he thought about what the other thing was. The other thing was
He didn't understand
figuring out what he actually wanted. Not the watch, not the battle against the dead, not the specific tactical problems that had filled every day for years. What he wanted from the life he apparently had, which was longer and stranger and more full of impossible things than the life he'd originally planned. He didn't come to a conclusion. He thought, I'm going to meet her, and that meeting will produce the next thing to figure out, and I'll figure it out then. He thought, that is not the answer. He thought, it's the best I have right now.
when the
Scaros appeared from the south, having apparently surveyed whatever he'd wanted to survey, and landed on the prow of the ship. The captain's second did a full rotation toward the railing, and then steadied himself with professional effort. Jon watched the dragon settle. He thought, "At least I know what he wants." He's incurious about almost everything, and intensely curious about the specific direction of the fire. The cold. He orients to the cold the way a compass orients to north.
Through the specific dream
He
logic
thought,
that operated by
"We're the
different
same
rules
that
than
way."
waking logic, and that was,
Dragonstone.
in its own way, more
The
reliable.
arrival.
Normal
He had been to
dreams felt like
Dragonstone in his reading only,
This dream
which meant he had the
felt like
facts
seeing.
and not the
The
experience.
crow was large.
The facts.
Larger than any
Volcanic
crow Bran
island.
had seen.
Ancient Targaryen
Three eyes
fortress.
too,
The
where eyes
specific
belong,
atmosphere
and one
of
in
a
the
place
center of
built
the
by
forehead.
people who understood
Open,
fire
seeing.
as both weapon
The
and
specific
heritage.
focused gaze of a
The
creature
castle
that
was not
a
designed to
creature,
make
but a
visitors
Bran didn't
comfortable.
have the word.
It was designed to make them
messenger.
understand where they were.
A door.
The
A
experience,
thing that was shaped like
sailing
a bird,
toward it in
and that
early
contained
morning,
something
with the
that was
volcanic
not
rock
bird-shaped.
rising dark against the
The
lighter
crow
sky,
said, "You
and
must learn
Scaros
to
circling
fly."
overhead, and the specific
Bran said,
quality of the air,
"I can't
which was
fly.
different from the air
I'm
anywhere
not a
else
bird."
he'd been.
The crow said,
warmer
"Not
and
with
sharper,
wings, with
like the
eyes."
island itself breathed
The dream
differently.
ended. Bran woke
He
up.
arrived at the harbour.
The room was dark.
He
Winterfell
expected
at
a
night,
delegation,
the sound of the hot springs,
a steward,
the distant
perhaps,
sound of the
or
night
one of her
watch,
advisors.
the specific acoustic
He got
signature
3
of the
dragons.
castle that
2
had
of
been
them were
standing
airborne,
for 8,000
the enormous
years,
dark
and
one
that
and a
produced
second,
its own
green
kind
and
of
bronze,
silence,
circling the
which
harbour
was
at
not
height.
the absence of sound,
The third
but
sat
the
at the dock's
accumulation
end.
of 8,000
He didn't
years
know
of
at
sound,
first that
layered
the
so
woman on the
thick
dock
they'd become
was
a texture.
Daenerys Targaryen.
Bran lay in
She
bed
was dressed
and
plainly,
thought about the
and she was standing at the dock's edge,
3 eyes.
with her arms at
He
her
thought,
side, and she
"Fly
was
with
watching
eyes."
him come in with the
He
full
thought,
attention of someone who
doesn't
is
make
doing
sense.
nothing except
He went back
watching.
to sleep.
Then
The
he
dream
saw the
came
silver
again the
hair
next
and the
night.
violet eyes
And the
that the
night
histories always
after.
mentioned, and that he
And the
thought
night
were probably
after
exaggerated, and were not.
The crow patient,
She
persistent,
watched him dock.
the specific insistent
He
quality
stepped
of
onto the
something
dock.
that had been trying to get through.
She looked at him.
and that was going to keep trying.
He looked at her.
regardless of whether the recipient. The
He had
crow
thought
showed
about
him
this
things.
moment on the ship,
Not yet.
in the
not
way
full
you thought
visions,
about things you couldn't
not the
fully
sweeping
prepare for, and
panoramas
were trying to
of past
prepare
and
for
future
anyway.
that would come later.
He had thought about
Small
what she would
things.
say, and what he
Images.
would say,
The
and
gods
what the
with the
first
heart.
impression would be,
The face
and how to manage
carved
the
in white
specific,
wood.
complicated
The red
political
eyes.
weight of
The
2
face was
Targaryens
watching.
standing in front of each other
Not in the
for
way
the first
faces
time.
watched in dreams.
She said,
where the watching
"You're
was a
shorter than I
projection of
thought."
the dreamer's anxiety.
He said,
The
"I get
face
that."
was watching in the way
She
that
said,
real things watch.
"The dragons are the
with
same
intelligence,
size."
with attention.
He turned.
With the specific
Scaros had come
focused
around the
awareness of
harbour
something
headland
that
and was
alive
landing on the
in a way
castle's
that
upper
trees were
battlements,
not supposed
and
to
she
be
was
alive.
right. Scaros
Bran
and the
went to
green
the
and
godswood
bronze one above were
in the morning,
approximately the
in
same
person.
scale.
He walked across
He said,
the castle from his
"He's
rooms
been
to
growing
the Godswood
since I
gate
found him."
and through the gate into
She
the
said,
old forest that
"How
grew
long ago?"
inside Winterfell's walls.
He said,
the
10
ancient
months.
trees and the pool and
She
the
looked
heart
up at
tree with the
Scaros,
face.
something moving
He stood
across
in
her
front of the
expression
face.
that he couldn't yet
The
read.
face watched,
Not quite the
not
Queen's
differently
face.
than it had watched
Not
yesterday,
quite the full
or the day
emotion
before,
behind it.
or the day before that the
Something in
Heart Tree's
between.
face had been watching for 8,000
She
years,
said,
and the watching didn't
"Come
change,
inside."
because a 7-year-old boy
He came
was standing in
inside.
front of it with a dream about a crow in his head.
Dragonstone,
But Bran felt
the
something,
first day.
not a voice, not words,
They didn't have the
a
political
direction,
conversation
a
first.
specific non-verbal
He'd expected the political
communication of
conversation
something very
first.
old, reaching
The succession,
towards something very
the claims,
young, and
the specific
finding the distance
landscape
manageable.
of what 2
You have the
Targaryens in the
sight,
same room meant for the
not
realm.
heard.
He'd been preparing
Felt
for it.
in the specific
She apparently
deep
had
body
different
way that
ideas about
instincts were
ordering.
felt, not in the
She took him
mind,
to the
but in
dragons,
the blood, in
not
the
to meet
bones,
them in any
in the
formal
architecture
sense.
of the body that predated
She
language,
walked him to the
and
shore
that
below the
communicated in a
castle where
register
Drogon had
that
landed on the
language
black
couldn't
sand,
reach.
and she stood beside the
Bran
enormous
stood in
dark
front of the
dragon
Heart Tree.
with the easy
He was
familiarity
7
of
years
someone
old,
who had
and he
been
was
here
having the
1,000
experience
times,
that
and she looked
in
at
another
Jon.
version of this story
She said,
would have required
"What do you
a fall
feel?"
from a tower and a
He
broken
said,
back and a
"What do you
coma
mean?"
and the specific
She said,
traumatic shattering
"When
of a
you're near
childhood
them,
to produce.
my dragons."
In this version,
What do you
the
feel?
experience came anyway.
He stood on the black sand and
Not
paid
through
attention
trauma,
to what he
through the
actually felt,
specific
rather than
natural
what he thought
development
he
of a
should feel.
gift that was in the blood,
He said,
and that the blood was
"Recognition?"
going to express,
She said,
regardless
"Yes."
of whether the expression was
He said,
invited.
Like,
The Starks had
he
the
looked for
green
the
side.
words,
Not all
like
of them,
Ghost.
not in every generation.
when Ghost first came.
But the blood
Not,
carried it.
"This
the
is a
way
wolf
rivers
I
carry
am
water.
responsible for."
Not always
More like,
visible on the
"This is
surface,
something that is the
but
same
present
order
in
of
the
thing
current.
as I am."
And
She
when the
looked at him.
conditions were right, when
She
a
said,
child was born with the right
"You've thought
combination
about
of
this?"
the old blood and
He
the
said,
old attention,
"I
and
had 10 months of not knowing what I had to think about it.
Training, but
She walked to Drogon and put her hand on the dragon's neck.
Bran had the right
Drogon,
combination.
this is...
He didn't
She
know
paused.
this.
What do I call you?
He knew he had
He said.
dreams about a crow.
John is fine.
He
She
knew
looked
the
at him.
godswood felt
He said,
different when he stood in
I know the other name.
He knew that
I'm not using it.
sometimes, when he was
She
very
turned
still,
back to Drogon.
when the world
Drogon,
around him was quiet
this is
enough
Jon.
that the
The
noise
enormous
of living
dragon
stopped
looked at Jon with the
interfering
amber
with
eyes
noise
as
of
something
whatever
that was assessing.
underneath living.
Jon stepped forward.
He could feel
He didn't
things,
reach out.
direction.
That felt like the wrong gesture. Too presumptuous,
specific
a forced
awareness of a
thing.
landscape that was
He
not
just stood
visible.
in front of Drogon and let the assessment happen. Drogon exhaled. Jon felt the warmth of the breath, which was not the warmth of a fire, but the warmth of something that was fire in potential,
that the trees are
contained.
watching you.
Drogon lowered his
How do you
head.
tell your mother
Daenerys made a
the
sound,
crow visits you in
not
dreams
language.
and tells you
involuntary.
to fly with your eyes.
Jon put his hand on the dragon's nose. The contact was different from Scarro's. Different bond,
required to
different temperature,
what was happening.
different quality of
The
recognition.
experience,
But there was recognition. The same root, the same old blood.
incapacity.
He stepped back.
Dreams continued.
He looked at Daenerys.
Developed.
She was looking at him with an expression he'd spent the whole sail trying to prepare for and had not prepared for, which was not political or strategic or guarded. She was looking at him with the expression of someone who has been something specific their entire life. The last dragon, the last Targaryen, the singular fire in a cold world, and has just encountered the evidence that they were not alone. He understood that expression from the inside. He said,
Didn't happen.
"I didn't ask for it either,"
Stayed on the ground.
she said.
The powder keg
I
was
know.
still there. The match
She looked at
just
Drogon,
struck.
who was still watching Jon with the amber eyes. "I've been the last of my family since I was born.
King's Landing.
The last, everything."
Ned without the crisis.
She looked back.
298.
"You've been the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch," he said. "I've been Ned Stark's bastard most
Ned
of my
went
life,"
south.
she said.
He went.
"He sounds
because
like he was
Robert
worth
asked
being the
him,
bastard
and
of,"
because Jon Arryn
he
was
said.
dead.
"Yes."
And because Ned Stark
looked at the
did
sea.
not refuse calls
He
to
died
duty,
for the secret.
which was both the
For what I am.
quality that made him the man
never got to
Robert
thank him.
needed, and the quality
was quiet.
that would eventually be tested
She said,
past its breaking point.
"My brother Rhaegar died at the
But
Trident.
he went differently.
He believed in a
In
prophecy.
another version of this
He
story,
believed the world
Ned
would
went
need someone.
south, carrying
He
two
made
crosses,
choices based on that
the
belief
political
that cost
crisis
everyone
of the
around him.
unnamed hand, and the
She held
personal
his gaze.
crisis of his son.
You're the
lying broken
person
in a
the
bed in
choices
Winterfell.
produced."
The
he said.
personal crisis made
"I
the
know,"
political one worse.
she said.
It
"Are
distracted
you the
him,
person the prophecy
divided
meant?"
his attention,
he said.
produced the
"I don't believe in
specific
prophecies,"
emotional vulnerability
she said.
of a father
"Neither did I."
operating in a dangerous environment.
looked up at
while
Drogon.
his mind was
"I believe in
800 miles
dragons.
with a child who
I
might
believe
die.
in what I can see.
In this version, Ned went south
She looked at
carrying
him.
one crisis.
I'm deciding what I
Bran
believe
was
about
fine.
you."
Bran was
He said,
climbing trees and
"That's
annoying
fair."
his mother and being
She
a
said,
7-year-old boy,
"Come inside.
which was what
We
7-year-old
should talk about the
boys did.
dead."
And the not
Dragonstone,
freed
the war room,
approximately
300
40% of
AC.
Ned's cognitive
The war room had a
capacity that
map
had,
of the
in
realm on
another
the table.
timeline, been
It was
consumed by
larger and
grief
more
and
detailed
fear.
than any map Jon had seen at
40%
Castle Black,
mattered.
the product of
Ned
resources and
arrived in
time that the
King's
Watch had
Landing
never
with
had.
Sansa and Arya.
He looked at it
and
with
a
the eye of a
household
man who had
northern
been
men,
reading ranging
and the
reports
specific
and building a
determined
picture
posture
from
of a man
incomplete
who was
data
walking into
and was
a
now seeing a
situation
more
he didn't
complete
want,
version.
and who was going to
Tyrion
handle
was there.
it through the application of
He had
law
heard
and honor
about
to
Tyrion
southern
from Sam,
corruption,
who had heard about
which was
him
a
from
strategy
everyone
that
who had ever spent
historically
time at
produced
court,
mixed results,
and he was.
But that was the only strategy
Jon
Ned
looked at him and
possessed.
thought,
The city was.
"This
Ned looked at
is
it
the
with
most
eyes
dangerous
of a
person
man
in the
who had
room
been
who
there
isn't a
twice
Targaryen.
before, and who had
Not
hated
dangerous
it
in the
both
way of
times.
fighters. Dangerous in the way of someone who processes
the noise,
information at a speed
The
that leaves
density
everyone
of
else
human life
responding
pressed
to
into
where he's
streets that
already
were too
been.
narrow for the traffic,
Tyrion looked
and
at
that
Jon.
produced the specific
He said,
claustrophobic atmosphere.
"You're not
of a
what I
city that had been
expected."
built for
Jon said,
100,000.
"I get
that
that."
housed half a million.
Tyrion said, "You're
He
wearing
went
a
to the
Night's
Red
Watch
Keep.
cloak."
He took the hands
Jon
off
said,
it.
"I'm
He
the
sat at
Lord
the desk
Commander
that
of the
Jon
Night's
Arryn
Watch."
had died at.
Tyrion
and he
said,
looked at the papers,
"You're Aegon
and the legends,
Targaryen with
and
a
the
dragon."
specific
Jon said,
accumulated evidence
"Both things
of
are true.
14 years of government
I prefer the
that
first
Jon
one."
Arryn had been conducting,
Tyrion looked at him
and
for a
that had
moment.
ended the official account.
Fair enough.
Said with a
He
sudden
looked at
illness.
Daenerys. "He's
Ned
not
did
going to
not
make this
believe
easy,"
the official account.
she said.
Not because
"I didn't
of evidence.
ask for
He had
easy."
no evidence.
They sat.
The specific
Jon laid out
Stark
what he'd
instinct
seen from the
that
air,
was not
the cold
intelligence
front's
exactly,
position and
but
movement,
was adjacent
the
to
patterns in
intelligence,
30 years
the
of
pattern
ranging
recognition
reports,
that
the
operated
specific
below the
gap
level of
between what the
conscious
Watch had
analysis,
and what the
that
threat
said,
required.
"This is wrong."
He laid it out the way he'd always
timing,
laid things out, which was,
the circumstance,
"Here is the information.
the specific
Here
way
is what
that
it
Jon
says.
Arryn's death had been
Here is what the
described
options
by
are.
people who
Here
described
is what I
it
think
with
the
the
right
rehearsed
option is.
quality of a story
No
that had been
drama,
prepared before
no
the article.
performance. The clean
began
line
to
between the
investigate.
facts and the
He
analysis."
did it the Ned way
Me,
directly,
Tyrion listened
without
with
subtlety,
both hands folded
with the specific
and his eyes
blunt
tracking
instrument
between the
approach
map
that
and
Southern
Jon's
politicians
face and the windows.
found either admirable
Daenerys
or
listened
suicidal,
with her whole
depending
body,
on whether they were the
not
subject
the
of
managed pose of
investigation
the throne
or
room,
the
but the
observer.
full physical attention of someone
He
for whom
talked to the
information
Grand
was
Maester.
genuinely important.
Pycelle's account of Jon
When
Arryn's
Jon
death
finished,
was
Tyrion
Ned
said,
noted this too
"You flew the reconnaissance
too
yourself."
detailed.
Jon said.
The specific
Yes.
over-documentation
Tyrion said.
that happened
That's data we
when
don't have
someone
anywhere
was
else.
describing
The
something
watch
they'd
reports are
rehearsed
ground
rather
level. The
than
air is
remembered.
different. Jon said.
Real memory
It's
had
why I
gaps.
needed to get here, not
Pycelle
just to
had
ask for help,
had none.
to show someone what the view from
talked to
above
Varys.
shows. Tyrion
Varys
said.
was Ned couldn't
And
read
what the
Varys.
view from above
Varys
shows
was the
is,
one person in the Red
Jon
Keep
said,
whose surface
months,
was so
maybe
thoroughly
less.
managed that Ned's
The room
instinct
was
couldn't
quiet.
find the person
Daenerys
underneath the
said.
performance.
The Night King.
Varys
The
gave him
accounts say
information.
fire and Valyrian steel.
The information was useful.
Jon said.
Whether the
The
information
accounts
was
are
true
consistent
was a
on
different
that, yes.
question. And the
She said.
difference between useful
How
and true
consistent?
was one that Ned
He
was
said.
not naturally equipped
Multiple
to navigate.
independent sources
He
across
talked
the
to
histories.
Littlefinger.
The primary engagement
Lord
has to
Petter
involve
Baelish,
both elements in the same place at the same
Master of
time.
Coin.
He paused.
A man Ned
Dragon
met once
glass for the
before
army.
River Run years
Fire
ago
and Valyrian
when
steel
Baelish was
for
a
the
boy
sword.
with a crush on
She said,
Catelyn Tully.
You
and a
have
scar
Valyrian
from
steel.
Brandon Stark's sword.
Jon said.
The boy was
Longclaw.
gone.
Yes?
What remained was
She
a
said,
man who smiled
I
too
have
easily
3 dragons.
and who offered help too
Jon said,
readily and who
I
triggered
have 1.
Ned's instinct
She
the
looked
way
at
an
him.
off note
He
triggered
said,
a musician. You
Scaros
couldn't
is not
explain
fully
what was
grown,
wrong.
but he's past
But
the
you knew
threshold
something
where he
was.
can produce combat level
Baelish
fire.
said, Jon
He
Arryn
paused.
was investigating
The question
something.
is how we coordinate 4
Before he
dragons
died.
against an army of the
Ned
dead
said,
and a Night
"What?"
King.
The
Tyrion
king's
said,
children. Baelish
that's
leaned
a very
forward,
specific
dropping
question.
his voice to the
Jon
specific
said,
conspiratorial
the threat
register
is
that he
very
used
specific.
when he was performing trustworthiness.
Tyrion looked at Daenerys.
Which was,
He doesn't
Ned
lead
didn't
with the
know
throne.
this yet. The register
Daenerys
Baelish
said,
used when
no.
the truth being offered
Tyrion
was real,
said,
but
or
the
the claim.
motivation for offering
said,
it was not.
No. Jon said.
Jon Arryn was
I
reading
can
a
hear you.
specific book,
Tyrion said.
a genealogy.
I know. He
the
looked at
lineages
Jon.
of the great house.
The succession question
He was
doesn't go
tracking the
away
Baratheon
because we're
bloodline.
talking about the dead.
Why?
Your claim
Because the
supersedes
Baratheon
hers by
bloodline
birth order.
is consistent.
That's a fact whether
Black
you
hair,
acknowledge it or not.
Blue eyes.
Jon said.
In every
The
generation.
dead don't care about
every
the succession.
Baratheon for 300
Tyrion said.
years.
The
Every
lords of
legitimate
Westeros do.
Baratheon.
Jon
Ned looked
said.
at him. The king's
Then the lords of
children are blonde,
Westeros are
Baelish
looking in
said.
the wrong
All
direction.
three. Blonde
He held
hair,
Tyrion's gaze.
green eyes,
The
Lannister
succession
colour.
question can
Not
wait.
a single trait from
What's
their
coming
father's line.
doesn't wait. Tyrion was
information
quiet for a
landed.
moment. He
In
said,
another version of this
I
story,
think I actually believe you.
this information
Jon
arrived
said.
mixed with the
Thank you.
crisis of Bran's fall
Tyrion
and
said.
the
That
dagger
wasn't a
of Catelyn's
compliment.
journey south,
I find it extremely
Tyrion's arrest,
inconvenient.
and the escalating
Dragonstone.
cascade of
The
emergencies
dragons.
that made every
The
piece
first
of
flight,
information
she
feel urgent,
suggested it on the
and that
second morning.
produced the
He
specific
was in the yard
decision-making
before anyone
environment
else was
where
awake.
Ned A,
Old habit,
man who was
built
good at
from the
thinking
wall,
slowly
where the pre-dawn
and
hour
carefully,
was the
forced
specific
to
hour
think
when the
fast
cold announced
and
its
recklessly.
intentions for the day.
In this version,
He was
the
with
information
Scaros,
arrived
doing the
alone,
morning presence routine
clean,
that the bond
without
required
the background
when she
noise of a
appeared at
son
the yard
in a coma
entrance.
and a
She
wife
said,
in a panic.
Do you want to fly
Ned
them
received
together?
the information, and he did what he
He
should
said,
have done, what he couldn't
"Together."
do in the other timeline.
She said.
Because the other timeline
All four.
didn't give him the time he sat
To
with
see
it.
what the
He
dynamic
sat
is.
with it for 3 days.
She looked at
During those
Drogon,
3 days,
who had also
he
appeared
didn't
from
arrest
wherever he
anyone.
spent his nights.
He didn't confront anyone.
We're
He
going to
didn't
be
tell anyone
coordinating in
what
a
he was
battle,
thinking.
knowing
He
how they
sat
interact in
hands
the air
off,
matters.
And he read the book
He
that
said,
Jon Arryn had been.
Yes.
Reading the lineages,
She called
histories
the dragons.
of the great houses,
All
of the
4 of
seven
them assembled in the way of
kingdoms, and he
animals that
tracked
had
what Jon Arryn
independently
had tracked.
decided they were going to
And he arrived at the
participate
same
in something.
conclusion, and he let
Not the assembly of
conclusion settle into
creatures
his
that had been
understanding.
trained, but the assembly of creatures that had
Wavestones
understood an
settled into
invitation
riverbeds,
and were responding to it with their
thorough,
own authority.
with the specific gravity
Drogon,
of something heavy
enormous,
finding its place.
the centre of gravity.
The conclusion,
Rhaegal and
Joffrey,
Viserion on either
Myrcella,
side.
and Tommen
Scaros
were
at the
not
far
Robert's
end,
children.
the smallest,
They were
the
Jaime
darkest,
Lannisters,
watching the others
the
with the
Queen,
gold eyes.
and her brother.
Jon watched Scaros watch the other
Wind.
dragons.
The
He
specific
had never seen
abomination
Scaros
that the
near other
faith
dragons.
condemned, and that the
He had
realm
never seen
would
Scaros
condemn,
near anything
and that was the
except
most
the watch,
dangerous secret
which
of
was
the
not a
Seven
comparable
Kingdoms.
reference point.
Because the secret's
He
exposure
expected
would delegitimize
what?
the throne, and
Competition,
the throne's delegitimization
the assertion of
would
territory,
produce Ned could see
the specific
could
animal
project the
politics of creatures
consequences
sharing
the way
space.
he projected
What he
military,
got
the
was
chain
different.
of events unspooling
The 4
from the reveal
dragons settled
like
together
fire
in the
from a
yard
fused
with the
war.
ease of creatures that
Rebellion,
recognized each
the
other.
specific
Not the
catastrophic
ease of
upheaval
familiarity.
that happened when the
None of them had
foundation
met
of the
before.
government was discovered
The
to be
ease of
fraudulent.
something more fundamental.
Ned understood the weight of
The
what he
same
held.
deep root.
In another time,
Scaros walked to
this
Rhaegal.
understanding
The green
was
dragon looked at
compromised
him.
by urgency.
Scaros made the
The
resonant
urgency
sound.
of Bran,
Rhaegal answered in
the
kind.
urgency of Catelyn,
Jon looked
the
at Daenerys.
urgency of a situation.
She was
that
watching the dragons
accelerating
with the expression
faster
she'd
than
had on the
Ned's
dock,
methodical mind
the one
could
that had not been
process.
political. He said,
In this timeline,
they know each other.
the understanding was,
She said,
not uncompromised.
they know what they are.
Nothing
The same
in King's
thing.
Landing was uncompromised,
She watched them,
but less compromised.
like meeting someone who speaks your language
Cleaner.
when you've been in a country where no one
Ned
does.
had the time to sit
said,
with the weight and to
"Yes."
decide what to do with the weight,
She said,
rather than
"Shall
being
we?"
forced to act
He found the position on Scaros's back with the ease of months of practice, and Daenerys mounted Drogon with the ease of years, and they were in the air before either of them had to think about it. Flying together was different from flying alone. He had gotten used to the specific quality of flight with Scaros, the rhythm of it, the temperature of the air, the angle at which the wall appeared on the horizon and receded. Flying with Drogon beside him was like
to verify.
He searched for the right comparison,
Methodical approach
like fighting beside someone for the first time
in his life,
and discovering that you anticipate each other,
into understanding
that the gaps in your approach are filled by theirs without discussion.
Was real before
She flew the way he'd expected and differently,
Gendry was in the
better at the turns. She'd been doing it for years.
15
He
years
compensated with speed that surprised her. He could see it in the adjustments she made to stay alongside. They flew south along the coast, and then turned east, and then turned north.
The raw physical
They didn't speak.
architecture that
You
Robert's
couldn't
body
speak
had
easily at
carried
altitude
before
with the
drinking
wind and the
from
distance.
pit.
But the flight was a kind of conversation, the negotiation of two riders and four dragons finding the shared rhythm.
It was not subtle.
After an hour, they came back to Dragonstone and landed on the shore.
A painting was
She got
a copy
down.
of the original. The
He got down.
features reproduced with the
They
specific
stood on the black
fidelity
sand.
that blood produced.
She said,
Joffrey
"You're better
was
than I expected."
not.
He said,
Joffrey was golden.
"I had
and
months
angular,
of practice
and
in a
the
very
face had
unforgiving
nothing in it
environment."
That was Robert, and everything
She said,
in it that was Lannister.
"The wall."
And the difference between Gendry's face
He said,
and Joffrey's face
"Yes."
was the difference between a legitimate
said,
heir and a fraudulent
"What does
one.
it feel like,
Ned went to the other bastards,
flying over it,
3 of them that he could
said,
find in King's Landing.
like looking at a
Gendry,
decision someone
a girl
made
named
8,000
Barra,
years ago?
Infant, dark
Someone
hair,
decided the
blue-eyed,
world needed
and a
protecting,
boy of
and they
6
built the
whose
largest
mother
structure
was a
in the
woman
known
with
world
flea
to
bottom.
protect it. He
Every
paused.
one of them had
"It's
Robert's
humbling,"
colouring.
she said.
Every one of them had the
"People
Baratheon
built it."
features.
He said,
None of Robert's acknowledged children did.
She said,
The
"Not
evidence
dragons."
was not
He
legal
said,
proof.
"People
The
and
evidence
dragons," the
was
accounts
pattern.
say. Together.
The kind of pattern that Ned
She
understood
looked at Drogon.
because patterns
She
were
said,
what military intelligence
"We're going to
was
need
built
more
on.
than 4 dragons."
Enough data points
He
to
said,
suggest a conclusion.
"We're going to need the realm."
Not enough to guarantee it.
She said, "The
In a
realm
court
that's
of law,
currently at war
the
with
evidence
itself."
would be challenged.
He said,
In a
"Yes."
political conversation,
She said,
the evidence was
"Joffrey is on
overwhelming.
the throne."
Ned needed
said,
allies.
"Joffrey is on the
This
throne
was
and
the
the
hard
Lannisters
part,
are
the
fighting
part
the
that
Stark,
required Ned
and
to
the
do the
north is
thing that
burning
Ned
and the
was
Night
worst
King
at,
is 20 miles
which
further
was
south
trust
than he
me,
was 6
didn't
months
know,
ago."
for reasons he couldn't
He held
verify.
her gaze. "We
Northern
have to
honor
stop
did
the war
not
first.
prepare you for the
Or we have to
specific
make the war
challenge of
irrelevant."
building alliances in
She
a
said,
city where
"How?"
everyone's loyalty was
said,
conditional,
"Show them
and where the
what's coming."
conditions were invisible
She
until
looked
you
at him.
triggered them.
He
He
said,
didn't go to Baelish.
"The white." He had
This
brought
was
one
the critical
in a
decision.
box from Castle Black.
In another timeline,
Show them the dead.
in the timeline
The same
where
way I
Bran
showed you the
fell
reports.
and Catelyn
Not
came
description,
south,
proof.
and Catelyn's
She
childhood
said.
connection to Littlefell
And then,
produced
he
a
said,
specific
"Then the
misplaced
people
trust
who matter
that led to
start
the
making
disaster
different
Ned went to
calculations."
Baelish, because Catelyn told him to. In this timeline, Catelyn was in Winterfell.
Dragonstone.
Catelyn's trust in
The
Baelish
late
was not
night,
present to
the
override
real
Ned's instinct.
conversation.
And Ned's instinct said, "This man smiles too easily." And
The political
smiling is
conversation
work.
happened on the 3rd night.
Ned
Not
went to
because they'd been
Stannis,
avoiding
not to
it.
Stannis
They'd
directly,
been doing
to
something
Stannis'
more useful,
representative in King's
which was
Landing,
building enough shared
because Stannis
understanding
himself
that the
had left
political
city
conversation
months ago,
could be had honestly
withdrawn to
rather than
Dragonstone
strategically.
with a specific
John had
Stannis
learned,
gesture of
mostly from
departure
watching
that
Ned,
was both
that the
strategic
order of
retreat
conversations
and moral
mattered.
statement.
You talked about
Stannis
values
had
before
left
you talked
because
about
Jon
positions.
Arryn was dead.
You established
And
what
because
people
Stannis
actually
knew
cared
what Jon
about
Arryn had
before you
discovered.
negotiated what
And
they'd
because
accept.
Stannis' response to
She
knowing
came to
a
the room where
dangerous
he'd been
truth
working
was
with
to
Matt
leave the
and sat
proximity
across
of the
from him
danger
and said,
rather than manage it.
"We need to talk
which was
about
the
the
specific
throne."
Stannis approach to
He
problems.
said,
Correct
"I know."
in principle,
She said,
useless in practice.
"Your claim
The
supersedes mine."
representative was a knight,
He said,
Sir Davos
"By
Seaworth,
birth order."
the Onion
Yes.
Knight, a former smuggler,
She said,
who had been
"The
knighted
lords
by
will know
Stannis
that
for running an onion
once it
ship
becomes
through a
public
siege,
knowledge."
and who had lost
He
half
said,
his fingers for the
"It will
smuggling
become
that made the
public
running
knowledge."
possible. Because
She said,
Stannis was the kind
"Yes."
of man who rewarded
She looked at
and
the map.
punished the same act,
"What do you want?"
and who found no
He said,
contradiction in doing both.
"I want the dead stopped." She looked at
Davos
him.
was Ned read
He
him
said,
immediately,
"I mean that.
which was rare
I've been
in
spending
King's
every
Landing
morning
honest.
looking at the cold front
Not the
moving
practiced
south,
performance
and
of
every
honesty
night
that
reading
courtiers
about what
deploy.
happens when the war
Not the
falls and
strategic
everything else.
deployment of
The
apparent
throne,
candor.
the succession, what
Honest.
happens to Joffrey and
The real
Cersei and the
thing.
Lannisters. All of it
A man
is
whose
less
face
important
matched
than the
his
specific
words,
thing that
because
is
the
coming
face
north of
and
that
the
wall.
words came
She
from the
said,
same place.
"And after, when
Lord
the dead are
Arryn
stopped,"
knew, Davos
he
said,
"if the dead are
about the
stopped,"
Queen's children.
she said, "when?"
Stannis knows.
He looked at
Stannis
her.
has known for months.
She said,
He left the
"We
city
have 4
because
dragons.
knowing and being
We
in
have
the city
Valyrian
was
steel.
Lord Stannis
We
has
have
a
the
specific
reports
approach
and the
to risk.
preparation that 30
approach
years of
being
ranging produced.
leave.
We are going to
The approach
stop the
being
dead."
Remove
She said
himself
it
from
with
a
the flat
situation where
certainty
the
of a woman
knowledge is
who had
actionable,
decided something
and
was
where
going to
acting
happen
on it
and was
would
not
produce
entertaining
consequences
alternatives.
he can't control.
When they are stopped,
Davos looked at
What do you
Ned
want?
with the assessment of a man
He was
who had
quiet
spent
for
his
a
life
moment.
evaluating
He
whether
said,
other men could be
I
trusted,
want the North to be
and who had
safe.
developed the skill
I
through
want
the
the Watch
specific
to be what it
education
should
of
have
the
been,
smuggling trade,
properly
where
funded,
trusting the wrong
properly
person
staffed,
got you killed.
able to do what it was
You're
built to
going
do.
to act on it.
He paused.
I'm going to Ned
I want
Stark.
Winterfell. Whatever
He had
that
been
means.
about to say to
I want to go
Robert.
home.
The Ned Stark
She said,
reflex.
That's
Find
not
the
a claim
truth.
to the throne.
Present the truth.
He said,
Let the
No.
truth produce its
She said,
consequences.
People will push you
I'm going to
toward
figure
it.
out what acting on
He
it
said,
looks like.
Let them push.
That's more
She
cautious
said,
than I expected from a start.
If you don't take it,
I've had time
then
to
you
think.
take it.
Time to
He
think
met
is
her eyes,
unusual.
which is
In
what
this
should
city.
happen. You've been building
I know.
toward this your whole
I'm
life.
using it before it runs
You have
out.
the army and the dragons and
Ned
the
wrote
legitimacy
to
of everything
Stannis.
you've done to build both.
A direct letter.
He looked at the
sealed,
map.
Sent by Ryder
My
rather than
blood
Raven.
is an
because
accident
ravens
of my
could be
father's
intercepted,
belief in
and the
a prophecy.
information in this letter was
Your
the most
claim
dangerous
is the
information in
product
the
of
Seven
15
Kingdoms.
years of deliberate
The letter
work.
said,
He paused.
I have verified
Those
what John
aren't
Arryn
equivalent.
found. I intend
She was
to
very
act.
quiet.
I need
She
your
said,
support.
You
Come to
genuinely
King's
believe
Landing.
that? He
Not
said,
with an army, with
Yes.
your presence.
She
As
said,
Robert's
You're
legitimate
the most
heir,
unusual
your presence
person I've
changes
ever met.
political
He
calculations.
said, I've been told
Stannis
I'm
wrote
not what
back.
people expect.
The reply was
She
Stannis,
said,
terse,
That's not-
unambiguous, carrying the
stopped.
specific Stannis
You're the
quality
only
of stripping
person since
every
I was a
communication
child who has
with
told me
essential
what I want
components
to hear
and
and
discarded
meant something real by
the
it.
rest as wasteful.
She looked at him. Most people
Coming.
tell me what I want to
2
hear
weeks.
because I'm the person with the
Nothing
army.
before I arrived.
You told me what you
Ned
actually
did
think.
nothing.
He
For
said,
2 weeks,
I
Ned
generally
Stark,
do.
the most
She said,
impatient man in a
I know.
patient man's body.
She
did
looked at the
nothing.
map.
He attended
We
the
need to
small
decide
council
together.
meetings. He managed the
Not what
government.
happens to the throne.
He dealt with the
That's
budget,
secondary.
which was a
We need to
catastrophe.
decide how we
6
approach the
million
Lords,
gold dragons
how
owed
we
to the
present what we
Lannisters
have,
and the Iron
how we
Bank.
get the realm
The
moving
specific
before it's too
financial
late.
architecture
He said,
of a kingdom that
Tyrion.
had been spending
She
more than
said,
it earned for 15
Yes.
years.
He
And
said,
it was approximately
He has
2
a
bad
plan.
harvests from
She said,
insolvency.
He always has
He
a plan.
endured Cersei's presence
She looked
at
at him.
court, which
Do you trust
required
him?
looking at a woman he now
He
knew
thought
was
about it
committing
honestly.
incest and treason.
He said,
and performing
I
normalcy
trust that he serves
with specific
himself,
grinding effort,
and that what
only
serves
Ned
him right
Stark
now
could have found
is what
exhausting,
serves you.
because only
And
Ned
what serves
Stark
you
would have
right
found
now
the performing
is
more
what
difficult
serves the
than
realm.
knowing.
As long as
He
those
watched
things are
Jaime
aligned.
Lannister.
Yes.
Now
She
that
said,
he knew, the knowing
That's
changed
a
what
complicated yes.
he saw.
He
Jaime
said,
in the throne room,
All the useful
The
yeses
Kingslayer.
are.
golden,
She almost smiled.
standing in his
fire
white
in the
armor
hearth.
with the specific,
The map on the
beautiful
table.
arrogance of a man
The
who had been
dragons
the
somewhere
best at
outside
everything
moving
his
through
whole
their own
life,
evening.
and who had
She
never
said,
had to develop the
My brother
social skills
Rhaegar
that
believed the
lesser men
world would
developed
need someone.
to compensate for lesser ability.
He said, You told
Jaime
me.
looked at Cersei.
She said,
The look in
I've
her
been
was,
thinking about it since I got your
Ned
letter.
could see it now.
About what
The
he
look
arranged
was
for.
not the look a brother gave a sister,
About you.
but the look a man gave
She
a
looked at
woman
him.
he was involved with.
He
A
arranged for the
specific,
wrong
heated
thing.
quality that
He
was
blinked.
invisible if you weren't looking.
She
for it,
said,
and obvious.
He
if you
arranged
were.
for the prince that was promised.
Ned looked away.
One person. The singular
Waited for
hero of the
Stannis.
prophecy. She held his gaze. But what you are isn't a single
Winterfell
hero.
without crisis.
You're the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch,
298.
who found a dragon because he went to places most people didn't go.
In Winterfell.
You're the
Catelyn
person
Stark
who wrote
was
me a
managing
letter about the
household,
dead instead of a letter about the throne.
a household.
She paused.
The distinction.
What
was
my
everything.
brother arranged for wasn't the
another
hero
version
the
of this
prophecy
story,
described.
Catelyn was managing
It was the
a comatose
person
child
who was going to
from a
figure out that the
specific
prophecy was
catastrophic
wrong about what was needed.
of an assassination
John
attempt,
looked at her.
and the rage,
She
and
said,
the fear,
What's
and the
needed
journey south
isn't
that
one
the rage
person.
and fear
It never
produced.
was.
In this
She looked
version,
at the map.
Catelyn was managing
It's
supply
people.
orders and
This
service
specific
schedules, and the
configuration of
education
people and
5
dragons
children,
and information
with the
at this
exception of
specific
Arya,
moment.
who was
She
always the
paused.
exception, progressing
Rhaegar
from
thought the
childhood
world needed
at
a
an
prince.
expected rate.
The world
Bran
needed
was
us.
fine.
He
He
sat
was
with this.
climbing, which
He
she
said,
hated.
That's
He
the
was
most
eating,
generous
which she
interpretation
appreciated.
of a man who hurt a
He was
lot of
attending
people
lessons
I've ever
with
heard.
Maester Lewin, which he found
She said,
boring, and
I've
training
had a
in
lot
the
of
yard
time
with
to make
Sir
peace
Roderick,
with my
which he
brother's
loved.
choices.
He was
said,
being 7.
He hurt my mother.
The only unusual
She said,
thing was the Godswood.
Yes.
Bran
said,
had started going to the
She chose
Godswood
it.
every morning.
She's alive.
Not with Ned. Ned was south.
She'd tell you she chose
Not
it.
with anyone.
He paused.
Alone.
That doesn't
a
mean it didn't cost her.
7-year-old boy walking
She said,
into the old God's
No,
forest
it doesn't.
before breakfast and
The fire.
standing in front of the heart
He said,
for Catelyn.
"What was he like?"
Had timed it between
She said,
20 minutes.
"I never
and an
knew.
hour.
I was born
She
after
asked
everything
about
ended.
What do
What
you
I
do
have are
with the
stories."
godswood?
He said,
I sit
"What do the stories say?"
with the tree.
She said,
Why?
"That he was brilliant
It
and
Bran's
sad
face
and
did the
completely
thing that
convinced he
children's
was
faces
right.
did when they were trying to
She
describe
paused.
something they didn't have
That he
words
played
for.
the harp beautifully.
The scrunching.
That he loved
The
his wife
surging.
and was fair to his
It's calm
people.
there.
and believed in the prophecy,
is calm.
the way some people
Trees
believe
are
in the
generally
gods.
calm, Bran.
Not as
They
a
don't
comfort,
move.
but as a weight.
This one does.
He said, like
Not
carrying
moving,
something.
moving. More like
She
listening.
said, yes.
Catelyn
He
looked
said,
at her son.
I know what that's like.
She was a Tully.
She
She
said,
worships the Seven.
I
The
know you
old
do.
gods were Ned's the Weirwood,
White,
the Heart
the
Tree,
demonstration,
the specific ancient
300
religion that the
AC.
North maintained, and that the South
The
had
Lords
abandoned,
came.
and that Catelyn found, if she
Not
was
all of
honest
them.
with herself, slightly
Not by a
unsettling.
long way. But the
The
ones
face
who
of the
mattered
tree.
for the next stage of
The
the
red
thing.
eyes.
The ones
The
whose
sense of
decisions
being
would
watched by
cascade
something
into the
that was
decisions
not
of the smaller houses.
and that did not
the
operate
ones
on
whose
human
agreement or
timeline.
refusal would set the shape of
Be
what the
careful,
realm
the
did
gods will.
next.
Of what?
Tyrion
Of I
had
don't
sent
know.
the invitations,
Be careful.
not in Jon's name or
Okay,
Daenerys's,
he went to the gods
in the
the
name
next
of a
morning.
shared concern that
And
the
the
realm
next.
had been mismanaging for
And the
30
next.
years. He had been
Catelyn
specific
watched
about the wording
and
in a
worried
way that
and
Jon had
decided
found
that a
instructive.
child who sat with trees
You are
was
invited
preferable
to
a
learn
child
something
who
that the
climbed
small
towers,
council
and
has
that the
been
worrying
failing to
was
act on.
manageable.
Bring your
Robb
own Meister
helped. Robb was 14,
if you distrust our
the eldest
facts.
son, the heir.
Stannis Baratheon
The
came
boy who
because
was
Stannis
Slytherin
followed
saw
evidence,
this with the
and
specific
the evidence
pride
was
and
compelling.
anxiety
And
that mothers
Stannis was
felt
not a
about
man who
children
allowed
who were
political
becoming adults,
inconvenience to
becoming a
overrule
lord.
documented fact.
Not yet a lord.
Olenna Tyrell came because
Becoming
she had been
one.
bored since the war started,
process
and
visible
this was
in
the
the
most
posture
interesting
and the voice,
invitation she'd
and the
received in
specific
years.
way that Robb was beginning to handle
Several
the
northern lords
responsibilities
came
that
because
Ned's
Jon
absence
Snow had sent
deposited
personal
on his
ravens,
shoulders.
and Jon Snow was the Lord Commander, and a
He managed the
Targaryen,
household
and had a
guard.
dragon, and those
He
three
heard
things
petitions,
combined were
small
sufficient.
ones. The village
The demonstration
disputes and
was in the
boundary
courtyard of
arguments that were
Dragonstone.
below the Lord's
Jon gave
attention,
no
and that
introduction.
fell to the heir
He had
when
found in the
Lord was
ranging
absent.
briefings at Castle Black
He did
that
this with the
introductions
specific
produced
Robb
the
quality of
specific
charisma,
problem of
applied
giving
to
people
governance, the
skepticism
ability to
time
make
to
people
organize
feel
itself.
heard, even when the
Instead,
hero
he
produced
opened the
an
box.
outcome they didn't want.
The white
The
came
talent
out.
that Ned lacked.
The
and that
courtyard had
Catelyn
the reaction
spent
Jon
20
had seen
years
twice
providing
before,
as a supplement
and
to
that never
Ned's
became
deficiency.
less instructive.
Jon was gone.
The specific moment when
Jon
people
had
who
gone
had
to
not
the wall
believed
to the
something
Night's Watch,
became people
to take
who had to
the
believe
black.
it.
To find the
sound of it
specific
was not a
place in
scream,
the world that
and
was
not a
available
gasp.
to a bastard who
It was a
loved his
collective
family,
held breath,
but who understood
then the
that
release
the
of
family's
it.
architecture didn't include
touched
position.
dragon glass to
He'd
the
left
white.
before the king arrived.
The white
which
stopped.
Catelyn was she acknowledged this to
He
herself.
looked at the lords.
In the private hours,
Stannis
in
said,
the specific honest
"How many?"
self-assessment that she
Jon said,
conducted in the Godswood.
"The cold front
because
has moved
the
30
Godswood
miles
was
south
where
in 6
private
months.
things happened.
The
in
army behind
Winterfell,
it is..."
relieved about.
He paused.
Jon's
"I've seen it from the air.
simplified the household.
The estimates from the
The
ranging reports are
simplification
conservative."
was a relief.
Stannis said.
The relief
"You've flown
was something
reconnaissance."
Catelyn felt guilty about.
Jon said.
The guilt was something
"Yes."
she managed by
Stannis
not
said.
examining it too
"How
closely.
current?" Jon
Theon
said.
was present.
2 weeks before I sailed
Theon
here.
Greyjoy the ward.
Stannis
the
looked
hostage,
at the still
The
white.
specific
He
human
had the
evidence
expression of a
political
man who
arrangement
processed
between the
facts at a
Starks
speed
the
and
Iron
completeness
Islands
that most
required a
people didn't
Greyjoy
manage,
child in
and who had
Winterfell
just
as collateral.
processed this one.
Theon
He said,
was 19.
"How long
and he
until
was
it reaches
Catelyn
the
watched
wall?"
him the way she
Jon
watched
said,
everything in Winterfell
3 months,
restless.
maybe 4.
The specific
Stannis said.
restlessness of a young
And the
man
wall
who had been
holds
in
against-
someone else's house
Jon
for
said.
10 years.
Against the army,
and who was
yes,
beginning to
if it's
feel the
manned
weight
properly.
of the 10 years
Against
as
the
a
Night
ceiling
King himself.
rather than a shelter.
The accounts say
The
you can
household
breach it
ran.
if the right conditions
Catelyn
are
ran
met.
it, and in the Godswood,
He paused.
every morning,
The wall
a
was
7-year-old
built to
boy
hold.
sat with a tree,
It wasn't
and the
built
tree told
for
him
the
things that
specific
trees
kind of
were not
assault
supposed
that's coming.
to tell. And the boy
Olenna
absorbed
said,
the telling
from her
the way
chair at the edge of the
7-year-olds
yard where she
absorbed
had
everything
positioned
completely,
herself for the best view
without resistance,
without being in the middle of
with the
anything.
specific openness that children
What is the
had,
specific
and that adults
kind?
had trained out of
Jon said.
themselves. Because
The
the
Night
openness
King doesn't
was
fight like a
inconvenient.
general. He raises the dead
The
and he
visions
commands
came.
them. Every corpse he reaches becomes part of his army. He's been
Bran.
moving south for 30 years,
the
and the
sun
army
showed.
has been growing the entire
To
time.
when I ate to see.
He looked at her. The conventional response,
first real vision
castle
came on
walls,
a Thursday morning.
soldiers, cavalry,
Not the dreams.
works against the soldiers
had been coming
and
for
doesn't
weeks.
work against the
The
swords.
three-eyed crow.
She
the
said.
recurring images.
And what works
the specific
against the swords?
nighttime communication.
He looked
that
at
operated
Daenerys.
in the language
She
of
said,
metaphor and symbol.
Fire.
This was
Olenna
different.
looked at the dragons,
This
2 of which
was
had arranged themselves at
Bran
the castle's
was a
upper
wolf,
levels, with the quality
sitting
of
in
very
front of
large
the
animals
tree,
that were not exactly
eyes
choosing to be
open,
visible, but were not
and
exactly
vision
hiding
through
either.
the waking.
She said,
Through the open
"How much
through a
fire?"
channel that was
Jon
not
said,
dream and not
"We have 4
imagination,
dragons.
but something
We need
else.
to go north. We need to find the
saw
Night
the
King,
south.
and we need to engage him
He saw
directly."
King's Landing.
He looked at the
A
assembled
city he
lords.
had never been to.
What we also need
That he
is for the
knew
rest
only
of you
from
to
lessons
not be
and
fighting each
descriptions,
other while we do.
rendered now in the specific
A beat.
high-definition clarity of green
He
sight,
said,
which was
the
not
war in the
visual
south,
in the way
the
that normal
Lannisters
sight
and the
was visual,
Starks,
but
and
which
whatever
produced
Joffrey decides
images
to
that
do
were
about
more
any of
real
this,
than sight.
none of it
Because
matters
the images
if the
carried
wall falls.
information that sight didn't carry.
All of it becomes moot.
Emotion,
There is
intention,
no kingdom to fight
the
over
specific
if the
underlying
dead win.
truth of what was happening
He
beneath
held their
what was
attention.
visible.
We need a
He
ceasefire.
saw his father.
We need resources moving
Ned
north
was in
instead
an
of toward each other.
A large office.
And we need it to happen
Papers on
now,
the desk.
not when the wall is
The
already
hand of the
compromised.
king's badge on his chest.
Stannis said, "You're asking us to trust a Targaryen queen and the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch."
And his
Jon
face
said,
was,
"I'm asking you to look at
Bran
what
didn't
just
have the
stopped
vocabulary,
moving in this
but the
courtyard
feeling was
and
clear.
decide whether you'd rather manage the
father
political
was carrying
situation
something
in the
heavy.
south or deal with that."
not physically,
He nodded at the
the
white.
kind of heavy that lived
Stannis
in
looked at
that
it.
bent the
He
posture.
said,
And that was visible
"What do you
to a
need?"
7-year-old looking
Jon
through a
told
tree,
him.
because 7-year-olds saw the
Dragonstone,
weight even when
Tyrion,
adults
and
couldn't
Jon.
see it in themselves.
300
He saw
AC.
the queen.
Tyrion found him at the cliff
Cersei
edge that
Lannister
evening,
in a room.
not the inhabited edge of
Bedchamber.
Dragonstone, where the
Rich,
castle's walls faced the
golden.
harbour.
The
The other side, where the volcanic rock dropped to the sea, and the wind came from the west, and there was nothing between you and the
beside her,
horizon.
Bran's mind
Tyrion
stuttered.
arrived with 2 cups
The way
and said,
minds stuttered.
"You
when
give
they
a good
encountered
demonstration,"
information that didn't fit
Jon
the
said.
available categories.
"I've given it a few
Beside
times."
her was her brother.
Tyrion handed him a cup.
The king
He said, "Stannis
And
is
they were.
convinced." He was
Bran
convinced
was
before he
7,
arrived,
and the
if I'm
specific
honest.
nature of what they
The
were
man
doing
processes
outside
evidence
his
before other people have
experiential
finished
vocabulary.
receiving it.
But the tree.
He looked at the sea. Olenna is amused and therefore useful, which is the only state in which Olenna is not dangerous.
Queen and
He
her brother.
paused. The Northern Lords
Together.
are loyal in the way Northern
In a
Lords are
way,
loyal,
the brothers and
which is
sisters
because they
are
believe
not
in something,
supposed to be
and
together.
you've given them something
Bran
to believe
pulled
in.
out of the vision.
Jon
Not
said,
voluntarily, the
"I've
vision
given them
expelled him,
facts."
the way you were expelled
Tyrion
from deep
said,
water when
"The
your lungs
fact of the
demanded
Lord
air.
Commander of the Night's
He was
Watch
sitting in
standing in
front
a
of the
courtyard
heart-tree,
with a dragon
breathing
at his
hard,
back and a
his
dead
hands
thing
on
at
the
his
roots,
feet
the
is
morning
not just
cold
a
on his
fact.
face.
It is a
He
fact
thought,
with considerable
Queen
persuasive
and the
weight.
Kingslayer.
He
He
drank.
thought, my
Don't
father
undersell what you
is
did today.
carrying something heavy.
Jon said,
He thought,
"I'm not selling anything."
These
Tyrion
are
said,
connected.
"I know.
He was
That's
subtle.
why it
He
worked."
didn't understand the connection.
was quiet for a
not the
moment.
mechanics.
He said,
not the politics.
"You two
not
are
the
going to need to
specific
figure out the
cascades of
succession."
implications that the connection
Jon said,
produced.
"The dead.
But he understood that the
The dead
connection
are coming,
existed,
and
that
the
connection
succession
was
still
dangerous,
needs figuring
and
out."
that his father was in the middle of
Tyrion
it.
said it
He
patiently.
told Maester Lewin,
Not because the Lords
not the
care
vision
more about
specifically, he
thrones
didn't
than
know how to
survival.
describe the vision in
Today
terms that a
demonstrated
maester
that they
would
don't,
accept.
at least not the ones
told
you want,
Lewin
but
about
because
the dream,
after,
about
when
the
this is done,
three-eyed crow,
the question of
about
who
the
governs
feeling
the
of the
realm
godswood.
is going to require
Lewin
an
listened.
answer, and the answer
Lewin was
should
of
be
all the
decided
adults in Bran's
before someone
life,
else
the one whose
decides it
response
for
to
you.
unusual information
Jon said,
was the most
"She
calibrated,
should govern it."
not dismissive,
Tyrion said,
not credulous,
"I believe you
analytical.
believe that."
The specific
Jon
maester
said,
response to new
"And?"
data, which
Tyrion
was
said,
catalogue it,
"And the Lords of
cross-reference
Westeros
it,
have just
determine
learned
whether
that
it
there is a
fits existing
Targaryen king
frameworks,
with a
or
dragon
whether the
who is also
frameworks
the
need
Lord
expanding.
Commander of the Night's
The
Watch,
green site,
and who
Lewin
stood up
said.
in a courtyard
Not a
and
question,
gave them the clearest
a classification.
presentation of the actual threat
green
they've
site?
received in 30 years.
An old gift.
He looked at Jon.
The children of the forest
They're going
have
to
the
have
ability
opinions
to see
about
through
what
the
happens
werewolves,
after.
to perceive
Jon
events
said,
at a distance,
"I don't want
to
the
receive
throne."
visions.
Tyrion said,
Lewin
"You
adjusted
keep
his
saying
chain,
that,"
the specific
Jon said,
habitual gesture
"because
of a
it
man
keeps
who
being
processed
true."
information through
Tyrion
the physical
said,
manipulation
"What do
of
you
his
want?"
academic insignia.
Jon thought about
The
the conversation with
Starks have the
Daenerys on the
old
third
blood.
night, about
The
what he'd
first
said
men.
then. He said,
The green
"Winterfell,
site has appeared
the
in
North,
the Stark line
the
before.
Watch properly
Rarely,
maintained." He
unpredictably,
paused.
is it
A
real?
world where the people
Maesters
who should be
disagree.
governing it are
The
governing
Citadel's
it,
official position
and I
is
don't
that
have to
green
manage
site is
anything
historical,
except what I'm actually
meaning
good
it
at
existed
managing.
once and doesn't exist
Tyrion
now.
said, "What are you
My position
good
is
at managing?"
Lewin paused.
Jon
Not
said,
for drama, for
"The
accuracy.
cold, and
My
the
position
things
is that
that
I've
live
been
in
at
it."
Winterfell for 15
Tyrion
years,
looked at him.
and I've seen things
He
in
said,
this castle
"That
the
is
Citadel's
either the
official
most
position
self-aware thing
doesn't
I've ever
account
heard, or the most
dials,
limiting thing,
the hot
and I
springs,
can't determine which."
the specific way that
Jon
the
said,
weirwood in the godswood
"Why not
is."
both?
He stopped.
Tyrion stared
I
at
don't
him.
have the
He said,
vocabulary either.
"You and she are going to get along remarkably
Alive.
well. It's going to be
Lewin looked
deeply
at Bran.
inconvenient for anyone who was hoping
Tell
to
your
play
mother,
you against each
Lewin
other."
said.
Jon said,
Not the
"Good."
details,
Tyrion
the
said,
fact
"Yes."
that you're seeing
Also,
things,
yes.
that the visions
drank.
are vivid, and
The
that they
Cersei
correspond
problem,
to real
Jon
events.
said. "What about Cersei?"
How do you know they
Tyrion
correspond
said,
to real events?
"She's at Casterly Rock
Because
with
your
Joffrey
face
and the Lannister
right
Gold
now
and a war she's
tells
been
me
running
that
for a
you've
year.
seen something
She's
that
not going to
frightens you,
stop
and that
because a
the
white
frightening
stopped
is
moving
not
in a
the kind
courtyard
that
she
dreams
wasn't in."
produce.
He
Dreams
paused.
produce the
She needs
fright
a
that we
specific
imagine.
reason to
Your
stop.
fright is
The right
fright
kind
the
of specific reason.
Bran
Jon
told
said,
Catelyn.
"What What's the right
He
kind?
told her in the
Tyrion
Godswood,
said. Her
because
children.
the Godswood was where
He
the
said it with the
telling
flat
needed to
tone
happen,
of someone
where
reporting
the
a
old
fact
gods
they'd
were
spent
present,
time being sad
where the
about
telling would
and had
carry the
finished
weight
being sad
the
about.
telling required.
Cersei
He said,
will do anything for
"I
her
can
children.
see things.
If she understands that Joffrey's future looks very different in a world where the dead have not destroyed the realm.
I can see
He paused.
places,
The calculation changes.
things that are happening far
Jon
away.
said, "You're going to go to her."
I saw far
Tyrion said,
in King's
"I
Landing.
was planning on it anyway.
At his desk.
She's my sister."
He was reading a book.
He drank.
His face.
"Someone has to talk to her, and I'm the only person on this island she might listen
He
to,"
was worried about something.
Jon said. "And Jaime,"
Catelyn's face changed.
Tyrion said. "Jaime is easier.
disbelief to believe.
Jaime has been waiting for a
From
reason to
attention
do
to
the
the
right
specific
thing for
focused
15 years.
attention that a
He just
mother
needs to be
applies.
shown what
When
the
her
right
child
thing
said
is."
something that was either
Jon said,
concerning
"Go."
for psychological
Tyrion
reasons
said,
or
"I'll
concerning
go."
for real reasons.
He looked at the
And the
sea.
distinction required
"While I'm gone,
investigation.
you and she should
What was he
work out the
reading?
coordination, the
big
tactical
book
plan,
with
who
names,
flies, where and when."
Families.
He paused.
Bran
The
hesitated.
dragons need to know
The
each
next
other
part
better than
was
they
the
do.
part he didn't
4
have
dragons
words,
acting
and
without
the
coordination
multiple words
is
was
less
going to
useful
make
than
difference.
2 acting together.
And I saw
Jon
the
said,
Queen.
"I know."
The Queen.
Tyrion said,
her brother.
"She'll have ideas."
Jaime.
Jon said, "She always
were.
has ideas."
He stopped.
Tyrion said,
I don't know how to
"How do
say
you
it.
know that?
Then
You've
don't
known her
say
3
it.
days."
They were together.
Jon said, "She reads the same way I do,
The way married
like she's
people
building
are together.
something rather than filling something
But they're
in."
not married.
Tyrion looked at him.
They're-
He said,
Catelyn held up.
"Lord
her hand.
Commander?" Jon
Sat
said,
down
"Yes."
on the root
He said,
of the heart tree.
"Try not to get killed before we deal with the dead.
And the moss
I've been
was
waiting
damp
for someone
and
worth
sitting
planning with for most of my adult life,
was
and
not
I'd rather
something
not have to start
Tully
over."
would normally do.
Jon said.
But the moment
"I'll try."
required, sitting
Tyrion
and
left.
standing was no longer.
Jon stood at the cliff edge in
She
the
looked
dark
at her
and looked
son.
at the sea.
She thought about
Scaros
what he said.
appeared from the north, coming
She
back
thought
from
about
wherever
it
he'd
way
spent the
she
evening.
thought about all information.
He landed on the cliff
Practically,
behind Jon with the settled weight of an animal returning
With
home.
the specific Tully
Jon put
approach
his
that
hand on the
filtered
dragon's
emotion
flank,
through analysis,
the warmth of him
before
in the
allowing
cold
the
air.
emotion to affect the response.
He thought, 3 days ago
Exactly
I
what I
sailed
saw.
here, not
Bran
knowing what
told
to
her.
expect.
Everything.
I know more
crow,
of what to expect now.
Dreams. The heart.
I also know that what I
the
expect
vision.
is probably going to be wrong,
Queen,
because the
King's
thing
Landing,
I'm moving toward
his
doesn't
father
have a
in the
form
book,
I can recognize
the
yet.
weight on his father's face.
He thought, I've
Catelyn
been here
sat
before,
She sat with
at
him
the
for a
edge
long
of
time.
something large without the ability to see the whole of it.
We're writing to
thought,
your father.
You do the next thing. You do the thing in front of you, and
The
you do
letter.
it as well as you can.
What
And you trust that doing it well enough
298
gets you to the thing
years.
after. He looked north. The wall was
The
too
letter
far to see,
went by rider.
but the cold was there.
not
Always
raven.
there.
Catelyn
The
was
specific
Tully,
quality
and
of air
Tully's
that knew what
understood
was
that
coming.
ravens could be intercepted.
He went inside.
and that the information in this
Dragonstone,
letter was the kind
the
that
weeks,
killed people who
the
carried it.
preparation. Tyrion
The
went
rider
south.
was Jory
Stannis
herself,
went north to organize the
captain of the
Baratheon
household
forces
guard,
toward the wall,
a
rather
man
than
whose
toward the
loyalty
Lannister
was
conflict.
constitutional
The Northern
rather than
Lords went home to
transactional.
muster.
The kind of
Jon and
loyalty
Daenerys
that
stayed at
existed because
Dragonstone,
the person
and they
carrying
worked.
it could
The
not
tactical
conceive
planning
of
first,
alternative.
because it was urgent, and because they were
Jory
both built
rode
for it.
south at
The
speed
specific
with a
pleasure of
sealed
two
letter
people
in
who
his
process
saddlebag,
information
and
the same way
instructions to
finding a
place the letter
shared problem
in
to
Ned
process.
Stark's hand and no
They were on the
other.
maps for 8 hours the
letter
first day,
said,
and then they
Ned,
flew the scenario they
Bran
built
is
and revised the maps based on what
I
the
don't
flying
have the
showed,
right words.
and went back to the
He's
maps
having
for another
visions.
4. Missandei sat in the corner, taking notes with the patient efficiency of someone who had
says
been
the
doing this
Starks
for a long
carry it in
time,
the blood
and had
of
learned to
Bran
be
had it.
invisible in rooms
I know
where
how this
important
sounds.
things were being decided.
I worship the Seven.
Jorah
but I am telling
Mormont
you
stood at the
that
door
your
with the
son
expression of a
sees
man
things
watching
through a
something he'd
tree,
been watching for a long
and the
time
things he's
take a
seeing
new
are
shape.
real. He's seen
John
them.
noticed Jorah watching on the second day and
reading a
said,
book about
when Daenerys
dangers.
was out of the room,
He's seen the
"You've been with her a long time,"
with her brother
Jorah said,
together.
"since Essos."
The way
Jon
he
said,
described it.
"You know her well."
I didn't let
Jorah
him
said,
finish describing
"Well
it.
enough." Jon
He's
said,
7.
"What am I missing?"
But the implication
Jorah
is
looked at him.
clear. And if it's
Jon
true,
said,
then the thing you're
about her,
investigating is confirmed
what she needs
by
that
a
she doesn't
source
say
that
she
neither
needs.
the Lannisters
Jorah
nor
was quiet
anyone
for a
in
moment.
King's Landing can
He said,
anticipate.
"She's
or
been the only
counter.
one for a long time.
Be careful.
The only
Whatever you're doing,
Targaryen.
be more careful.
The only dragon rider.
Bran can see,
The
but he
person who
can't see
carries the
everything,
entire weight
and the
of it
gaps
alone."
in the seeing are where the danger
paused.
lives. Come home
She won't say that.
when you can.
She's built the carrying into how she holds herself.
The letter reached King's
looked at the
Landing in
door.
8 days.
What she
Ned read
needs
it in his
is what you're
solo.
already
Read
doing
it
without
twice,
being
set
asked.
it down.
John
He
said,
stood at the window and
"What am
looked
I
at the
doing?"
city.
Jorah
He
said,
thought, the green
"Treating
sun.
it
He
like a
thought,
shared problem.
My 7-year-old son is
Not her
seeing through
problem
the
that you're
wheels,
helping with.
and what he's seeing
your
confirms
problem
everything
that
I've
she's
been
helping with."
investigating for a month.
He paused.
He thought,
"A problem that
Catelyn
belongs to
believes
both of you because of what you both
Catelyn,
are."
who worships the
Jon
Seven,
said,
who has
"It
never
is a
in her
shared
life
problem."
credited the old gods
Jorah
with
said,
anything more
"I
than
know."
historical significance,
He looked at Jon.
believes it enough
She
to send a
knows.
rider.
That's the point.
Is this the
The
confirmation
dragons
changed
worked,
the investigation?
the four of them together,
Not the conclusion,
daily.
the conclusion was
specific
already
acclimatization
reached.
of
The
animals
evidence was
that
already
share a
assembled.
bloodline,
The
learning
pattern
to
of
share
Robert's
airspace.
bastards and the lineage
Drogon
book
remained
and
the
Baratheon
largest and
colouring
most dominant,
was
and
already
he
clear
established
enough
this
to be
fact
actionable.
once, early, with
What
a specific
confirmation
aerial
changed
assertion that
was
Jon
the
watched
certainty.
and that Scaros received
Ned
with
had
the
been
equanimity
operating on
of an animal
probability
that had
that
decided it was
the
not
children
interested
were
in that
James.
particular argument
The
and was going to
probability
make
that
its
the
own
lineage
claim to
pattern
relevance
meant
through
what
other
it
means.
appeared to mean.
Scaros's other means
Bran's
was
vision
speed.
added not
Jon had
probability.
suspected this from the months of flying at Castle Black, but
Something that
Dragonstone
operated in a
gave him the
different register
comparison.
than evidence.
Scaros was
And
not
that
as large
Ned
as
was a
Drogon,
practical
not as
man in a
powerful on the
mystical
direct
family,
charge, not
did
the
not have a
overwhelming
framework
physical
for
force
processing.
that the Black Dragon
He
represented.
processed it anyway.
But Scaros
He did
moved
this
differently.
by setting the framework
The
aside
compact
and
efficiency of
accepting
something
the
that
data.
had been built for coal,
The data
that had
said,
been formed in the
Bran
high passes
sees through
beyond the
trees.
wall, where the air was
The
thin
data
and
said,
unforgiving,
what
and
Bran
where
sees
survival required
corresponds
something
to
different
reality.
from pure size.
The data said,
Daenerys
the
noticed
Queen
on the
and
fourth
the
day.
Kingslayer are together in
She
a
said,
specific way that produces
"He's faster than the
children."
others." Jon
The data,
said,
combined
"Yes."
with the lineage
She
evidence,
said,
produced
"In
a
the cold,
conclusion that
specifically."
was not merely probable,
Jon
but
said,
confirmed through
"He was
two
hatched there.
independent channels.
He's been
the
flying in
physical
it for 10
and the
months."
supernatural.
He paused.
Ned sat down.
The cold doesn't slow
He
him the
wrote
way
back.
it slows the others.
Cat,
She said,
stay in Winterfell.
"That's significant."
Keep Bran close.
He said,
Do not let
"I
him
know."
tell anyone else what
She
he
said,
sees.
"In the
The
engagement
information
beyond
is
the
dangerous,
wall,
and the danger
said,
is proportional to
the
the number
colder
of
it
people
gets,
who know.
the
Stannis
better
is
he
coming.
performs relative
When
to the
Stannis
others."
arrives,
He looked at
we
her.
move. Not
The
before.
Night King's call
Tell Bran I love
is going to be
him, and that the
worse
gift
than
he has
anything we've
is
flown in.
important.
The others
More
will be
important
working
than he
against
knows.
it.
More
Scaros
important
will
than I
be-
can explain in a letter.
He paused,
He sealed
not
it.
working with it
He
exactly,
gave it to Jory, who
not
would ride
slowed
north
by
again.
it. She was
Then he went
quiet
to the
for a
window.
moment. She said,
He thought,
"He goes for the Night King."
my son can
Jon
see
said,
through trees,
"Yes."
and the kingdom
She
I'm
said,
serving is built
"You
on a
go
line."
for the Night King." He said, "Yes."
These two
She
things
said,
are connected.
"The others cover the army."
He didn't know
He
how
said,
they were connected.
"Yes."
Not
She
yet.
said, "And I'm separated
instinct,
from you in the coldest
the
part
stark
of the
instinct,
engagement."
The pattern
said,
recognition
"I
that
know."
operated below the
She
level
said,
of analysis
"I don't like that."
said they were
He said,
connected. And
"I
the
know."
instinct had been right.
He held
about
her
every
gaze.
important thing Ned
But
had
it's the
ever
right
trusted it about.
deployment. Scaros and I for the
Waiting
sword.
Stannis.
You and the three for the army. The army can't be left alone or it
Littlefinger.
overwhelms everything.
The plan that didn't
She
decide.
said, "If something goes wrong with you,"
298 AC.
he said,
Yeah,
"then you finish it with what you have."
Peter Baelish had
She
a
looked at
problem.
him. He
The
said,
problem was,
"That's what we do.
nothing was
We make the
happening.
plan that works, and we
Not the
execute
nothing
it.
of a
And if
quiet
part of it
court.
fails, the other part adapts."
Courts were never
He
quiet.
paused. "I've been
Courts
planning wall
produced
defenses
noise
for
the
a
way
year.
rivers produced
The
colour.
plan that works
The constant
isn't the plan that
background
protects
hum of
everyone.
ambition and
It's the
grievance,
plan that solves
and
the problem."
specific social
She said,
friction of power.
"You've been doing this since the
rubbing
watch."
against each other
He said,
in confined
"Yes."
spaces.
She said,
The nothing
"Making
was
the right
structural.
plan instead of the
specific
comfortable one."
absence of crisis
He
that
said,
Baelish's plan
"Yes."
required, and that
She said,
wasn't materialized.
"I hate it."
The plan
He said,
had been elegant.
"I know."
Baelish's
She said,
plans were always
"It's
elegant.
correct."
The
He said,
specific Littlefinger
"Yes."
aesthetic of
She
complexity
looked at the map.
disguised as
She said,
simplicity.
"I'm going to
Rude
fight the
Goldberg
Night King
machinery
with
of
you."
political manipulation.
He
built to
said,
look like a series
"Daenerys."
of unrelated accidents.
She said,
The plan.
"I'm going to fight
John
the
Arryn
Night
dies,
King with you."
Arranged.
Not
Lysa
as the
writes to
distraction.
Catelyn,
Not
arranged.
holding the army
The
while you go
Starks
for the
are
source
afraid.
alone.
Achieved.
We'll
The
take a
Starks
different
come south.
split.
Achieved.
Rhaegal and
Then
Viserion
the
for the
Stark
army.
boy
They
falls.
can manage the flanks
The
without
dagger
me.
appears.
Drogon and
Catelyn
I with
comes
you and
south.
Scaros on the
Catelyn
source.
trusts
He
Peter.
said, "That's..."
Peter points
She
Catelyn
said,
at the Lannisters.
"The four dragons
Catelyn
are a
arrests
resource.
Tyrion.
How we allocate them
Tywin
is a
attacks
decision.
the Riverlands.
2 for the army
War.
and 2 for the Night
Chaos.
King is a valid
And in the
allocation."
chaos,
She
in the
held his
specific
gaze.
fog of a
"I'm
realm
not
at
sending
war.
you north alone."
Petter Baelish,
He said,
the man
"I
nobody
wasn't going
noticed.
to be alone."
The man everyone underestimated.
"I'm
the
not
man
sending
with
you
no
north
armies
without
and no
me."
titles and no
He was
lands
quiet
worth
for a
naming.
moment.
Peter
He said,
Baelish climbs.
"That's not tactical.
The boy hadn't
That's
fallen.
personal."
This was
She
the
said,
problem. The
"Yes."
specific domino
He
that
said,
was supposed to start the cascade.
"We shouldn't let
The
personal..."
Stark boy, the
She
tower,
said,
the Lannisters' secret discovered.
She looked at him
the
steadily.
assassination attempt that would produce the
"I've
dagger.
been alone with
that would
this my
produce the
entire
accusation.
life.
That
I
would
have been the
produce
only
the arrest,
Targaryen,
that would
the
produce
only
the
dragon
war.
rider, the
The
only
dominant
person
hadn't
who
fallen
understands what the
because
blood
boy
means from
hadn't
the
fallen,
inside.
because the boy hadn't
And then
climbed.
you
Baelish
appeared,
sat in his
and
chambers
you
in
are.
the Red would keep. And
You are the
considered
only
his
other
options.
person who understands
The
what the
options
blood
were
means from the inside.
adjust.
She paused.
Littlefinger was nothing.
I'm not
if not
tactical
adaptable
about
to
that.
the specific
I'm
quality
not
of
going
a
to
man
be...
who had been
He sat
outmatched
with it.
physically, socially,
He said,
and economically.
2
his
for the army
entire
and
life,
2 for the Night King.
and who had
She said.
survived the outmatching through the ability to
He said,
see the board when it
"We go in
changed,
together."
and to reposition
She said,
faster than the other
We go in
players.
together.
The board
He
had
said,
changed.
And we come
The
back
dagger
together.
was unused.
She said,
The catalyst
Yes.
was absent.
The
He
map
could create
between them.
another catalyst.
he said.
This was possible.
All right.
The specific skill set that had produced Jon
See,
Arryn's death
Astley
could produce
Rock.
other deaths, other
Tyrion
crises,
and Cersei.
other dominoes.
300 AC.
But the new catalyst would need
The conversation
to be,
at Casterly Rock was the hardest
the
thing Tyrion
calculation
had done in
running
years.
behind the smile
Not because
that was his
Cersei was
resting
difficult.
expression.
She
The
was
smile
difficult
that
the
the
way
court read as
water was
harmless,
difficult.
and that was actually
In
the
that it
visible
did whatever the
surface of a
terrain
mind
required
working at full
and was
speed.
impossible
A new
to
catalyst
permanently
would need
contain.
to produce the same effect.
She was difficult in the way
Stark
she was always
fury
difficult,
aimed at Lannister
which was also
targets.
to say she was the most intelligent
He tried.
person in most rooms,
dropped
and the
hints
only person who was better at
to
managing the
Ned,
specific
the lineage
terrain
book,
of King's
the
Landing than she
bastards,
was.
the specific
currently
trail
at
of
Dragonstone
information that would
with the
lead
dragon.
Ned to the truth
He
about
came to her
Cersei's
without
children.
announcement. Not because surprise
a
was an
backup
advantage
plan,
with
not as
Cersei.
elegant as the
It
original,
wasn't. She
not as
recalibrated
clean,
from surprise
but
faster than
functional.
anyone he'd ever met.
If Ned found the
but because
truth
any
and
announcement would have been
confronted the way Ned
intercepted and
confronted
managed
them
before it
direct,
reached
without
her.
subtlety, without the
She was in the
political
solar when he
management, that
arrived.
The confrontation
She said,
required
"Tyrion,"
the confrontation
he
would
said,
produce the crisis.
"Cersei,"
Ned would accuse.
she said,
Cersei
"You're
would
alive."
respond.
He said,
the conflict would escalate.
"Your agents are better than I
The
thought."
war would come.
She said, "I know
But
where
Ned
you've been."
wasn't confronting.
She looked at him.
Ned
Dragonstone.
watched this with the
He said,
specific,
"Yes."
frustrated fascination
She said,
of a man watching
"With the
his
Dragon
machinery
Queen."
fail. Ned was
He
being
said,
cautious.
"And the Lord
Ned was
Commander of the Night's
investigating
Watch."
slowly. Ned
She was
building
very still.
evidence rather than making accusations.
He said, "I'm going to
Ned
tell you
was doing
something
the
and I
thing
need
that
you to
Ned
hear
Stark
it
was
before you
constitutionally
respond.
incapable of doing
Not
in
respond
Baelish's
while
model
you're
of
hearing
marriage,
it."
which was
He
being
sat
political.
without being invited.
Why?
"I have
Baelish
been to
didn't know.
2 demonstrations
He
of
didn't
what is
know.
coming south of the
Because
wall.
the variable
I have
that
been
had
shown a
changed
white,
the variable that
and I have
existed in the
seen
other timeline,
the ranging
and that
report
didn't exist
from
in this
30
one,
years of
was
Night's
invisible.
Watch records, and I have
The
been
variable
briefed
was
by the Lord Commander,
Bran alive,
who has been
unbroken,
flying reconnaissance
not
over the cold
consuming
front
Ned's
on
attention
Dragonback.
with grief and fear.
He looked at her. The dead
40%
are
of
real.
Ned's cognitive
The
capacity
army is
that Bran's
real.
crisis would
The
have
Night
consumed
King is
was
real.
available.
The wall will be
And the
compromised
availability
within the year
was
if
producing
no
Ned
one acts.
Stark, who
She
was for
said,
the first time
"This
in
is a
Baelish's
ploy."
experience of the man
He said,
thinking before acting.
"Cersei." He said her
Baelish
name
didn't
with the
know about
specific
Bran's
flatness
vision.
of
Baelish
someone who
didn't
has
know
done
about the
managing a
letters.
person's resistance
Baelish didn't
and
know
is
that
laying
the
a fact on a
investigation was
table.
being confirmed through
Look at
a
me.
channel that his intelligence
looked at him.
network comprehensive,
He said,
expensive,
"I have
spanning
never,
the entire
in 30 years of
realm
being your
couldn't
brother,
detect because the channel
told you
was
something that
supernatural,
wasn't true
and Baelish's
when I needed you
network
to
was
believe it.
emphatically not.
Not
He
once.
knew something was wrong.
When I came to you
He
with
knew
something
because
real,
the timeline was wrong.
I was always
Ned
right.
should have confronted, should
You
have
know this.
acted, should have produced the
He held
crisis
her
by
gaze.
now. The not
I am telling
confronting
you
was itself information,
that the dead are real.
and the information said
I am
something
telling
has
you
changed.
that if the wall
Someone
falls,
has gotten to Ned.
none of the
Someone
rest
has
of this.
provided Ned with
He
counsel
gestured at the
that
castle,
Baelish's plan
at the
didn't
Westerlands
account for.
outside.
When
That
Stannis
everything they've
arrived in
both been
King's Landing,
fighting over
Baelish understood.
matters.
Stannis,
There will
the
be
one
nothing left to
variable
rule.
that Baelish had calculated as
She was
static
quiet for a long
Stannis on
time.
Dragonstone,
She said,
Stannis withdrawn,
"And the
Stannis
Targaryen
doing
girl,"
the specific
he said,
Stannis thing of being
is the
right,
person who has
being
3 of the
absent
4 dragons
simultaneously.
required to stop what's coming.
Stannis was not absent.
Yes.
Stannis
She
was
said.
in the capital.
And the Lord
Stannis
Commander,
was meeting with Ned.
he said,
Stannis
Is
was
Rhaegar's
providing
son
the
with the
specific
4th dragon?
strategic counsel
Yes.
that Ned needed,
She
and
said.
that Baelish had
So
intended
the
to
succession,
provide himself
he
through
said,
the filter of
is a
manipulation
question for
that would have
after.
directed the council
Right
toward
now,
the
it's a
crisis.
question of whether there's a realm
Stannis
to
couldn't be
succeed to.
manipulated.
He looked at her.
This was the specific
Joffrey's
Stannis
future is
quality
better
that
in a
made him
realm
both
where the dead
useless
have been
and
stopped.
dangerous to Baelish's
Tommen's
planning.
future. Morcellas.
Stannis was
He paused.
impervious to the specific
Your
social
children
tools
need a
that
living
Baelish
world,
wielded
Cersei.
to flattery.
That's the only thing I'm
insinuation,
asking you to
the careful
prioritize.
deployment of trust
She looked
as a
at
weapon.
him. She said,
Stannis didn't
"What do you
trust
want
anyone.
from me?" He
Stannis'
said,
distrust was
"A ceasefire.
constitutional rather than
Immediate,
strategic. Built into
unconditional on the
architecture
condition of the
man.
dead being
and the
addressed.
architecture was
You stop
Baelish
fighting the
could
North.
see this.
The North
could
stops
appreciate
fighting you.
it, even as it
Everyone
frustrated him
turns toward the
impenetrably.
actual problem," she
Baelish
said.
adjusted.
And after,
Not the plan.
said,
The plan was dead.
after
the specific
we
cascade
negotiate,
that required Stark
after
fury
the
and Lannister
succession
response,
and the throne
and
and
the
all of it,
escalating crisis of a realm
after
at war, was
she was
not going to
quiet for a very
materialize.
long time.
Because Ned
He
and
watched
Stannis
her make
were
the
managing
calculation.
the truth through
He
institutional
knew her well
channels
enough to know
rather
when
than
she was
personal
calculating versus
confrontation.
when she was decided. And she was calculating.
Baelish adjusted
which meant
his
she
position
hadn't decided.
from
Which
architect
meant there
of
was
crisis to
She said,
observer of
"Try me."
transition, from
He
the
said,
man who starts the war
"What about him?"
to the man who survives
said,
the peace.
He's at the
The
rock.
adjustment was not graceful.
She looked at
It
the
was
window.
the kind of strategic retreat
He'll
that
want
looked
to go
like
north.
strategic positioning
Tyrion
if you
said,
did it right, And that
Probably,
looks like defeat,
she
if they
said.
didn't.
He
Baelish
always...
did it right.
She stopped.
He positioned himself
He always
as
wanted to
useful
do the
for
right
transition.
thing.
He provided
when the right
financial
thing was
counsel
wrong.
to the new arrangement.
She looked
the
at
Crown's
Tyrion.
debt, the
If I agree
treasury's
to this,
restructuring,
if
the
I hold the
specific
south while the
economic
rest of them go
management that
north,
the post-Cersei
what happens to
kingdom
the
would
throne?
require.
Tyrion
He
said,
made himself indispensable
negotiation.
in the way that
Real
Baelish made
negotiation,
himself
not the
indispensable
kind where the
to
outcome is
every
predetermined.
by
she
being
said.
the person
Daenerys Targaryen on the throne.
and
He said. Possibly,
because
she said.
Littlefinger was
And the Lord
underneath
Commander.
everything, underneath
He said.
the plans
The
and
Lord
adjustments
Commander wants
and the
Winterfell
specific
and a properly
adaptability
maintained
that
watch.
had kept him alive
He said
in a
so
world
publicly
of bigger,
and in writing.
stronger, more
She said.
powerful men.
You believe him.
Littlefinger was
He said.
patient. The
I
boy
believe that
who
he
had
hasn't
been
lied
cut
to
open by
anyone yet
Brandon Stark
and has had
and who
every
been
reason
sent
to.
away from Riverrun
Yes.
and who had spent 20 years
She looked at the
climbing
window.
from nothing to master a
She
point.
said.
That
The
boy
children.
was patient.
He said.
The
Safe.
patience was built on
Both
the foundation
scenarios.
of rage, and the
Whether
rage was
Daenerys
built on
rules
the
or whether the
foundation of
succession
love.
becomes a
The
negotiation,
specific,
the children are
deformed,
not the enemy.
toxic love
I'll have that in writing if you
Baelish
want it,
carried for
she
Captain
said.
Tully. And
In
that
writing
is the
means
engine
nothing,
of everything
he
he'd
said.
done for 20 years.
In writing from me
the love
means something.
hadn't gone anywhere.
I've never broken a
The
contract.
plan had failed, but
She
the
was
love
quiet.
persisted.
She
because
said,
the love was not
I want
connected
Jaime in the
to
north.
plan. The
He said,
love was
what?
connected to the bone.
She said. If
And
this
the
is
bone
real,
didn't break when
if the dead are
bones
real,
broke.
and the wall is falling,
Baelish waited.
I want Jaime in the north.
Adjusted.
Not trapped at Casterly Rock, managing a war that doesn't matter anymore.
Same
She held his gaze. He deserves to die for the right thing if he's going to die.
He'd
Not for
find
me.
another door.
Tyrion looked at his sister. He said, when did you become
Jon
generous?
at the wall.
She said,
298.
I'm not being generous. I'm being realistic.
Jon Snow.
She looked
took
at the window.
Black the same week his
He's been
father
fighting my
rode south.
wars for 20
The
years.
decision was the
He should
same
fight a
in
real
every
one once.
version of this story.
Tyrion was
Jon
quiet.
went to the wall.
He said,
because the wall
I'll
was
tell
the
him.
place that accepted
She said,
everyone. And
tell him
because
from
Jon
me.
had spent 14
He said,
years in a castle.
I'll tell him from
his
you.
position was defined by
She
what
turned
he
back to
wasn't.
him.
Legitimate
She
rather
said,
than what he was.
ceasefire. In
Everything
writing.
else.
The children's
The
safety
wall
guaranteed.
offered the specific
held
egalitarian
his gaze.
promise of an institution
And when this is
that
over,
didn't care about
when the
your
dead
name.
are stopped,
You were a
the
brother of the
negotiation
watch.
is real.
Period.
Not a pretense.
The reality
He
of
said,
the watch was
yes.
not what the promise
She said,
described.
get out, Tyrion.
The watch
I have
was
letters to write.
understaffed, underfunded.
He left.
Manned by
The
criminals
North.
and cast-offs.
The muster.
The specific institution.
300 AC.
Decay that happened.
The
when
Ravens
society
went out
stopped
from
funding its
Dragonstone
defensive
and from Castle
infrastructure
Black
because the
simultaneously.
threat the infrastructure
John
defended
wrote the
against
one from
was
Castle
too
Black
old
himself.
and too distant.
He wrote
feel
to every
real.
northern lord and
John
every
adapted.
Stark bannerman, and he wrote
He
it the way
adapted
he
the
wrote
way
things
John
that
adapted
needed to
to
be
everything,
believed,
by being
which was directly,
competent,
with the facts
being better than
first
the situation
and the ask
required,
second, and
by
nothing
training
softened.
harder and working harder
He
and
wrote,
performing the specific
"The Night
relentless
King
excellence
is 3
that was
months
Jon's
from the wall.
response to
The
every
dead
environment
are
that
real.
questioned his worth.
I have flown
He
the
made
reconnaissance. The
Sam
Watch
Tarly,
has
the
been
fat
keeping
boy
this
from the
wall
Reach,
with
who had been sent to the
600
wall
men,
by a father
and we have
who
reached the
considered him an
limit of
embarrassment,
what
and
600
who was,
men can
beneath
do
the
against
fat
what
and
is
the
coming.
fear, the
I am
kindest and
asking
most
for
perceptive
everything you
person
have.
Jon had met.
Not because I believe in
Grand,
prophecy,
Pip,
not because
the
I believe
specific
the right
fraternity
blood in the
of young
right
men
hands
at the
changes
wall
history,
who are becoming brothers
because the
in
dead are
Watch's
coming,
sense.
and the wall needs
And who
bodies,
were.
and you
For
are the
Jon,
bodies I trust.
the first
He
PhD
signed
he'd
it,
ever had
Jon
that
Snow,
didn't carry the
Lord
asterisk of
Commander.
bastardy.
Your king,
He rose
if
through
you'll
the
have
ranks.
me. But
Not
Lord
quickly,
Commander
the Watch
first.
didn't do quickly.
Robb Stark said
But the
back
Lord
in 2
Commander,
days,
Jon
every
Mormont,
man the
noticed in
North
the
can
way
spare.
experienced commanders
I'm
noticed.
coming with them.
Talented recruits.
John read
with the
Robb's
specific
letter. He
evaluative
thought about
attention of a
Winterfell
man who
and
had
the
been
yard
identifying
and the years of growing up
for
beside
40
Robb,
years,
who
and
was
who
his brother
recognised
in every way that was
in
real,
Jon Snow
and his cousin in every
the raw
way that was
material
blood,
for something
and who
the
had
Watch
spent the
needed.
last year fighting a
ranging
different
started
war
in Jon's
with the
second
same
month.
determination.
Beyond the
He wrote
wall.
back, "Come,
Into the territories
bring
that the Watch
ice."
was supposed to
He
patrol.
paused.
And
He
that
added,
the Watch patrols
"It's good to hear
decreasing
from you."
frequency and
Robb's
increasing
next letter
casualty.
said, "It's good to
Jon
hear from
went on
you
his
too, Your
first
Grace."
ranging and came
Jon
back
looked at the
with
letter for a
specific
long
information
time.
that would have,
He thought,
in another time,
"I'm going to have to deal with the Your Grace
arrived
eventually."
through violence and
He thought,
death and the
after the dead,
catastrophic encounter
he
with
sent
the
back,
dead at the fist
"Jon,
of the first men.
just Jon,
In this
Castle
timeline,
Black,
the
assembly
information
point,
arrived through a ranging
300
that was not
AC.
safe.
They
No
came.
ranging was
The
safe.
North first, because
But
the North
structured,
believed most readily.
planned,
The Northern
conducted by a
lords who had
watch that
always
was,
known something
thanks
was
to the
wrong with the wall,
intelligence that
and who had
Bran's
been waiting
visions
for
had begun
someone
to
with
produce,
authority and a
translated
plan.
through Maester Aemon,
Stannis
who
Baratheon's
received the
forces
weirwood
next. The
communications
Baratheon
with
men
them.
who had been pointing at the wrong enemy,
Specific
and who turned
Targaryen
toward the wall
sensitivity
with the
that his
efficiency
blood
of
provided.
soldiers who are used to
A
being
watch that was
redirected.
prepared for
The
what the
Tyrell
ranging would
contingent,
find.
smaller than Jon would have
Jon
liked,
saw
because it was a
the
long
dead.
way from Highgarden to the
Patrol.
wall, and because Olenna
Small.
had sent what she could
15,
and kept what the Reach needed
20.
to function.
The
Jaime
specific
Lannister
advanced
arrived arrived alone.
The Night King's army
He arrived at Castle Black's gate at midday on a grey Tuesday with a single horse
with the
and his gold armor
purposelessness
and a missing
of
hand
things that were not
that was the
alive,
mark of what loyalty had cost him.
directed by something
And he
that was
asked at
not
the gate
present.
for the Lord
The
Commander.
ranging party had dragon.
John met him in the yard.
Not much.
They looked at each other.
Sent from
John said,
Dragonstone on Ned's
"I
order.
heard you were coming."
The first shipment.
Jaime
what
said,
would eventually become
"My
a
sister
flood.
sent me." John said, Why?
Enough to
Jaime
prove that
said.
the dragon glass
She said I deserved to
that the
fight a
dead
real
could be
war once.
killed
He looked at the wall,
by the
at the
obsidian.
specific, enormous reality of it.
Jon killed 2 of them.
I think she was being generous,
killed them with
Jon
dragon
said.
glass
She was being
and the
Cersei.
specific concentrated
Jaime looked at
fury
him.
of a man
Jon
who
said,
found in the dead, an
Tyrion
enemy
told me
that
about the
was not
conversation.
ambiguous.
She's keeping the south stable while we manage the north.
The dead were not
That's not
complimented.
generous.
The dead were a threat.
That's the calculation of a woman who has decided what she
And the
needs from this
simplicity of the
situation.
threat produced in Jon a
He
clarity
paused.
that the complicated
She's protecting
social
you by
dynamics
sending you
of his
somewhere
life
you
had
want to
never
be.
provided.
That's the part
He came
that's
back
generous.
to Castle Black.
Jaime was
He
quiet.
wrote to his father.
He said, She said you're Rhaegar's son.
The
Jon
dragon
said,
glass worked.
Yes. Jaime
Send
said,
more.
He was...
Send
He
everything.
stopped. He was a better man than people say. Also worse than people say. He was both those things at the same time. He looked at Jon. The eyes are stark. Jon said,
one from his
My
son
mother.
at the wall and one from
Jaime
his wife
said,
at Winterfell.
She was...
Both saying the
He
same
stopped
thing.
again. The specific stop of someone who has many things to say about a person and is deciding which are
Two
appropriate.
children, two
She
sources,
was remarkable.
two confirmations.
That's the right
same
word.
truth. Ned
He
went
looked
to
at
Stannis.
Jon.
The preparation
She chose
began.
him. Whatever the histories say. She chose him.
Robert, the grief.
Jon said,
288
I know.
AC.
Jaime said, I was Kingsguard. I should
Robert
have.
Baratheon drank.
There were
for a
things I
week.
should have done differently.
Not the
He
Robert
looked at his
who
missing
was
hand.
his daily habit.
There are a lot
The
of those.
recreational
Jon
consumption
said,
that had been his
You can do
primary
something
pastime
useful with this
since
one.
the end of the rebellion.
Jaime looked at
and
him.
that had converted the
Jon
warrior's
said,
body into the king's
You're the
body.
finest swordsman in the realm. One-handed.
This was different.
He held his gaze.
This was the specific.
I need
internal
fighters who know what they're
consumption
doing in
of
the
a man
cold.
Trying to fill a hole.
Can you
that
fight in
drink
winter
couldn't
gear?
fill. And he
Jaime
was going
said,
to keep trying until
I'll
the
learn.
trying killed him. Or
Jon
the
said,
hole closed.
Good.
And the odds were on
He
the
turned.
trying.
Come.
Ned found him
I'll
in his
show you what
chambers
we're
on the
dealing with.
5th night.
He showed him.
The chambers were. Ned looked at the room with
Castle
the
Black.
assessment of a man
Rob
who had been
Ruby.
managing crises
The
for
night he
months,
arrived.
and who was now encountering a crisis he couldn't manage.
Rob
through
arrived a
evidence or
week before
process.
Daenerys.
The room
He
was
came
a
with
disaster.
8,000 northern men
Bottles,
and a face that had
empty,
aged 3 years in
half
one.
empty,
The
broken.
specific cost of a year
Plates
of
of
war
food
and the
untouched.
specific
The
additional
curtains
cost
drawn
of being
against the
Robb
light.
Stark,
The
which was
specific physical
carrying
environment of a
everything
man
without
who had
complaint
decided
and
that
therefore
the world
carrying it on your
outside the
face.
room was too painful.
He came through the castle
who had
black
created
gate
inside
and he
the
saw
room
Jon on the
a
battlements
space
above
where
the yard
pain could be
and he stopped.
experienced without witnesses.
Jon came down.
Robert was in a chair.
They stood in the yard.
Not the
Robb
throne.
said, You have a
regular
dragon.
chair.
Jon said,
A chair that
Yes.
was too small for him.
Robb said,
And that he'd
named
sunk into with the
Scarrow.
specific gravity
Jon
of a
said,
man whose body was
Yes.
too heavy for whatever
Robb
was
said,
holding it up.
which means iron
Go
in
away.
High Valyrian.
No.
Jon said, You've
I
been
said,
reading.
go away, Ned.
Robb said, Since
I
your
heard
first
you.
raven, I've been reading
No.
everything I could find.
Ned
He
sat
looked at the
across from
dragon, who was in the yard with
Not
the
in the chair.
settled quality of a very large animal
floor.
that owned its space.
because the
He's
chairs were
bigger than
full of
I
Robert's
expected,
grief in the form
Jon
of empty
said.
bottles.
He's
and
been
discarded
growing for
clothing,
10 months.
And the specific
Robb said,
detritus of a
"Right."
week of self-destruction.
He looked at
And
Scarrow
because
for a
sitting
long
on the
moment.
floor brought
Then
Ned
he
to
looked at
Robert's
Jon.
level, and the being
You
at
should
level
have told me,
was the thing.
Jon said.
I brought
About
you
which
water.
part?
I
Robb
don't
said.
want water.
Any of it. The blood.
I know.
The dragon.
Drink it anyway.
He stopped.
looked at the cup.
He had the Stark face.
at Ned.
The one that didn't show everything
The
but that
eyes
Jon had been
were-
reading for his whole life.
Robert's eyes had always been blue.
Father kept the secret
Robert's
because he
eyes
had
were now
to.
The specific red
You
blue
kept
of a
it because
man
you chose
who was
to.
Crying and drinking in alternate
Jon said.
sequence, and
Yes.
his eyes had lost the ability
Robb
to
said.
distinguish between the two.
That's different. Jon said.
They were never mine.
I know.
I know.
Robb said.
I held
Why?
them.
Jon looked at
They
the
were-
yard, at the Watch brothers
I
moving
helped
through
Jon.
it with the routine
I thought-
efficiency of men who had learned to share their walls with a dragon,
I was drunk.
at the northern soldiers who had arrived
drunk
and
when
were
I
looking at everything with the assessment of men arriving somewhere
is my son.
strange and making it familiar.
Robert.
He said,
He's not my son.
because the secret
None of them
was a
are licensed.
weapon. The blood claim and the dragon
wife was
together
fucking her brother for
are a
17
very
years.
specific political
didn't.
weapon. And once
How
you
did I not
know
see
a
it
weapon
then?
exists, you start seeing the situations where you might use it.
You're not stupid.
He held Robb's gaze.
You trusted.
I didn't want anyone seeing
Trust
those
is
situations.
not stupidity.
I didn't want anyone,
Trust is exactly
including you,
stupidity when the person
making
you're trusting
decisions about the dead
Robert,
based on what was politically useful
Found it
about
out.
me.
set it down.
Robb said,
love
I
that.
wouldn't have. Jon said, you would have tried not to.
I
You're
tried
better
to.
at separating
I
politics
tried,
from
and I
judgment
failed
than
because
most
she wasn't.
people. He
He
paused.
stopped.
But it would have been
It
present.
wasn't Lyanna.
The knowledge.
The name landed
It would have
in the
been
room.
in every conversation.
Ned absorbed it.
He held his brother's
The
gaze.
way he absorbed everything
I
about
needed the
Lyanna,
conversations to be
with
about
the
the dead.
specific, controlled grief
Robb was
of a man
quiet.
who had lost his sister
He said,
and who carried
They
the
were.
loss the way he carried
For
everything.
me, anyway.
Internally,
He looked at Jon.
structurally,
I've been fighting a
display.
war for a year.
nobody is
A political war.
I know.
Joffrey
But I
and
looked for her.
Cersei and the succession and
In
what
every
kind
woman.
of realm we're going
In
to have.
Cersei.
He
I looked for
paused.
the thing that Lyanna was.
And the whole time I've been
The
reading
fire.
your ravens about the cold front and the
life
ranging
in her.
reports and
It
thinking,
wasn't there.
this
was
is
never
the
there.
real war.
And instead
The other
of,
one is a
Instead
distraction.
of seeing what was there,
Jon
what
said,
Cersei actually
I
was,
know.
I drank.
Robb said,
and I whored.
How long
and
have you known about Daenerys?
Robert's voice
Jon
was
said,
doing the thing that
Sam
large
told me
men's
after the
voices
hatchet.
did, when the thing
I found the
inside
letter
was
about
large
her
enough
in the
to match
Watch's
body.
intelligence from the same contact
it
who
easy
told us
for
about
her.
the ceasefire.
The distance,
Robb said,
the absence.
and you wrote to her?
I was absent
Jon
for
said,
17 years.
Yes.
And the absence was
Robb
the space
said,
where the...
Without telling anyone. Jon said, I told
this is
Aemon
your
before he
fault.
died.
Some
He
of
thought it was the right move.
The drinking.
Robb was quiet
the
for a moment.
absences.
He said,
The...
What is she
I
like?
wasn't a husband. I
Jon
was
said,
barely a king.
Not what you expect.
John Arryn was the
Robb
king.
said, What
I
do
was the
I
man
expect?
who sat in the
Jon
chair
said,
and who signed
Someone who
what
wants
Jon
the
told him
throne
to sign.
and is using
And
the
who went
dead
hunting
as a
when the
pretext to
signing
get
was
it.
done.
Robb
He
said,
looked at Ned.
And what is she actually?
You should have been hand.
Jon thought about the third night at Dragonstone,
I was in the north.
about the conversation by the
You were in the
fire,
north
and the
because you
ranging
chose the
reports
north over
spread
me.
between them, and her
You had
question,
right to choose.
What do you
You
want?
saw.
And his
You saw
answer,
what I was becoming,
and her
you were
answer to his
still
answer.
watching.
He
Robert
said,
leaned forward.
Someone who has been
Don't
carrying
ignore
the same weight I've been carrying,
Robert,
from a different
I need you
direction
here.
for longer.
The realm,
Someone who built everything toward a
trial,
specific destination
succession,
and arrived at the
Stannis, the whole
destination
mess.
and
I
found
need
that the
you.
destination was more complicated
Ned
and
was
larger
his friend.
and more worth doing
And
than
a
the
man
simplified
who'd been a
version
warrior,
she'd been
and a
building
lover,
toward.
and a king.
Robb said,
And who was
You
now
trust
drunk
her.
in a dark room,
Jon said,
discovering that
I trust the
family
specific
he'd
configuration
believed
of what she
was
wants
a fiction,
and what I want
and that
what the
fiction's
dead
collapse
require
had
and
left
how
him
those three
with
things
nothing
align.
except the throne.
He held his
And the
gaze.
throne's demands.
Yes, I
and
trust
a
her.
best friend who
Robb
had
said,
discovered the truth.
Right.
And
He
who had
looked at the
presented
wall
it
above them,
institutionally rather than
at the
personally,
specific,
because the
enormous fact of
institutional
it.
was safer.
I'm going to need to
I'm
meet
here,
her,
Ned said.
Jon said.
I'm
She
not
arrives
going
in a
anywhere.
week,
The
Robb
north.
said. I'll be here.
There are other things happening in the north.
He was here.
Things I need
He stood
to
in the
tell you
castle
about.
black yard when Daenerys
What
arrived
things?
with 3 dragons,
The wall.
and he watched the arrival
The
with the
watch.
expression of a man who had been reading about
Ned
this moment for a year.
How do you tell
and was
a
now
grieving
in it.
king that his personal crisis
He
is
watched
about
the way
to be
Jon went to meet
superseded
her.
by an
He
existential
watched them
one?
stand in the yard
How do you tell a
and look at
man
each other
who's just
with the
lost his
ease of
children
2
that the
people
world
who
is
have
about
already
to
done the
lose
hard work
everything?
of figuring each other out
There's a
and are now
threat
past it?
from beyond the wall.
He watched her look at the
a
wall.
real one,
He
the
thought,
kind that the wall was built for.
Jon was right.
Robert looked at him.
She's not what I
What kind of
expected.
threat?
He
The
went to
kind that
introduce
makes
himself.
The succession crisis
The
look
wall.
small.
Daenerys arrives.
Ned. The grief.
She
was
arrived
still
from the
there.
south with 3
The
dragons.
grief wasn't
Jon
going
watched her
anywhere.
come from the battlements.
The grief was
The sight
going
of
to
it,
be Robert's companion.
3 dragons from the south approaching the wall with the morning light
Something
behind
else
them,
was emerging
was
from
something that had no precedent in the living memory of anyone at Castle Black, and that produced, in the assembled brothers of the Watch and the northern soldiers, and Stannis' men, and everyone else who happened to be on the wall or in the yard, a silence that was not fear and not awe, and was something older than both. She landed Drogon in the yard.
And for the first
The 3
time
other
in
dragons
50
arranged
years,
themselves on the
the
wall
listening
and the
produced
towers with the specific quality of animals that have understood the strategic situation.
but the specific
She got
forced
down.
intensity.
She looked at the
Man who'd
wall.
been a commander before
He had
was a
seen,
king,
at
and was hearing
Dragonstone,
something
the way
that
she looked at
activated
things
the
she
part of
found
him
genuinely
that
large.
leadership had suppressed.
He saw it now. The
An
same
army of the
quality,
dead.
but more complete,
Coming
because the
south.
wall was genuinely large in a way that
Not
Dragonstone,
decades.
for all its
And
atmosphere,
you know this
was not.
because
She said,
because my
I understand
son
now.
has see-through trees,
He said,
and my other
what?
son has fought the
She said,
dead at the wall.
why you are
Both
the way you
of them
are.
telling me the same.
She looked at it. You've been
Robert
keeping
looked
this your whole life,
at the ruins,
standing in front of this.
at the wreckage of the
He said, not my whole life.
He stood up.
A few years. She
Not
said,
steadily.
long enough.
The week
She
of
turned.
drinking had done
Show me
what
everything.
drinking did.
He showed her everything.
He stood.
The ranging
The
reports,
specific Robert gesture
updated,
of standing up
the cold
when
front's
the thing in
position,
front of him
2
required
weeks current
standing
from the
rather
last
than
flight,
sitting.
the specific
Warriors
gap
instinct
between what they had
avoiding the drunken
and what the
urge.
threat required.
Get me a bath.
She listened with
An
the
armor.
attention she always
And-
brought, and she asked the
looked
same
at Ned.
quality of questions she always asked.
whatever your
And
son
by the end
says
of the
we
briefing, she had the picture
Dragonglass.
clearly in a
Men.
way that took
Whatever.
most people 3
Robert.
sessions to build.
I've been sitting in a chair for
Mormont sat
15
in the
years,
corner and watched her
drinking,
absorb it.
mourning
Jon
a
watched
woman who's
Mormont
been
watch her.
dead for 15
He
years.
thought,
Married
the man
to
has
a
been
woman who
waiting
was
for someone to
fucking her
take this
brother.
seriously for 20
His
years.
voice was rough.
He's now in a room with 2 Targaryens and 4 dragons and the full force of a mobilized response. He doesn't know what to do with that.
Give
He
me
thought,
something to fight.
I know the
Ned
feeling.
looked at his friend.
After the briefing,
He thought,
she went to the top of the wall.
the warrior,
Not with him.
still there.
She asked for it alone, and he gave
under
it to
everything.
her. He understood.
He thought,
The wall required its
Robert
own
Baratheon
accounting.
channels his grief.
He'd needed to
the
stand at the top of it alone before he could do anything
instead of
else.
into the bottle.
She came
The
back an hour
preparation
later.
Might actually work.
She said, "We go north tomorrow." He said,
This is the first
"Yes."
good thing that's happened
She said,
since I came south.
"The cold is closer than your last
Bath
report."
First,
He
Ned
said, "I know."
Bath first.
She said,
Robert agreed.
"You felt it too."
The king bathed.
He said,
The king dressed.
"Scaros has been
The
oriented
king went
north
to
since
the
we
small
arrived.
council.
He knows where it
Sat in
is."
his chair and
She
told
said,
the council,
"Then let him
"We're
lead."
going to war."
He said,
Not the
Yes.
war they expected.
"The night
Not
before,
Lannisters.
the wall."
Not Tyrells.
He found the
Not
place on the
dynastic
wall where the
conflicts that
cold
the
pressed
realm
clearest.
had been processing
There was a
for months.
spot on the eastern reach of the battlements where the directional cold, the organized cold, the cold that was not weather, came through strongest, where you could feel the shape of it rather than just the ambient temperature. He'd found it in his first week as Lord Commander and had come back to it regularly since then, standing with it the way you stood with the thing you were afraid of, because familiarity was not the same as comfort, but was the step before it.
Stannis Baratheon
She found him there.
arrived at King's Landing.
He wasn't
like
surprised.
a military operation.
She stood
arriving
beside
at a
him.
theatre of engagement.
The north
On time,
spread out
with
below the wall,
resources, carrying
the
the
forests
specific
and the
Stannis
mountains
energy of
and
a
the
man
dark
who did
of
not waste
everything that
motion
was coming
or
from
word,
deeper in that
and who
dark.
found both wasting to
The sky was
symptoms of a
clear in the way
character
winter
deficit
skies
that he
were
was
clear,
constitutionally
which was
incapable
absolutely,
of overlooking.
without the softening of cloud,
He came
the
with
stars
50
very
men,
present and very cold.
not an army,
She said,
a retinue,
"Are you afraid?"
the specific calibrated force that
"Yes."
said,
She
I
said,
am here as a political actor,
He said,
not a military one.
"You said that
but
like
I
you
have
mean
enough
it."
steel behind me
She said,
to make the distinction
"I've been afraid
academic
since
if
I was
the
born.
distinction is tested."
I was born
He
into a
met Ned
dynasty
in the Tower of
that had
the
already ended.
The meeting was.
I've been afraid
Ned
of
had
getting
met
it wrong
Stannis
since before I
at
understood
Robert's court,
what getting it
at
wrong
the
looked
occasional
like.
council session that Stannis
She looked at the
attended
north.
with the grim efficiency
The
of a
fear
man fulfilling
is
a
useful.
duty he found distasteful.
I stopped trying to not be afraid years
Stannis
ago
was not
and started
charismatic.
trying to be afraid and moving
Stannis
anyway.
was not warm.
He said,
Stannis
"That's
was
what it
a
is."
man whose virtues,
She said,
honesty,
"Yes."
discipline,
"After."
strategic intelligence,
She said,
were the
"What?"
kind of virtues
He said,
that were admired in
"After the
theory
dead are stopped.
and avoided in person.
After the realm is
because
stable.
the person displaying them
After.
made the avoidance
He
seem
paused.
like cowardice.
"I want to take you to
You've
Winterfell."
confirmed it. Not a question.
She looked at him.
Stannis sat
He
across
said,
from Ned in the solar with the
"I want to
posture
show
of
you
a
where I
man
grew
who
up,
had never in his life
where I learned
found
what the
a
North
comfortable
is."
position in a chair.
He
and who
held
had
her
decided
gaze.
decades ago.
"You've been
that
building
comfort
toward
was for
Westeros
people
your
with
whole
weaker
life from
backgrounds.
outside it.
Three
I grew up
Robert's
inside
bastards.
it, in the specific
All with the
northern
Baratheon
inside of
colour.
it, that is.
None of the
It's
Queen's
different
children
from what
have
the
it.
South
The
is.
lineage book shows
I want
every
you to know
Baratheon
what
for
you're
300
governing.
years the same
She said,
colouring, without exception.
"That's a long time
I
away."
know the evidence.
He said,
I assembled
Yes.
most of it with Jon Arryn
He looked
before
north.
Jon died.
"But I'm going to think
Why didn't
about
you
it.
present it?
While we're up there,
Stannis' jaw.
I'm going to have
The
something to
specific
think about
Stannis
that
jaw
isn't
clench
just
that
the
was the
dead."
nearest he came to visible
She was
emotion.
quiet. She
Because
said,
Jon Arryn
"What else
was
do you
going to
want?"
present it.
After.
Jon Arryn was building the
He
case.
said,
The case.
"I told Tyrion."
Not the suspicion.
She said, "Tell
the
me."
case that could be
He
presented
said,
to Robert with the
"Winterfell,
weight of
the
proof
North safe,
rather than
the
accusation.
watch, what it should
Jon
be."
died before the case
He
was
paused.
complete.
"You on the
Died
throne,
or was killed.
governing the realm the way you've been
Was killed.
building toward."
Obviously,
She said,
the timing, the
"And you,"
specific timing, the
he
case
said,
nearly complete.
"beside you,
the presentation imminent,
not on the
timing
throne,
is evidence of its own.
beside it."
Someone knew what
He
Jon
met
was
her
doing
eyes.
and eliminated
The way
him
you
before
fight
the
in the
doing
air.
produced the result.
You don't need someone to
Who?
match you.
Stannis'
You need
face.
someone who fills the
The
gaps.
mask of a man who
someone
had
who goes
opinions
where
about
you
everything
can't go
and who
and
expressed
does the
opinions with
specific
the
thing you
specific
can't
Stannis
do.
clarity that
He
made the
paused.
expressing feel like
"You're
being
the
hit
queen.
with a dictionary.
I'm the person
Queen.
who goes where no one
The
else will go."
Lannisters. The specific
said,
structure that
"That's
benefits from the
not
secret
a
remaining
diminishment."
a secret. He looked
said,
at Ned.
"I know."
Your man Baelish.
She said,
He told you about the
"Most
book.
men would hear that
He
as a
pointed you in
diminishment."
the right direction.
He said, "I'm not most
Baelish
men."
points everyone
She
in
said,
the right direction.
"No,
The question
you're
is
not."
why.
She looked at the
Stannis
north.
leaned
The
forward.
thing you described.
Baelish
Being
is not your
beside
ally.
rather than instead.
Baelish is a man
She
who
paused.
provides useful information
That's
to
what
everyone,
I have with
and who
Miss
benefits
Sande,
from the conflict
with
that the
Jorah.
useful information produces.
What I've been building for
Pointing to
years.
The lineages.
He said,
Because a Stark with the
Yes.
lineages creates
She
a
said,
crisis.
"You're
And a
describing the
crisis is an
thing I've
opportunity,
needed
and
and haven't
Baelish
been able
needs
to
an
find
opportunity."
with someone who shares what I am."
Ned absorbed this.
He said, "Yes."
In another timeline,
She looked at him.
Ned would not have
She said,
absorbed this because
"You
Catelyn's
arrived
trust
3
in
weeks ago?"
Baelish would have
He said,
overridden Ned's
"I know."
instinct. And the
She said,
overriding
"This
would
is
have
very
reduced the
fast."
specific
He said,
misplaced trust trust.
Things
that
happen
led to the
fast when the
disaster.
dead are coming.
In this
She said,
timeline,
"Is that what this
Catelyn
is?"
was in Winterfell.
He said, "No."
Catelyn's trust was
He held
not
her
a
gaze.
factor.
I know the
And
difference
Stannis,
between
who was
urgency
many things
and something
that Ned
real.
found abrasive,
This
but who was
is
also
something real.
the most relentlessly
She looked at
honest
the north.
political analyst.
She said,
available
"After the
Stannis'
dead."
assessment of Baelish
He said,
was landing on
"After the
ground
dead."
that was not preceded
She said,
with
"Show me
Catelyn's
Winterfell."
childhood loyalty.
He said, "Yes."
What do we do?
They stood at the wall
We tell
together.
Robert.
The cold pressed
will
at them
lose
from
his
the
mind.
north. They held.
Robert will want Cersei dead,
Dawn,
and Jaime dead,
beyond the wall,
and the children Stannis
the
stopped.
engagement.
The stop was not
They crossed the
emotional, it was
wall at first
calculation.
light.
The specific
4
Stannis
dragons and
process
their
of
riders,
rejecting
and below them
consequences
the
before
combined
speaking.
force.
Robert
the
will.
Watch and the Northern
Want
Lords and Stannis'
The
men
question is
and
whether we
Jaime's
can contain
Lannister soldiers
bloodletting
and the
or whether the
specific
bloodletting
mixed army of
becomes the
people
war.
who had looked at a white
How
stopping
do
in
we
a
contain
courtyard
it?
and had decided the
We don't tell
calculation had
Robert
changed.
alone. We tell
Scaros
Robert in
oriented
front of the
north
council.
immediately. He'd
In
been
front of
doing it
witnesses.
since they arrived at the wall,
The presence
but now
of
he did it
witnesses
with the
creates a
focused
political
purposefulness
framework. The
of an animal
revelation
that had
becomes
found the
an
scent.
institutional event.
John
rather
felt
than
it
a
in the
personal
dragon's
one.
body.
And
The
institutional
tightening of
events are
everything.
managed through
The
process
shift from patrol
rather than
posture
emotion.
to the something
You
is
want to
their
present the
orientation.
case to the full small council.
He looked at Daenerys.
I want to
She
present the
looked
case
back.
to the full small council.
He nodded.
With the evidence documented.
She nodded.
With Robert present.
They split.
With the specific
Rhaegal and
procedural
Viserion,
weight that
with the
prevents
unsullied
response from
commanders
being
or
Robert,
the secondary riders,
takes a war
Daenerys had been
to Jaime
training,
Lannister's
turned
skull
toward
from
the
the throne
army's
room.
flanks. The
Ned
mass of
looked
the
at
dead that was already
He
visible
thought,
from altitude.
"This is better.
The enormous
This is
moving
different from
field
what
of
I would have
organized
done.
bodies that was
What
everything
I would
the
have done
ranging
would do,
reports had been
left to
building
my own
toward.
devices,
Drogon
is go to
turned with
Robert
Jon and
alone.
Scaros toward the
Tell him
source.
the truth,
They
and
flew
trust
north.
Robert to handle it.
The cold
And Robert would not
intensified.
handle it.
Jon
Robert
felt it in
would
the way
rage.
he'd felt it on the wall.
Robert would kill.
The directional pressure
Robert
of it.
would produce the
cold
specific
that was a function of
catastrophic
will
response
rather than
that
weather.
Robert produced
The cold
when his
that had been
emotions
building
were
for 30
engaged
years
and his
and was now
judgment was
everything it
not.
was going to be.
Stannis
Scaros
was right.
flew into it.
The
Not
containment
without
mattered.
difficulty. The air got
The
heavy.
process
The way
mattered.
it got heavy at altitude,
When?
but different.
Tomorrow.
Thicker, with the specific
small
resistance of
council
something
meets
that
at
was pushing
midday.
back.
We
The
present
dragon worked harder.
together.
The wings making the
Together.
calculated adjustments
I
of an
am
animal
Robert's
that had been
legitimate
built for
heir.
this.
If the children are high,
Jon kept his hands
my
steady
presence
and let
at the
Scaros
presentation
navigate.
communicate.
Behind
The
him,
succession
Drogon's
is
enormous
secure.
wingspan held
The
the air
Baratheon
with the
line
force
is
of the
not
largest
ended.
living thing in
The
the world,
transition
pushing
is
against
orderly.
something that would have stopped anything
Ned
smaller.
nodded.
They found the
Stannis
Night
stood.
King at the center of the cold.
One more thing.
It was.
What?
John had read
The
the accounts.
Lannisters will respond.
He had the word for it.
Not immediately.
The Night King.
Cersei
He
is
had the
emotional.
history of it.
She'll react.
The
before
8,000
she
years
learns.
of it.
But
the
Tywin
fact
will
of it.
respond.
He had been building
Tywin's
toward
response
this for
will be
months.
measured.
Encountering it was still
Calculated.
nothing like the reading.
Tywin has been
The
building
cold
the
that
Lannister
came from the
position
Night King
for
was not
40
metaphor.
years. And
It was a
position
physical property of the
is not
air
going to
in a
be
radius
surrendered,
around him.
because
A
a
cold
lineage
that was not temperature,
says his
but the specific
grandchildren are
thermodynamic
bastards.
quality of something that
Stannis
had
held
decided
man's
the
gaze.
normal rules of heat,
The
and life,
presentation
and
is the
continuation
beginning,
did
Lord
not
Stark.
apply to it.
Not
The dead
end.
around it moved with the organized
Ned knew
deliberateness of something being
He knew it
directed
in the way
rather
he
than
knew
something that
military
wanted to
things.
move.
The specific
The Night King
understanding
looked
that
up.
the first engagement was
It
not
saw
the
them.
war, and that the war was
Jon
won or
felt
lost
Scaros
in the
orient,
engagements that followed
the body
first
of the
one.
dragon sharpening in the specific
I'll be
way
ready.
that meant the dragon
Will you?
understood what it was looking at.
I'll be ready.
He looked at
Stannis
Daenerys.
Ned
She
sat
looked at
the
him.
solar.
He
He
said,
thought,
"Together."
tomorrow.
She said,
He thought,
"Together."
everything changes tomorrow.
They dove.
He was right. But not in the way
The
he
engagement.
expected.
What happened? The
Small
Night King
council.
moved.
The truth.
Faster than the accounts.
228 AC.
Faster than anything that size should move. With the specific
council chamber
inhuman
was full.
economy of something that did not waste energy on fear
When the
or
officers
hesitation.
understood that something
It
was
moved away
starting
from
to happen,
Scaros' approach
and that
and
their
towards
presence
something
and
else.
happening would define their
Toward
position
Drogon.
in whatever came after.
John understood the tactic
The council
immediately.
members were present.
Not engage the
Pycelle,
faster dragon on the direct approach,
Baelish,
force the other
Renly,
rider to respond,
Robert's younger
split
brother,
the coordinated
who had come to the
attack.
capital from
He
Storm's
said,
End,
shouting
Stannis'
across the air,
quiet insistence,
"Daenerys!"
which was
She'd
itself
already
a
seen
political
it.
statement
She pulled
that nobody
Drogon
had
sideways
supported yet.
in a maneuver that
The
cost
king was
distance,
present,
but preserved the line,
Robert,
keeping
sitting
Drogon
at
out
the
of the
head
Night
of the
King's
table
reach,
with a
while
cup.
Jon and Scaros came around the far side.
Been told that the
Night King turned.
important, and who had
Three
attended
directions,
because Ned
Jon and
asked,
Scaros
and
from the
because
north,
Robert still
Daenerys
did
and
things
Drogon
Ned
from the
asked,
south.
which
The
was the
fire
residue
already
of a
starting.
friendship that had
The
survived
Night
50
King raised
years
its
of
hand.
distance,
Ice
and that was
formed
about
in the
to be
air in a
tested
way that wasn't
past the
natural,
point of survival.
not the gradual ice of
Ned and
temperature,
Stannis
but instant,
entered together.
purposeful,
This
a
was
weapon.
noted.
Daenerys pulled Drogon Drogon
his
up,
brother two
and the
men
ice
who had
missed.
no reason to
Jon
arrive
felt
together,
Scaros back
whose
hard
relationship
left,
was
and he
based
held
on
the
mutual
position with the
obligation
months of
rather than
practice
mutual
it had
warmth
taken to be
entering
able
the
to hold a
council
position
chamber
like
of
this.
coordination.
The committed bank,
The noting
trust,
produced the
the
specific
knot bracing,
atmospheric change that
He
happened
drew
in
long
rooms
claw,
when the
the
occupants
Valyrian
sensed a
steel
shift
in the
and
cold.
began preparing for the
The Night King
consequences.
looked at the sword.
Ned
Something
carried the
changed
book,
in the quality of the
the
cold around
lineages
it.
and histories,
John thought,
the heavy volume
It
that
knows.
John Arryn had been reading
it's
when he
been here
died.
before.
The book
it
was
knows
a
what this
physical
means.
thing, leather bound,
He thought,
thick, The
Good.
specific weight of
He committed.
300 years of
Scaros
genealogical
dove.
records.
The Night King moved
The
again.
carrying was a statement.
The same
He
sideways
set it on
movement.
the table.
The same
Robert looked at
inhuman
the book.
economy.
Looked at
Daenerys
Ned.
came from the other side.
Looked at Stannis.
Drogon's fire hit.
What's this?
Not the Night King.
Ned began.
The
He
ice
began
the
the
Night
way
King
he
had been
began
forming.
everything
The
directly,
weapon in the air.
without
The
preamble.
cold architecture
With
of
the
it.
specific
The
star
fire
approach to
consumed the
truth-telling
cold
that
the way
prioritized
fire
the truth
and cold
over the
consume
telling.
each other when they meet.
Your Grace.
Completely.
The book
Neither
in front of
surviving
you
the
is the
contact.
lineages and histories of the
The
great
Night
houses.
King stumbled.
It records
Not
the physical
fell.
characteristics of every
Stumbled.
noble family in the Seven
The
Kingdoms
specific
for
loss
300
of balance of
years.
something whose environment
John
had changed
Arryn was reading
unexpectedly.
this book when he died.
John was already there.
He was reading
Longclaw
it
found the
because the
Night
book
King.
reveals a pattern
The
in
accounts were
Baratheon
consistent,
bloodline
and he
that
had
is
read them 3
inconsistent with
times,
the
and they were
current
still not
succession.
adequate preparation for the specific
Robert's fate.
reality of the Night King
Not
stopping.
understanding yet the specific
falling.
pre-comprehension
Stopping.
state of a man who was
The
receiving
cessation of
information that
something
was
that had
going
been
to
running
change
for
everything,
8,000 years.
and whose mind was
Complete.
still in the old everything,
Absolute.
still
The
processing the
cold
words
retreated.
without the implication.
Not gradually. The way a
The
fire
Baratheon
went out when you
bloodline
removed its
produces
fuel.
the same physical
Instant.
characteristics in
Total.
every generation.
The quality of the air
Black
returning to just cold.
Blue eyes.
Northern
In every
cold.
documented
The
Baratheon
cold of the
for
deep
3
winter
centuries.
north. That was simply
In every
temperature
confirmed Baratheon
and not
child,
will.
including your
The
natural
dead
children,
stopped.
whom I have
Every
visited
white in the
and
engagement.
confirmed.
The ones
Robert's
on the
fate was
flanks where
changing.
Rhaegal and
The
Viserion were
comprehension
working.
arriving, not all
The
at
ones
once
in the army
stages.
below.
The way
ones
dawn
on the
arrived.
periphery of the engagement.
The light increasing
them.
gradually, and the
The
darkness
stopping was the
receding,
loudest thing
and the
John had
things
ever
that had
heard,
been invisible
which was
in the
strange
dark
because it was the
becoming
absence
visible.
of sound. The
Your
dead had
children,
been making a
Joffrey,
kind of sound
Myrcella,
without
Tommen,
noise, the
have none of
resonance
these
of
characteristics.
organized wrong
They
movement.
have blonde hair
And when it
and
stopped,
green eyes.
the silence was
Lannister
enormous.
coloring. The room.
Scaros
Robert's
landed on the
hand was
frozen
the
ground
table.
beside the Night King.
His hand was
John
around
got
it.
down.
The hand
He stood in
was
the cold
tightening.
that was just cold.
The specific physical
Daenerys
response of a
brought
man
Drogon
whose body
down
was
20 feet
processing
away.
something before
She
his
got
mind
down.
was ready.
She walked
and
him
whose
across the
body's
still field.
response was
She said,
grip. Hold.
Is it over?
Compress. What are you
He
saying?
looked at the north.
I'm
At the
saying
deep
what
north,
Jon
where the
Arryn
cold
was
front
going
had
to
been
say
building for
before
30
he
years,
died.
and was now just
I'm
landscape.
saying what Stannis has known for
He said,
months,
"I
and
think
what
so."
the evidence in this book and in
She
the
said,
persons of your natural
"Think so,
children
isn't-"
confirms beyond
He said,
reasonable
"Scout."
dispute.
He looked at the
Ned
dragon.
held Robert's
He's oriented
gaze.
south.
Your children
She looked at
are
Scout.
not your children.
The dragon, which
They
had been
are
pointing
Jaime
north since they
Lannister.
crossed the wall, was
The
looking
room
south.
broke, not loudly,
At
the
the wall.
specific silent
At the
fracture
direction
of the
of home.
space where every person
Daenerys
was
said,
processing the same
"Oh."
information
He said,
simultaneously,
"Yes."
and where the processing
She exhaled.
produced not noise,
put his hand
but
out.
the absence of noise.
She took it.
The vacuum
They stood in the
happened
field
when
in the
breath was
cold that was
held
just
and bodies
cold,
went
and they
still,
held on.
and the specific electrical charge of a catastrophic revelation
Castle Black.
filled the air.
Jaime and John,
Robert's
the
fate.
night of the battle.
Ned watched it happen.
Jaime found him at the well in the Castle
Watched the
Black yard at some hour in the
comprehension
deep
arrive
night. John
Watched
had come
the
out
denial
because the
breathe.
specific
Instinctive.
quality of the silence
The
in the
mind's
aftermath of the
reflexive
dead
rejection
stopping
of
was
information
something he needed
that
space to
threatened
be
the
in.
foundation.
Not people, and
Watched
not
the denial
walls.
fail, crumple,
The yard
collapse
was empty
under the
except for
weight
him.
of the evidence,
And the
that
cold
Ned had
was just
presented,
cold.
and, that
And the
Robert's
wall
own
above them was
observation,
700
now
feet of
freed from
ancient
the
ice
denial's
that had
management,
held and was going to
confirming.
keep holding.
Robert knew.
Jaime came out and found
Not
him there
because
and
Ned
said,
had told him, because
"Couldn't
Robert
sleep."
had known.
John
In the way
said,
that people knew things
"No."
they didn't want to know,
Jaime said,
the information present
"Neither
in
could
the
I."
subconscious,
He sat on the
available if
well's
conscious
edge.
mind allowed it.
First,
suppressed
real
the
fight in
cause.
2 years.
The allowing
The hand-
would destroy the
He
architecture
looked at
of
the
the
empty
life.
place where his right hand
The
had
children
been.
didn't look like
The
it.
fighting style has
Robert had
changed.
seen this.
Still worked.
Had not seen
Just
it.
different.
Had looked at
John
the
said,
children
"You
and
fought
thought they'd
well."
take after their mother.
Jaime said,
Because the alternative to
"I
thinking
fought like
that was
someone who was
unthinkable.
recalculating every
The
10
unthinkable
seconds."
had been thought.
He looked at the gate that led north.
Robert stood.
The dead
Out.
fight differently.
The word was a force.
They don't hesitate.
Not loud, louder than
They don't
loud.
tire.
The specific
paused.
Robert registered.
I've been
that was
fighting
beyond
people my
volume.
whole life.
That was the sound
People
a man
hesitate.
made when the thing
People
inside
tire.
him was too large for
People
the man,
make mistakes.
and the man was trying to
He
contain it
paused.
through the only
The
tool
dead are
available,
honest in a
which
way
was
people
command.
aren't. John
All
said,
of you.
"Yes."
Out.
Jaime said.
Not you.
Cersei would
He
hate
pointed
that
at
I
Ned.
said that. John
Not you.
almost smiled.
At Stannis.
Jaime said,
The rest of you.
"She'd say the dead lack
Out.
artistry.
They left.
She values
I said
artistry."
first, with the
John
scuttling
said,
speed of a man who had
"Does
been
she?"
in the room when
Jaime
power
said,
changed hands.
"She would
and
never
who had
do something
developed the
simply when it
survival
could be
instinct
done
to
elaborately.
leave before the
It's her
changing
best
was
quality
complete.
and her worst one
Varys
simultaneously."
said, with the smooth
He looked at the
departure that was
wall.
Daenerys' signature
She
presence
sent me
and then
here
not.
because she knew
The
I needed to
specific
be
social
here.
disappearance
She'd
of a
never
man
admit
who had
that.
been vanishing from
Jon
dangerous
said.
rooms for 30
Why not?
years. Baelish III,
Jaime
with
said.
the specific reluctance
Because admitting
departure
it
of a
would
man
mean
who
admitting
wanted to
she
stay,
sees me
because
clearly.
the information was currency.
And Cersei doesn't
the
give
currency
people
was
the knowledge
enormous,
that she
and
sees them
leaving
clearly.
meant missing the
It's a
denomination.
vulnerability,
Renly stayed.
Jon said. You
Robert
see her
hadn't told him
clearly,
to leave.
Jaime said.
Robert looked at Ned.
I've seen her clearly
Jaime,
my whole life.
yes.
It's not
And
always
Cersei.
useful.
Yes,
He looked
Robert's
at Jon.
hand was still around the cup.
Your father,
The cup
Rhaegar.
was Ned heard it crack.
He saw
the
my
ceramic
father's
giving
king
way
clearly.
under a grip.
He saw what Aerys was becoming long before anyone else would admit it.
And that was,
He
in the
paused.
absence of a warhammer,
He didn't do anything
destroying
about
the
it.
nearest available object.
Jon said.
The cup
I know.
broke.
Jaime
Wine
said,
and ceramic on the table.
seeing something clearly and acting
Robert
on it
looked
are
at the
different.
wreckage.
He
Looked at
held his
hand,
gaze.
Looked at the blood
I killed
where a
Aerys.
shard had cut his palm.
I sat on his throne and
I'm
waited
going
for
to
Ned
kill him.
Stark to come through the
Robert,
door,
I'm going
and
to
I let
kill
him
Jaime
think what he
Lannister.
thought,
I'm
because I
going
was
to Robert.
tired, and I didn't
Stannis'
know how
voice.
to explain it.
The specific
He
Stannis
paused.
intervention
I've regretted that for
precise.
15 years.
The
Not
verbal
the killing,
equivalent of a
the
bucket
sitting,
of water on a fire
the letting
that was
someone who
about to
mattered
become
believe
uncontrollable.
something wrong.
The response to
Jon
this
said,
needs to be institutional,
Ned told Rob,
not personal.
before he died,
If you kill Jaime Lannister,
but the
in
judgment of
throne
you was
room,
too simple,
you produce a war.
that he hadn't asked
If
the
you
right
process
questions.
this through the legal structure,
Jaime
arrest,
looked at him.
trial,
Jon said,
verdict, you produce
He'd been
a
thinking about
transition.
it for years.
The distinction
What he'd
is
seen
the
in the
distinction
throne room
between a kingdom
and what
that
it meant.
survives and a
He
kingdom
held Jaime's gaze. He would have said it to your face if he'd had time.
a trial,
Jaime was very still.
an
He
arrest,
said,
a
he was the
trial,
most honourable man I
a
ever met.
verdict,
Jon said.
the children's
Yes.
status,
Jaime
addressed
said.
through council
And
decision,
he thought I was...
not through violence.
Jon said.
Cersei,
He thought the whole picture was more
addressed through
complicated
the
than the
faith,
version everyone
through
was
annulment,
telling.
through the
He
legal
paused.
mechanisms
He
that
usually
exist
saw
for
things that
exactly
way.
this situation.
Jaime
I
looked
don't
at the
want
well.
mechanisms.
He said,
I want
Your mother.
what you want.
Jon
is
said.
what the kingdom needs.
What about
and not
her?
The same thing.
Jaime said.
They rarely
She's
are.
alive.
That's what being
Jon
a king
said.
means.
Yes. At
Stannis
Winterfell.
held the gaze.
Jaime said.
You're my brother.
I was
I
Kingsguard
am
when
telling
she...
you.
When
The
Rhaegar...
response needs to be managed.
He stopped.
Not for
I should have
Cersei's
done
sake,
something.
Not for
I've
Jaime's,
thought about that too.
for the realms.
He looked at his hand.
Robert looked
I spent the rebellion doing what I was told,
looked at the
and not
wine.
asking whether what I was told was right.
at Ned.
Jon said.
You knew.
Aerys gave the order for the
Found out.
wildfire.
Weeks
Jaime
ago.
said. Yes.
I've been
Jon said. And
preparing
you
this.
killed him for it.
preparing.
Jaime said.
So the response could be
Jon said.
what Stannis said.
That's not someone who does what
Managed.
they're told without asking whether it's right.
You've
He
been
held
in my
his
city
gaze.
for weeks.
That's
knowing
someone
that
who
my
asks
wife
the
was
question
fucking mine,
and acts on the answer
her
at the
brother,
worst possible
and you.
moment. That's
I was
extremely
doing what Jon
costly
Arryn was
courage.
doing when Jon Arryn was
Jaime
murdered.
looked at him.
I was
He
building
said,
the case so the case
"You're
could
very
be presented
strange."
properly.
Jon said.
Robert sat
I get
down.
that. Jaime
He sat
said.
the way men sat
You're
when
your
the standing
father's
was
son.
no longer
The
possible.
bearing.
Heavily,
Something about the way you
completely,
hold your ground.
the body surrendering to
paused.
gravity.
But the
Because
way
the
you think
willpower
is
that
entirely
feeds
someone
the upper
else's.
was now
Jon
being
said.
used for
My
something
mother
else.
taught me. Jaime said.
Children.
Lyanna Stark.
They're not.
Jon said.
They're.
Yes.
I held them
Jaime said.
when
The
they were
Starks teach their children to hold the difficult thing and say it
Robert's
plainly.
voice was doing
Jon
something
said.
Ned had never
Yes.
heard it do.
Jaime said.
Breaking.
It's either very admirable
The
or
specific
very inconvenient
fraction
for everyone
of a
around
large
them.
man's voice.
Jon
The
said.
thing inside
Usually
was not
both.
anger,
Jaime
greed,
said.
and the grief
Both.
was the first
He almost
time.
smiled.
And the first
I'd like to
time
meet her.
was
Your mother.
always the
He
worst.
paused. If
I
she's
held
willing.
that boy. And I
Jon
thought,
said. I'll ask
I
her.
know.
She'll have
You
opinions
don't.
about you. She has
have
opinions
5
about
children
everyone.
who are yours.
Jaime
You
said.
know exactly
Is that?
who they are because
Jon
they
said.
came from you.
It's a good thing.
And
She
knowing
forms accurate opinions and then she adjusts them when the evidence changes.
You don't think about it.
He
because you
looked at
don't
the
have to.
wall. She'll have adjusted already. She pays attention.
eyes were red.
Jaime said. Right.
Foundation
He
just
stood.
disappeared.
The dead are stopped.
Ned leaned
Jon said.
forward.
Yes.
Robert,
Jaime said. That's what we came here to do. Jon said.
sorry
Yes.
about how this happened.
Jaime said.
And
I'm going to
sorry
go
about
south
time
in the
and I'm
morning.
sorry about everything.
He held Jon's
But
gaze.
Stannis is right.
I have things to manage
response
at Casterly Rock. The children to see to. Cersei
whether the
to.
kingdom
He stopped.
survives the hand.
Cersei to have a conversation
Robert looked at
with that
Ned.
we should have had years
He
ago.
looked at his brother.
Jon said.
He looked
Good
at
luck.
the wreckage on the
Jaime
table.
said. With Cersei.
All right.
Jon said.
His voice
With all of it.
was
Jaime said.
not calm.
Yes.
Controlled.
He turned. Stopped.
The specific
Commander.
Robert control
Jon said.
that was the opposite
Jon.
of his natural
Jaime
state.
said. Jon.
And that was applied
He held
to
his gaze.
situations where the
Thank you
natural state
for what you
would
said about your
produce a
father.
catastrophe.
About what he thought. He paused.
Arrest them.
It matters.
Both
More
of
than is useful to
tonight.
admit. Jon
Before
said.
they hear
I
about this
know.
meeting and run.
Jaime went inside.
I'll handle
Jon
it,
stayed at the
Stannis
well.
said.
He
Not
looked
alone.
at the wall.
Ned too.
He thought about
Both
all
of
the
you.
people who had done the thing that needed
Enough
doing
men that
and
the
paid the
Kingsguard
price for
doesn't
it
interfere.
and been understood wrong by the
Stannis
histories.
and Ned left.
He thought about
Robert
Jaime
sat
sitting
in
on
the couch
Aerys's
chamber
throne,
alone.
waiting for Ned to come
Looked
through
at
the door.
broken cup.
He thought about what it
wine
cost to make the right choice
blood
at the
on his
wrong
hand.
moment.
He thought about
He thought-
Cersei.
The histories are
about Joffrey.
always too simple.
He thought about
He thought,
17 years of a marriage.
I'll try to make the record better.
And 3 children.
He
that
went
had been a
inside.
lie. And the
The
specific
return.
experience
What
of
was
a man
left?
discovering that the thing he
They came
built his
back over the
family
wall
on
at midday.
was
The army below was standing in the aftermath of the dead going still.
The
The specific, stunned quiet of people who had been fighting something and had watched it stop simultaneously everywhere at once. Jon could see Robb from the air, on horseback, looking up at the 4 dragons coming south. He could see Robb's face when he recognized him.
The drinking was the Robert response.
He brought Scaros down in the
The
yard.
drinking was what Robert did.
Robb was
The thing
there.
inside him was too large.
Jon got down from
And
the
the
dragon,
alternatives
and his
to
brother,
drinking were
his
either
cousin,
violence or
technically,
grief.
but the word had never fit the relationship, was standing in the castle black yard and looking at him with the expression of a man who had prepared himself for several possible outcomes and was not certain which one had happened.
The bottle was empty.
Jon said,
Then
"It's
he
done."
called for another.
Robb said, "Done." Jon said,
Sansa.
"The Night King is gone.
What
The dead stop." He looked at the wall.
298
The wall holds.
AC.
Robb looked at him. Something working on his face.
Sansa Stark
He said,
was 11
"You should have
years
told me."
old, and she was
Jon
learning
said,
the most
"About."
important lesson
Robb said,
King's Landing
"All
would
of
ever
it.
teach her.
The blood.
The difference
The
between
dragon.
what things looked
What
like
you are."
and what things
He
were.
held his gaze. "You
She
could
had
have."
come south
Jon
with
said,
romantic
"I know."
ideas. The
Robb
court
said,
was supposed to be
"I
beautiful.
would have."
The
Jon
knights,
said,
the ladies,
"I know."
the
He
tournament,
held his brother's
the
gaze.
specific fairy
"You would
tale
have made it about
architecture
me,
of a world
about
where
protecting
courtesy
me,
and honor
about what I was owed."
beauty.
He
And
paused.
beauty was the
"I
highest
needed it to be
achievement.
about the wall, about what was coming. I
The
needed
court
everyone
was
looking at the
beautiful.
right thing."
The court was also
Robb
a
was
mechanism
quiet.
for the production and
He said,
distribution of power.
"You're frustrating."
And the mechanism ran
Jon
on
said,
fear and
"I
ambition
know."
and the specific
said,
human willingness
"Also
to
correct."
perform emotions
Jon said,
rather than feel them.
"Usually."
And the performing
Robb
was
looked at
Sansa saw
Daenerys,
this.
who had come to stand
Over
beside
weeks
Jon
and
with
months,
Drogon a shadow
with the
behind her.
specific growing
He said,
awareness of a girl
"Your Grace."
whose romantic education
She
was
said,
being replaced
"Robb
by a
Stark,
political one.
your
The
brother
performance
saved the
was
world."
everything. The court
Robb
was a
said,
stage.
"He's my cousin,
Everyone was acting.
technically."
The
She said,
kindness was
"He
performance.
told me he's always
The
been your
courtesy
brother."
was performance.
Robb looked at Jon.
The beauty was.
Jon said, "It's the right word."
Joffrey was performance.
Robb was quiet for a moment.
This was the
He
lesson
said,
that hit hard.
"Right." He put his hand
Joffrey
on Jon's
Baratheon,
shoulder.
the crown
"Come
prince,
inside."
blonde,
You both look terrible.
handsome in the
The maester
specific
needs to look
polished
at.
way that Lannister wealth
He
and
noticed
Lannister
Jon's arm.
breeding produced.
When
had
did that
been,
happen?
In Sansa's
Jon
initial
said,
assessment,
"I don't know."
The prince from the
Battle.
songs.
Robb
He was
said,
not the prince from the
"The maester
songs.
looks at it first,
He was a boy
then everything
whose
else."
cruelty was
He went
intermittent enough
inside.
to be mistaken
Jon
for
looked at
normalcy,
Daenerys.
and whose
She said,
kindness was
"He's
performed
very
with the
like you."
specific mechanical
He said,
quality of someone
"He's
who had
louder."
learned the motions of kindness
She said,
without understanding
"You're
the
both
emotion.
stubborn."
Sansa
said,
noticed.
"Stark."
She noticed because
She
Sansa's
said,
gift, the gift she didn't
"Yes."
know she had.
She almost
The
smiled.
gift that Winterfell hadn't
Come.
needed because
The
Winterfell didn't
maester.
require its residents
They
to
went
read the
inside.
difference between
After
genuine and performed.
what followed.
Was social perception. The specific ability
The political
to stand
aftermath
in a room
was
and
slower
read
than the
emotional
battle, and
subtext
harder
the
in
way her
different
father
ways.
read military terrain
Tyrion managed most of it,
systematically,
which was what
comprehensively,
Tyrion was for.
with the attention
The ceasefire held,
to detail
because
that
Cersei had
accurate
decided to hold it, and when
She
Cersei
noticed that
decided
Joffrey's
something it
kindness
held,
was always public.
Joffrey
and
was sent
always
to
visible,
Essos before he
and
could
always
cause problems,
directed at people
which he
who
went
could
to with the
report on
sullen
them.
energy of
She
someone who had
noticed that
been
Joffrey's
managed
cruelty
rather than
was always
persuaded
private
and knew it.
and always directed at people who
Jaime
could
stayed
report on
north
it.
for a month after the battle,
She
and
noticed
then
the
rode south,
specific pattern
and the letter
that
he
these
sent
two
to Jon from the
observations
road
produced,
said only,
which was
"Tell her
a
I
boy who
understand
understood
now."
the currency of reputation.
Jon assumed he
and who
meant
was spending
Cersei
it with
and
the
filed it in the
specific
category of
calculated
things that were
efficiency
probably
of
true
someone who had
and
been
not his
taught
to
that
navigate.
reputation was a tool.
Stannis bent the knee at Castle Black in a ceremony that was functional rather than ceremonial,
She filed
because
it
that
the
was
way
how
she filed
Stannis did everything.
in the social
And what he said
catalogue that
was,
she was building.
"I serve whoever
The
best
specific
serves
map
the
of
realm."
King's Landing's human terrain
Daenerys had
that
said,
Sansa
"I
was
intend to."
constructing.
He had
Without
looked at her
knowing
for a
she was
long moment
constructing
and
it,
nodded once.
and that would
The
eventually
Lord's Council
be
that
the most
determined the
valuable
shape of what
intelligence
came
asset
after
in the Red
was
Keep.
held at Dragonstone,
Because Sansa's
because
map
Dragonstone
included
was hers,
information that
and the
Varys' network
location
didn't
was the
capture.
statement.
Which was
Jon sat at
how
the table
people felt.
as the Lord Commander
what
of the
they did,
Night's Watch,
how they
and as
felt.
whatever else he was, and he
The
was not
emotional
particularly
truth
interested in
underneath
debating the
behavioural
latter.
performance.
Tyrion
When
opened
the
the
arrest
council
came
by
and Joffrey
saying,
was told that he
"The
was not
succession
Robert's son,
is the Queen
when
and
the
the Lord
foundation of
Commander
Joffrey's world
in whatever
collapsed, Sansa
arrangements
saw
they
the real
determine.
boy for the first time.
Anyone who wants to argue
real
about
Joffrey
birth
was
order
afraid.
is welcome to
Not
do so.
cruel.
At a council,
Not
the
sadistic.
Night King is no longer
Not the
available
monster
to
that the
interrupt.
court would later remember.
Nobody argued
Afraid,
about birth
a
order.
12-year-old
The arrangement
who'd been told
Daenerys
that his
and Jon
father
had
wasn't
discussed
his
on the
father,
battlements of
and that his
Castle Black the
identity
night
was
before
based
the
on a
engagement
lie,
became,
and who was
broadly,
responding
the
to the
arrangement that the
information that the
council
specific
accepted.
raw terror
She
of a
ruled,
child
he
whose
served in
world
the
was
specific way that
dismantled.
filling the gap served.
Sansa
The North
saw
was
this
sovereign,
because Sansa
the
was in
Watch
the
was
corridor
crown
when
funded
Joffrey
and
was
properly
told.
maintained.
Not
The specific
deliberately
terms that made the realm functional rather them the terms that made anyone maximally happy. Nothing made everyone maximally happy. Everything made most people adequately served. Tyrion said this was the best outcome any council had produced in his experience. Olenna Tyrell, who had
He's
remained
just
at
a boy.
Dragonstone throughout on the grounds,
She
that it
thought
was warmer
a
than
terrible
King's
boy
Landing
who was
in
going
winter,
to be a
and
terrible
more interesting
king,
than
but
Highgarden
also
at any
just a
time of
boy
year.
whose mother
said,
lied to him, and
That's
whose
a
world
very
was
low
gone.
bar.
She didn't feel sorry for him.
Tyrion said,
Sympathy was
most
a
bars
luxury
worth
that the
clearing are
political
low when you
education
look at
was
them from the
stripping
right
from.
angle.
But she understood him.
Olenna said,
For the
I'm going to
first
have
time.
that on my
The
tombstone.
understanding was the beginning of something. The
Winterfell,
specific
the
sense of
promise
quality
kept.
of understanding
301
people who were not
AC.
sympathetic.
He took
and
her to
not
Winterfell
kind
in the spring.
and not good.
Not alone,
Of seeing the
they
human
travelled with a
underneath
retinue
the
because they were
performance.
people who had
Of
retinues
mapping
now,
the
and the
emotional
retinues
terrain of
required
even the
management.
people she found
But
repellent.
they arrived at
This
Winterfell
quality
ahead
would
of the
serve
retinue,
her
which was
for the
easy
rest
when
of
you
her
could
life.
fly. He
This
landed
quality,
Scarrows
the
in
ability
yard.
to understand
She landed
without
Drogon
sympathizing,
beside him.
to see
He stood
without
in the
being
Winterfell
blinded by
yard
what
and
she
looked at the
saw,
castle that he'd
to
grown up in,
catalogue the
and that was the
human
most
condition
familiar
without being
place in the world to
consumed by
him.
it. This was the
And that
gift
was,
the court gave
somehow,
her.
both smaller and
It was
larger
not the gift
than he
she'd come
remembered.
south looking for.
She
It
stood
was the
beside
gift
him.
she needed.
She looked at Winterfell. He said,
Arya,
the hot springs
what the
are
court
underground.
taught her.
The castle is
298
warmer than it
AC.
should be. That's why the yard isn't all ice.
Arya.
He
Stark
looked at
was
the walls.
9 years old, and she
The crypts
hated
go
King's
deep.
Landing with the
The
concentrated
Starks are
passion
buried there,
of a child
going
who
back
had been told to
8,000
sit
years.
still, and who was
She said,
constitutionally incapable of
8,000
sitting
years.
still, and who found
He
the
said,
instruction
the
personally
same number
offensive.
as the wall.
The scepter wanted
She
her to
looked at the
sow.
castle,
Arya
at the
did
grey
not
stone
want to
and the
sow.
towers, and the
Dancing
smoke coming from the
master
great
wanted her to
hall
dance.
where someone was keeping the
Arya
fire.
wanted to fight.
She said,
The court
it
wanted her to
feels
be a
like the
lady.
north.
Arya
He said,
wanted to be.
It is the north.
Arya didn't
She
know
said,
what she wanted to be.
I mean, it feels like the
She knew
specific
what
thing
she
you mean
didn't
when you
want
say
to
the
be,
north.
which was
She looked at him.
everything
Not
I
just
was telling
geography.
her to be.
Something else.
Ned
He
hired
said,
Syrio
something
Forel,
about holding,
the first
something
sword of
about
Bravo,
endurance.
a water
He paused.
dancer.
This
The
castle
specific
has been here
Braavosi
through
approach
winter
to combat
after winter.
that was built on
The
speed
Starks
and
have been here
precision
holding it.
rather than strength.
The people
And
in
that
it
was
have been doing the
Ned had
ordinary
made his
work of
decision
living in a
with the
hard place
specific
for a
and
very
firm
long
awareness
time.
that the child in front of
She
him
said,
wasn't going to be
like the
managed
wall.
into compliance.
He said,
And that the energy
like the
needed a
wall.
channel or the energy
She looked
to
at the
find
yard.
its own channels, and
She
the own
said,
channels
Catelyn
were
Stark.
destructive. The
He said,
approach that
in the Great
suited
Hall.
Arya, the way northern
She said,
swordsmanship
you should go to her
suited
first.
Naturally,
He looked at her.
constitutionally,
She
you were
said,
the body.
she raised you.
Arya trained.
She managed the
She trained
complications of
Syrio
what you were
every
alongside
morning,
everything
and
else she
training
was managing.
the only
She
time
deserves to
in
see you
knowing
first.
That Arya felt
She
like
paused.
herself.
I'll be here,
The yard was
he
hers.
said. You don't have
The
to,
sword was hers.
she said.
The
I know.
specific physical
I want to.
vocabulary of a girl who was small and
She looked at the
fast,
dragons
and
who had settled on the towers
water
with the
dance,
specific
the language
proprietary
that her body
quality
spoke
of very
in
large
Latin,
animals that have
and it
decided
didn't
where they
require
are
her to be
staying.
anything she wasn't.
I want to stand in this
The
yard
arrest of the
and look at
queen
this
didn't
castle for a
concern
while.
Arya.
Understand what
Not
you
because
came
Arya
from.
was callous,
He said,
because Arya
It's
was
cold.
9 and the political
She said,
implications of the
I
queen's
have
arrest
Drogon.
were abstract in a way that
He looked at
Arya's
her.
9-year-old mind
She
couldn't
said,
process. What
Go.
Arya processed was
He went.
something had changed.
Winterfell.
The adults were frightened, and the fear in the
Ned's
adults
crypt.
produced a specific atmosphere.
He went to the crypt before he went to the Great Hall. He went to the crypt because there was a conversation he'd been needing to have for
She
years,
trained
and the crypt
harder.
was where you had
The
it.
training was the
Ned
response.
Stark's tomb was where
The
it was,
specific
the place
Arya
that had been
mechanism
prepared
for
while Ned
managing
was alive in the
environments she
northern
couldn't
way of being
control.
prepared.
It was
And Jon
control the
stood in
body.
front of it with a
Control
torch
what
and the
you can.
specific cold of
The
deep
sword.
underground, which was not the wrong cold,
The
just the
specific
honest cold
physical
of stone
mastery
that hadn't seen
was
the
the
sun.
one domain where Arya
said,
Stark wasn't being
I found a
told
dragon.
she was wrong.
He said it to the stone the way you said things to the stone when the
girl
person
is
wasn't there
fighting
anymore.
harder.
And the stone
Girl
was
is
what you had.
scared. Of
He
what?
said, I know it's not what you were planning.
Everything. Of the
I know
court,
when you carried the
arrest,
secret,
and
you
the
weren't
things
picturing
the adults
this.
are saying and the way the
He
castle
looked at the
feels.
carved face, which was a
Arya
face
held
that
the
looked like
practice
Ned,
sword.
the way carvings
The
always
thin
looked
blade.
like people.
The needle
Approximately,
of the south.
with the dignity that stone provided,
I don't
and
understand
the
any of it.
specificity that stone
I just
lacked.
know it's bad.
I know you would have found a
Bad
way
is
to
not
make this
forever.
work. You made
Bad is a
everything work.
season.
You made
You're
impossible
training for the
things
season
work by
after
being
bad.
stubborn enough that the impossible things
Season
gave up.
after bad.
He was quiet.
The season when the trained
He said,
people
"She's
are the
outside."
ones who survive.
In the yard,
Syrio looked at her with
She
the
wanted to look at the
dark,
castle.
Braavosi eyes that had been assessing
paused.
fighters for 30 years.
She would have
and
liked you.
found in this 9-year-old
She makes the
northern
same
girl
quality of
something
decisions you
worth
made.
to be assessing.
the ones where the right
Not
thing is
today.
also the hard thing.
Not today.
She'd have recognized
Say
it.
again.
He said,
Not today.
I'm going to keep the name.
Good.
Jon Snow.
Now.
Not the other one.
Again.
He paused.
Arya.
I know what the other one means,
court taught
and I know
Sansa
what
to
using
see.
it would say.
The court
I'm
taught
saying
Arya
something
to
different.
fight. The court
held the
taught
torch.
both of them the lesson
I'm
that the
saying,
court taught
I'm the
every
person
Stark
you
in
made
the
me.
South.
I'm saying the person you made was worth
The
making.
rules are different.
I'm saying the
And
15
children
years of
who
carrying the
survive
secret
the
cost you
children who
everything,
learn the rules
and I am
last
not
time
going to make
play
that
the
mean
game
nothing by
rather than
abandoning
play
what the
by
carrying
ear.
produced.
They learned
He said,
differently
"Thank you."
in different
He
registers
said it to the stone,
with different tools.
to the carved face,
But they learned
to the man who had spent 15 years lying
The
to
arrest,
everyone he loved
what the
to
truth
protect the one thing he'd promised to protect.
298 AC.
He stood there for a while.
They came
Then he
for
went
Cersei
up.
at midnight.
He went to the Great
Not
Hall,
with drama.
and Catelyn
Ned
Stark
had
was
been
there,
specific about
and she
this.
was alive,
The arrest
and
was
she looked at him
institutional,
with
not
the expression she always had with him,
Stark
which was the
guards,
complicated
Baratheon
one,
guards,
the one that was
specific
never
combined
entirely
force
comfortable,
that communicated
and that had never managed to be
this was the
unkind.
crown acting, not a
He said,
faction.
"I should have written
Combination
more."
mattered because the combination
said,
prevented the arrest
"Yes."
from being
He
interpreted
said,
as a Northern
sorry."
or a Baratheon internal
She looked at him.
dispute. This
At the Lord Commander's cloak,
The Lord
which he
was
still wore,
denied.
because he was
Hayley
still the
was in
Lord
the White
Commander,
Sword Tower.
and the Valyrian steel at his
The
hip,
arrest of a
and whatever the
Kingsguard
months
and other
since Castle
Kingsguard,
Black had done
as
to his
Ned
face.
watched this from the
She
corridor,
said,
because
"You
watching
saved
was
the
all he
wall."
could do.
He
The
said,
actual arrest being
"We
conducted
saved the
by Sir
wall."
Barristan Selmy,
She said,
who was Lord
"The Dragon
Commander
Queen."
and who had the authority
said,
to arrest a brother
"Yes."
of the Order,
She said,
and who conducted
Ned would
the
have-
arrest with the specific
She
grim
stopped.
efficiency
Something
of a man
crossing
who
her
had served
face that was
5
not
kings
entirely
and
grief.
who had survived the serving.
He would have
by,
said, "I told you so" about something.
understanding that the oath was to the
I'm
institution
not sure what.
and not to the person.
She looked at the fire.
Wearing the white,
He always believed
Jaime
the
was
watch
in his
reports,
chambers.
long
He was
before
not armed,
anyone else
not
would.
fully. The sword
Jon
belt
said,
was off.
"I know."
The armor was
She
wrapped.
said,
He was
"Is she
reading
outside?"
the specific
Jon said,
incongruity of the most
"In the yard."
notorious knight in the realm being
Catelyn
arrested
looked at
while
him.
reading a book.
He said,
was something
"She
that
wanted
the
to give
songs
us
would
the
later
hall."
skip
She was
because it
quiet
didn't
for a
fit
moment.
the narrative of a man
said,
who was supposed to be either
"I'll have
fighting
someone bring her in."
or plotting.
"It's cold."
Barristan said, "Sir Jaime."
He said,
"You're to
"She has a
come
dragon."
with me."
She said,
Jaime looked up.
"Even so."
His face
She went to have
watched
someone
from
bring
the
Daenerys
doorway,
in.
did the thing that
Jon
Jaime's
stood in the Great
face
Hall
did,
of Winterfell.
which was
He
nothing.
looked at the fire.
The nothing was a
He thought,
performance, and the performance
"This is what everything was for.
Jaime's primary defense
Not the
mechanism,
throne,
and the
not the
defense
dynasty,
was
not the prophecy.
engaged with the speed
This
that came
specific
from a
room,
lifetime of
this
maintaining
specific
it.
fire,
On
the
whose
dead
authority?
stopped, and the cold
king,
retreating, and people
Lord
coming in from the
Stark's,
yard.
Lord Stannis.
He thought,
Jaime
"That's
set
enough."
down the book,
He thought,
stood,
"It's more
looked
than
at
enough."
the guards, the 50 men.
Ghost came
the
in from
combined
somewhere and lay down at his feet.
Baratheon force.
Daenerys
All
came in
of
from the
this.
yard.
For me.
She looked at the
For
Great
the
Hall.
charges. Which
She said,
charges?
"It's
There
warmer
are
than
so
I
many
expected."
available.
He said,
Kingslaying?
"Hot springs."
That's old news.
She said, "I know.
Something
you told
newer?
me."
Incest.
She looked around
treason,
the hall,
the
at
fathering
the stones
of
and the
bastards
fire,
presented
and the
to the
specific
realm as the
lived-in
king's
quality of a
legitimate heir.
place that had been sheltering
Jaime's
people for
face.
8,000 years.
The nothing cracked
It
not
feels-
dramatically, not
She
the kind of
stopped.
crack that
He said,
produced a visible
"What?"
reaction for the watching guard.
She said,
the kind
"Like
of
somewhere
crack
I
that
could
was
learn to
visible
know."
only to someone
looked
who
at
was
her.
looking for it.
She
and
said,
who knew what Jaime
"Not like
looked
somewhere
when
I've
the
been,
performance failed.
like somewhere I haven't been yet.
Ned was looking.
Something to understand
Ned saw
rather than
the
claim."
crack.
She held his gaze.
Jaime said.
that?
He went with them.
He said,
Without
"Yes, that's
resisting.
exactly it."
Without the specific
She looked at
dramatic
the
last
fire.
stand that the songs would have
He looked at the
preferred,
fire.
no drawn sword, no
The
defiant
dragons
speech,
were on the towers
no burning of
outside,
the
and
white
Ghost
clothes
was
of
at
the
their feet.
courtyard.
And Winterfell was doing
Jaime
what
Lannister
Winterfell
walked
did,
through the corridors
which was
of the
being
Red
exactly
Keep,
what
with
it was.
Barristan Selmy on
Warm
one
and
side
cold,
and 3
built
guards
for
on the other,
endurance,
and the expression
older
of
than
a man
anything
who
that
had
had
been
tried to
waiting for
threaten
this,
it.
who had, in some deep private place, been expecting this.
What if
for
Jon
17
Snow bonded
years,
with a dragon
and who
before
found,
meeting Daenerys?
now that the expecting
He didn't
was
go
over,
looking for it.
that the
He
arrival
went
of the
north
thing
because
was
the
almost a
reports said
relief.
something was wrong, and he was the person who went to places most
Almost.
people didn't go. And he
Cersei
found an
was
egg in a
louder.
rock crevice because he was looking
Cersei was
carefully,
arrested
and he
in the
brought it
queen's
back because he
chambers
didn't
by
know what else
Stannis
to do with
personally,
it.
which was Ned learned this
And it
afterward.
hatched.
From Stannis'
Because it was
account,
ready.
which was delivered with the
He kept it
specific
hidden for
Stannis
2
style
weeks,
of reporting,
because he needed
factual,
time to think.
sequential.
He
with
needed
no
time to
emotion,
think because he had been
commentary,
doing
which was a
competence
decision
as a
Stannis
way
had
of
made
not doing
deliberately,
the other thing,
because
which was
Stannis
figuring
believed
out
that
what he
the
actually
arrest of the
wanted.
queen required
And the
the
dragon
authority of
forced
the
the other
prince.
thing.
And that
He
the
went to
authority of
Daenerys
the
not with a
prince was the
claim or a
only
demand
authority
or a
that could
political
not be
position.
challenged by the
He went
queen's
with a box
defenders.
and 30 years of ranging reports,
Cersei
and the
screamed.
clear, specific ask of a
Not
man
in
who
fear,
needed
in
something
rage.
he couldn't
The
provide
specific
himself,
Cersei
and who
rage
understood
that was
what
the
she had
core
that
of
he
her
needed.
being, and that emerged
She read the
when the
reports.
threats that Cersei had been
She met him
managing
at the
through
dock in
performance
plain
and
clothes, and she looked at him, and she
the
said,
specific Cersei the
You're shorter than I thought.
and motherhood and political
That was the
leverage
beginning.
were no longer
The rest
sufficient.
was
When the management
two
failed,
people from the same
rage
blood
was what
finding
remained.
out that the things that
And
had
the
made
rage
them
was
strange in
enormous
every
and
other
undirected
context
and
made them
destructive.
for the first time
You can't
entirely
hide it.
normal in each other's
The king
company.
commands it.
The carrying they'd
The
each
King
been doing
Robert
alone
doesn't
for
have
their
it,
whole
he can't.
lives
The king
was
is
not
the
less
Lord.
heavy in the sharing,
The king's
but was
authority
differently
is absolute
distributed.
in matters of
And
treason.
differently distributed
You
was
are
the difference
accused of
between
treason
sustainable
specifically.
and not
of adultery with your brother,
4 dragons,
and of presenting the
Valyrian
resulting children
steel,
as the king's
the specific
legitimate heirs,
right configuration
thereby
of
committing
people
fraud
at the
against
specific
crown
right
and the
moment,
succession.
doing the thing that needed
Those are
doing.
my children, those are
Not
Hynde
destiny,
Lannister's children.
not one
The
prince
evidence is
promised.
comprehensive.
A
and the
Lord
king has been
Commander
presented with
who
it,
found an
and
egg
the
in a
king
rock
has
crevice,
ordered the
and a
arrest.
queen who read 30
Stannis
years of
held her
reports,
gaze.
and both of
You
them
may have
deciding
counsel.
that the dead
You
were
may
more
have a trial.
important than the throne.
You will not
The
have
dead
freedom.
were stopped.
Cersei
The
was
wall
taken.
held.
The children.
Scaros
this was the
oriented
part that
south.
Ned had insisted on.
They went
and
home.
that Stannis had agreed
Castle
to,
Black.
and that Robert had
Ed.
agreed to.
The watch
grudgingly,
carries on.
through the specific filter.
3
of
days
rage
after
and
the
grief
battle,
that was
Ed
Robert's
came to
response
Jon
to
with the
revelation.
ranging report.
The
It was
children
routine.
were not arrested.
The first routine
Tommen
ranging report
was 8.
since the engagement,
Marcella
which made it
was
not
9.
routine at all.
Joffrey
The
was
first
12.
report from the deep north
They
that
were
described
moved to
nothing
separate
because there was
chambers.
nothing there.
They
The
were not
first
in
accounting
prison.
of the
They were
land
not
beyond the
mistreated.
wall that had no
They were
direction to
told
it,
by Ned.
no cold front,
Because Ned
no
had
organized
demanded
wrong
the
thing moving
responsibility.
south.
And because
Just the
the
north.
responsibility
Just
was
what
the
it
kind
was.
that Ned would not delegate, that their
Ed
mother
put the
had been
report on the
accused of
table
something
and said,
serious, and that the
"Nothing."
accusation would be addressed
Jon
through
read
the
it.
law, and that
He
they
said,
were safe.
Nothing. Ed said.
Tom
The ranging
cried.
party went 20 miles north,
Marcella
and they
did
found
not
nothing
cry.
except trees and the
Marcella
specific
went
quality of
still.
silence that
The
you get
specific
when nothing is
stillness
eating
of a
you.
9-year-old
Jon
who was
said,
smarter than most
"How
of
did
the
they
adults
describe
around
the
her,
quality of
and
the
who was
silence?"
processing the situation
Ed said,
with the rapid,
"Cold, but
comprehensive
normal."
intelligence that was.
Their words.
Ned
He
noted
paused.
this. Filed
Old
it.
Henderson,
Let the
who's been
implications
ranging for
sit
15
without
years,
acting on it.
said it was the first time
Cersei's
beyond the wall in
intelligence
10
without
years that he
Cersei's
hadn't felt
emotional
watched.
volatility.
Jon read the report
Marcella
again. He
processed,
said,
and then
"The
she
watch
asked,
keeps ranging."
"Is it true?"
Ed said,
Ned
"Obviously." Jon said,
About our-
"The wall keeps
about
being
who our
manned."
father is.
Ed said,
Marcella.
"Obviously." Jon said,
I'm not stupid.
"The specific maintenance routine."
The ones
Ed
the
said,
servants whisper.
"Jon."
The ones
Jon
that
stopped.
Joff pretends
Ed
not
said,
to hear.
"I've been
and that
doing
I've
this
been
since
hearing
before
for
you were
2
Lord
years."
Commander. I
She
know
held
what the
Ned's
wall
gaze with
requires."
green Lannister eyes.
He looked at
The
Jon
eyes
with the
that
expression
were
of a man who
current
had spent
contact.
years performing long-suffering patience
Is it
and had
true?
now earned the right to drop the
trial
performance
will
slightly.
determine
The
Lord
watch
Stark.
is going to be
I'm nine.
fine.
I'm
The
not.
ranging is going to happen.
It
The records are
true.
going to be kept.
Ned
He
looked
held
at this
Jon's
child.
gaze.
He
"You can
thought
go,"
about his own children.
Jon
About
said.
Robb.
"I haven't
and Sansa,
said I'm going,"
And Arya. And
Ed
Bran,
said.
And Rickon.
"Sam told me about the
Whose
conversation
parentage
you
was
had
not
the
a
night
question,
before you sailed
whose
south,
identity was
about
not
how the
concealed,
watch needs
whose
someone who
world
believes
was
in
not
it
being
when you're not
dismantled around
here."
them by
He
adults
paused.
who had built the world on a
"I
lie.
believe in it. I've
Yes.
believed in it for 15 years.
We believe
Mostly
so.
because I was here and there was nowhere else to go. But also
not
because it matters."
Composure.
He looked at the
The
report.
9-year-old version of
"Go manage the
composure.
realm.
The specific
I'll manage the
self-management
wall."
of a child who had been
Jon
raised
said,
in a court where
"You don't want to be
self-management
Lord
was
Commander?"
survival, and who was
Ed said,
deploying the skill in
"No,
the worst possible
but I'll do it
context.
until someone better
Thank
turns
you
up."
for telling me the truth.
He paused.
Ned left
"Sam
the room.
thinks the funding from the
In the
Crown is
corridor,
going to mean we
he
can
leaned
actually
against
recruit
the wall.
rather than wait for criminals to be offered a choice." He
I just
paused.
told a 9-year-old girl
Actual
that her
volunteers.
father is not her father.
People who
and her
choose to
mother
be here.
is an adulteress.
Jon said,
And her entire
"Yes."
identity is
Ed
based
said,
on a lie.
"That's going to change
He
the
thought,
watch."
The truth is
Jon
necessary.
said, "Yes."
He thought
Ed said,
the truth
"I'm looking
is
forward
also
to it."
Cruel.
Jon looked at him. Ed said,
Those are not
"I'm allowed to
contradictions.
look forward to things. The dead are stopped.
The fallout.
I'm looking forward to things."
The
Jon
first
said,
week.
"Good." He looked at the
298
ranging report.
AC.
"Send me a copy of every report."
The realm
Ed said,
responded.
"Everyone."
Not with
Jon
the
said,
unified
"Unedited."
reaction that
Ed
simple
said,
narratives
"You'll
produce.
read them all."
The
Jon
realm
said,
responded
"Yes."
the way
Ed said,
the realm
"Of
responded
course you
to
will."
everything.
He picked up the
which
report.
was
He
different
turned to go.
regionally.
He stopped.
Based on the specific
Jon.
interests and
Jon said,
loyalties
"Yes."
and grudges
Ed said,
that each house carried.
"The first
and that
morning
each
you were Lord
house
Commander,
applied to the new
you came to the
information
yard
through the
before
filter
dawn,
of,
and you looked at the
what does
wall
this
like
mean
you were
for me?
memorizing it."
The
Jon said,
Westerlands went silent.
"I remember."
Tywin
Ed
Lannister
said,
at
"I
Casterly
thought
Rock
he knows what
received
he's
the
got.
news by Raven.
He knows what this
The
is."
Raven was followed
He
by a
paused.
letter from Stannis.
A lot of Lord
that was
Commanders looked at the
simultaneously
wall
an
like it was a
announcement
burden.
and a challenge.
You looked at it like it was
The
worth
arrest,
the looking.
The charges.
He
the
held
evidence.
Jon's gaze.
The letter was Stannis
That's
at his
what
most
made you
Stannis
good at
factual,
this.
complete,
Jon said
leaving
nothing.
no room for the kind of
Ed said,
interpretive flexibility
"Right,
that a
the
politician
watch
would have
carries
used,
on."
and that Stannis
He
found
went.
morally offensive.
Jon stood in the Lord Commander's
Tywin's
quarters.
response was silence.
He looked at the wall through the window.
For 3 days.
Worth
No
looking.
Raven left Casterly Rock.
He thought,
No rider. neither. No
Yes.
communication.
That's exactly
The
it.
silence was itself a
That's
message
what I want to tell
Tywin
everyone
was
who looks
calculating.
south
Tywin
and
was
sees
doing
the
thing
wall
that Tywin
as the
did with
place you
Crisis,
send people
which was
you don't want.
assess the landscape.
It's worth the looking.
Identify the optimal response.
It has always been worth the looking.
Execute the
He thought,
response with the specific
"I'll make sure it's written down."
efficiency that had built the most
He went to
powerful
write it
house in
down.
the realm over 40 years.
Winterfell,
The optimal
Lyanna,
response was not
the
war.
meeting. 301
This was the
AC.
critical calculation.
He had not prepared Daenerys for
Ned and
Lyanna.
Stannis had
He had told her,
for,
"My mother is
and
at
that they had
Winterfell.
structured the
She has
arrest
strong
to
opinions.
produce
She'll have
all
already
required,
formed an assessment of
an
you before
offence,
you've said a
a
word.
grievance,
The assessment will be
legitimate
accurate."
basis for military
Daenerys
action.
had said, "I've
The
managed
arrest
difficult
provided
women
none
before."
of these. The arrest was legal.
Jon had said,
conducted under the king's authority.
"She's not difficult.
With evidence that was
She's
public,
honest."
and that the court had been presented
Daenerys
with.
had said,
A military
Those are
response
the
to a
same
legal
thing.
arrest was not rebellion,
He had
it was
said,
aggression. And
are
aggression
very
against a
different
legitimate
things.
king who was acting within
He
his
had been
authority
right.
would alienate
Lyanna
the other
met
great
Daenerys
nobles
in the Great
rather than
Hall.
rallying them.
She stood beside the
Tywin
fire,
knew this.
and she looked at the
Tywin's
woman
letter,
who had
when
ridden
it
a
came,
dragon from
was Ned
Essos
read
to
it
the
in the
wall,
solo with
and had
Stannis
helped her son
beside him,
stop
the
the
most
dead,
dangerous kind
and
of
who was
letter.
now standing in
Cooperative.
Winterfell's hall, with her silver
Tywin
hair
offered
and her
assistance.
violet eyes
Tywin offered to
that were
travel to King's
Rhaegar's
Landing
family's
for the
eyes.
trial.
And she looked at her
Tywin
for a long
offered the
time.
Lannister treasury's continued
Daenerys looked
support
back.
of the crown's finances.
Neither of them spoke
He's going
first,
to try to
which
bribe
Jon
the
had
outcome,
not expected.
Stannis said.
He had expected
manage
his
it.
mother to open
Same
with the
thing
direct
in
Lyanna
Tywin's
approach,
vocabulary.
the honest assessment
Ned
delivered
looked at the letter.
immediately.
At the specific
She was measuring
polished
something
cooperativeness
instead.
of a man who had just been told
Daenerys
that his
was
daughter
measuring
was arrested
back.
for incest and treason,
Jon stood to the
and
side
whose
and waited.
response was an offer of financial
Finally, Lyanna
assistance,
said,
which
"He
was
told
either
you
the
about his
most
father."
sophisticated political
Daenerys said,
maneuvering Ned had ever
"He
seen,
told me everything."
or the most terrifying
Lyanna said,
demonstration of
"Did
emotional
he tell you it
control
wasn't what the
he'd
histories
ever
say?"
witnessed?" And the
Daenerys
truth
said,
was
"He
probably
told me
both.
what it actually was."
Let him
She
tell
held
me,
Lyanna's gaze.
Ned said.
"He told me."
A Tywin
His
in
mother
King's
chose.
Landing is a Tywin
Lyanna
we
said,
can watch.
"I
A
chose."
Tywin at the Rock is a
Daenerys
Tywin
said,
who's building an army.
"I know." Lyanna said,
Stannis considered
"The
this
world doesn't say it that
acceptable.
way."
With
Daenerys said,
conditions, his
"The
retinue is
world gets
limited
a lot of things wrong."
200 men.
Something moved
No
across
Lannister
Lyanna's
swords
face.
beyond the personal guard.
Not warmth.
He'll push
Not
back.
exactly.
He'll
The
push and
specific
we'll
thing
hold.
that happened when you encountered
position
someone
is
saying
ours.
the right thing
The
without
law
performing
is
it.
ours.
She said,
The king
"You're
damaged,
like him."
drinking,
Daenerys
furious
said,
is ours.
"Which one?"
Tywin's position is.
Lyanna said,
His daughter
"Both
is
of them,
arrested.
in different
His
ways."
son is arrested.
She looked
His
at Jon.
grandchildren.
"She
are
has your
delegitimate.
directness."
His
Jon
position
said,
is
"She has
weak.
her own directness."
Let him push from
Lyanna
weak.
said, "They're the
The other
same
kingdoms
directness."
responded differently.
She looked back at
The
Daenerys.
North supported the arrest.
Ned had it. Rhaegar
Obviously,
had it
Ned
in a
was
different
northern,
key.
and the North
You have
supported
it.
Ned the way Tide
Jon has
supported
it.
the moon.
She paused.
Automatically.
The Starks got it from somewhere in the old blood, and the
Tyrells and
Targaryens
Lyanna
got
in
it from
particular
somewhere else.
Were processing
And
the
it's the
information
same quality,
through the specific
regardless of
Tyrell
which
lens.
direction
How
it
does
came
this
from.
affect our position? And the
Daenerys
answer
said,
was
"What
enormously.
quality is it?"
The Tyrell
Lyanna
marriage
said,
plan, Margaret
"The
to
refusal
Joffrey
to
was
pretend
destroyed.
you don't know what you
Joffrey
know."
was not the heir.
She
Joffrey
held
was a
Daenerys'
bastard.
gaze.
The Tyrell
Most
investment
people
in the
manage their
Lannister-Baratheon
knowledge.
alliance was not
They
worth
decide
it,
what
but
they know
devalued.
based on what's comfortable
And the
to know.
devaluation required a
paused.
new strategy.
You don't do that.
The Riverlands were cautiously
Daenerys said,
supportive Catelyn's
"No."
family, the
Lyanna
Tullys,
said,
backing the Stark
"Neither does
position,
he."
because family
She looked
was
at
family.
Jon.
Dawn
"I was afraid
delighted.
when he was young
Not
that the
publicly,
North would
Dawn
soften it,
Martell did not do
that the
public
weight
delight.
of being what he
But the
was
specific
and not being
Dornish
allowed to say
satisfaction
it
of
would
watching
make
the
him
Lannisters
careful in the
fall
wrong way,
was communicated through
cautious
channels
where he
that
should have
Ned's
been
network
direct.
in King's
Jon
Landing
said,
picked up,
"It didn't."
and that Ned filed
Lyanna
under
said,
useful but concerning.
She
Because a
almost
kingdom
smiled.
that is delighted by another
"You came
kingdom's
out like your
destruction
father
is
in
a
the wrong
kingdom
ways,
that has its own
and like
agenda.
me in the right ones."
The Iron Islands were quiet.
She looked at Daenerys
Balon
again.
Greyjoy was quiet in
She's
the way that
right
Balon
for you.
Greyjoy was always
I'm
quiet.
saying that
quiet of a
before
man
she
on
does
an
the thing
island
she
who was
came
watching
here to
the
do,
mainland burn,
which is prove it
and who was
herself without
calculating
being
whether
told.
the burning produced an
Daenerys
opportunity.
said, "Is that
The
what I'm
veil
doing?"
was complicated.
Lyanna said,
Lysa Arryn,
"Yes."
Jon Arryn's widow,
She paused.
was in the Eyrie
"I know,
with her
because
son
I would have done the
and with
same."
Littlefinger,
Daenerys
who had
said,
somehow
"What are you
migrated
afraid
from
of?"
King's Landing to the Vale in
Lyanna
the weeks
looked at
before
her.
the crisis,
Daenerys said,
and who was now
"You're
positioned
assessing
as
me for
Lysa's
something
advisor,
specific.
which was
You're not
itself
afraid
a piece
I'll
of
hurt him.
information that Ned filed,
You believe
and
he
that he
can
didn't
manage
yet
himself."
understand the significance.
She held Lyanna's gaze.
The realm
"What are you
was
afraid
not
of?"
a war. This
Lyanna
was, the
was quiet
significant
for a
thing.
moment.
The
She said,
divergence. In
"That
another
the realm
version
will
of
make
this
him into
story,
something other
the
than
realm
what he
was
is.
at war by now.
That the court and the
Catelyn
politics
had arrested
and the
Tyrion.
specific weight of
Tywin
being what
had
his blood
invaded
says
the
he is
Riverlands.
will,
Ned had been
She
arrested.
stopped.
The specific
that the thing I
cascade
built
of
will get
escalating
lost in what the
crises
world
that
makes of
started
it.
with Bran's fall had
Daenerys
produced a
said,
civil war
"What
that
did
killed
you
tens
build?"
of thousands
Lyanna
and
said,
destroyed the Stark.
"Someone who knows what
In
things are
this
for."
version, decision, a legal
Daenerys
crisis,
looked at
not a
Jon.
military one.
He held
the
her
arrests
gaze.
Were legal. The
She said
process
to Lyanna,
was legal. The
"I know
response
what he
was
is.
legal. The
I've known
specific
since we were 3
institutional
days into
management
knowing
of
each
a
other."
constitutional
She looked back at the older
through
woman.
The legal mechanisms
He won't
that
get lost.
existed for exactly
He doesn't
this
get
kind
lost.
of catastrophe.
Lyanna looked
Ned
at her
had
for a
done
long
the thing
moment.
he was worst at.
She said,
Being political, and
he doesn't.
it had worked.
She turned.
Not perfectly.
"Come,
The
I'll
crisis
show you the
was
castle."
not resolved.
She
The
walked toward the
trial
far
had
corridor.
not happened.
Daenerys
Tywin
followed.
was coming. The
Jon
tyrants
watched them
were
go.
recalculating. And the
He thought,
specific long-term
well,
consequences of
he thought,
delegitimizing three
that was
Baratheon
better than
children were
expected.
still
He
unfolding.
thought, I should have expected that.
Was managed.
They're both very good at finding the real
realm was not
conversation.
burning.
He went to find Rob and tell him the North's future was probably going to be fine. The record, what Jon wrote. He went back to Castle Black once more before the year was out. Not for the watch, Ed had it. Not for the ranging,
In Winterfell,
Sam was
Bran's
maintaining the
visions
record.
were getting stronger.
He went back because there was
Not
something he'd
wider,
been meaning to do
deeper.
since Aemon died, and
The
that the
initial
months of
visions
aftermath
had been
had kept
surface
pushing
level.
to later.
Images,
He sat at the Meister's
locations,
desk in the
the
Castle Black
specific
library,
photographic
the
quality
same
of
desk where
Queen's
Aemon
its
had
early
sat for
stages,
60 years.
showing Bran
The
what
same
was
view,
happening without
the
explaining
wall,
what the happening
the
meant.
yard, the specific northern
deeper
sky
visions
that did
were
not
different.
perform. He wrote the
deeper
record of the
visions
Night King's defeat,
Context.
not the official version.
History.
That would be written by the
specific
Meisters who came
layered
to interview the
quality of
survivors
seeing through
and who would
time
produce
rather
something
than through
polished
space.
and authorized and necessarily
Saw
simplified.
Winterfell.
He wrote the real one,
Not present day
the version that included the ranging
Old
reports
Winterfell.
and the egg in the rock crevice
being
and the
built.
2 weeks of keeping it hidden
walls
and the assembly in the yard and the flight
stone
reconnaissance
stone.
and the letter to
By
Daenerys
men
and what the
whose
letter
faces
said
had
and what her letter back
and
said
whose names
and the
he
white
didn't
in the
know.
box and the
That he would
lords in the
build it with a
courtyard
purpose,
and 4
that the
dragons
building
and
could
Valyrian
be
steel
even
and the
8,000
specific
years
quality
later.
of the cold
This
stopping.
castle is built
He wrote the
with
names of everyone who
not
was
the
there.
winter cold.
Not just the
The
lords,
other cold.
every ranger,
Cold.
every soldier,
cold that had
every
a purpose
person
and
who had stood in the
direction
castle
and
yard
intention.
and looked at a white
He saw the
stopping
wall.
and decided that the
The
calculation
wall
had changed.
being built.
He wrote
Not by
Aemon's
men, by
name
something
first.
else.
He
By
wrote
the specific combination
Aemon
of magic
Targaryen,
and labor
called
that
Meister
the
Aemon,
histories call
who
the
held
work
this
of the
watch for
children
60
and the
years,
first men,
and who understood
and that the
before
scene
anyone else
revealed
what
to
the
be
watch
larger,
was for, and who
more
spent his
deliberate.
whole life in
The
service of
wall
that
was not a
understanding.
defense built by
He held a
men
dragon
who were
before he
afraid.
died.
The wall was an
He was
engineering
satisfied.
project built by men who
He
had
wrote
defeated
Sam's
an enemy.
name.
And who
He
understood
wrote
that
Ed's.
defeating an enemy and
He wrote
eliminating
Jaime
an enemy
Lannister's
were
and
different
noted the one
achievements.
hand and the
And then
Kingsguard
wall
style
was the
and the
infrastructure
fact
of
that
the
he'd come
second
when
achievement
asked
being
and had
deferred,
fought without
because
complaint
the second
and
achievement
had gone home after to do
required
the harder
resources
thing.
that the first had
He wrote
consumed.
the 47 names from
He
the
saw the
second
Night
ranging,
Not
one by
up
one,
close.
the same way he'd
not in
written
the
them the
specific
first time,
dramatic confrontation
their
that
names
the prophecies
and what they'd
describe
done,
from a distance
and that
through
they'd
the
held.
weirwoods, through the
He
specific
wrote Ned Stark's
green
name
and gold lens
and
of
what
the
Ned
sight,
had carried for 15
through the
years,
filtered
and what the
perception
carrying had
that
cost
the
him,
old gods
and what it
provided.
had produced.
Because the unfiltered
He wrote
perception
his mother's name.
would have been Bran
He wrote
understood
Rhaegar
this
Targaryen's
instinctively
name
too
with the
much.
specific, careful honesty
Night King
of
was
someone
not
who
a
was
man.
not going to simplify
The
a
Night King
complicated
was a
person,
system,
but was also not going to
presence,
apologize
a
for
cold
him.
intelligence that
He wrote,
operated on timescales
he
that
believed
made
in a
human
prophecy
lifetimes look
and
like
organized his
markers,
whole life
and that
around the
was,
belief,
in the
and
specific
the
way
belief
that the
was
sight
real,
allowed Bran to
and what
perceive
the
it.
believing cost
Patient.
was also real.
Patient and
And
building.
both of those things are true
The army of the dead was
simultaneously.
not a static
And
force.
anyone who
The
tells
army
you the
was
history
growing.
is simple,
Every year,
is lying.
every decade,
He
the
wrote
cold
Daenerys'
drifted
name
wall of
last.
The dead. The
He
dead
wrote,
accumulated
she
the
read
way
30
snow
years of
accumulated
ranging
drift
reports
slowly.
and came west to stop the dead.
Continuously,
She fought at
building
the
toward a
wall and
quantity
beyond
that
it.
would
She is
overwhelm
governing the
not
realm.
through force,
He
but
folded the
through sheer
document.
mass.
He gave it to
Bran
Sam.
saw this.
He said,
He was 7
2
years
copies,
old,
one
and he
here,
saw the
one
mathematics
to the
of an
citadel.
extinction event building
Sam
beyond
said,
the wall.
they'll put
with
it in
the
the
specific
archive.
patient
Jon
inevitability
said,
of a glacier
good.
advancing.
Sam said,
He told Lewin.
future maesters will read it.
He told
Jon
Lewin.
said,
Because
that's what
Lewin was
archives
the
are
person
for.
in Winterfell
Sam
whose
held the
response to
document.
information
He said,
was analytical
you wrote Aemon
rather
first.
than emotional.
Jon said,
And because the
yes.
information Bran
Sam
was
said,
carrying
he
required
would have.
analysis
Jon said,
before it
I
required
know.
action.
He looked at the wall through the
Lewin
window,
listened.
at the specific quality
Lewin
of the
had
afternoon
been
light on
listening
the
to
ice,
Bran's visions
which was the
for
quality
months,
it
and
always
the listening
was,
had
which was
produced a
completely
specific
itself.
Maester's response.
He was the
Not belief
reason
exactly,
any of this was
not
possible.
disbelief either.
The
But
watch
the intermediate
maintained,
state of
the
the data
records
was
kept,
anomalous,
the chain of
and the
information
anomaly
that
is
let me
consistent,
understand
and
what I was looking at
consistency
when I found
deserves
the egg.
investigation.
He paused.
The army
He deserved
of
to be
dead,
first.
growing
Sam said,
every year.
He did.
The watch can't see
Jon looked at the wall.
because the watch
He
sends
said,
rangers.
worth the
and
looking.
the rangers die.
Sam said,
and the dying
what?
adds to the army.
Jon said,
Bran
something Ed
was
said
sitting in Lewin's
about the wall,
chambers, on
about
the
the
chair that
difference
was too
between
big for
people
him,
who look at it
with
like
his
a
feet
burden
not
and
touching
people
the
who
floor
look at
because
it
he
like
was
it's
7,
worth the looking.
and the chair was built
Sam
for
said,
adults.
and
The wall
Jon
holds.
said, it
For
was.
now.
He
But
turned
the
from
army
the window.
it's growing faster
is.
than than the wall's capacity
He picked
to
up his
hold it.
cloak.
You see this
Come
through
on.
the trees.
The retinue leaves at dawn, and
Through
I'm
the
going to
trees.
make Ed's day worse
Through the old
if I'm
room.
still here when it does.
The magic that's in the
Sam said.
weirwoods and in the
You're coming
wall
back.
and in the brand
Jon said.
searched for the word.
For rangings, for the
The
quarterly
network.
reports, to stand at
The
the top of the
trees
wall
are connected.
and remember what it's for.
like roots
He
underground.
paused.
They all
Yes,
see the same
I'm coming
thing.
back.
And the seeing
He
is
went.
old.
Scarox was in the
trees have
yard,
been seeing
in the
the army grow
specific
for
patch of
8,000
warmth he'd
years.
created for himself beside the
Fluent
eastern
savages.
wall. The iron grey scales and the gold eyes tracking Jon's exit from the building. He got on the dragon.
And the
They went
specific
south.
institutional
The wall
conservatism that the
receded
Citadel
behind them.
produced in its
It
graduates.
stood. It had
The
always
Citadel
stood.
said,
It was going
"Magic
to keep
is
standing.
historical.